The will of fire still burns. Prologue. It was October 10th, a day that would be forever engraved into the history of Konoha. October 10th, the day that the Kyuubi no Kitsune escaped from its jinchuriki host and wreaked havoc all across Konoha. Thousands of lives were lost in the rampage, but their fates would not end that night thanks to the few new lives that were just brought into the world. It had come down to it. The worst-case scenario, however, they were prepared. After all, it is common knowledge that when dealing with female jinchuriki that their seal is at its weakest point during childbirth. And that is exactly the case with Uzumaki Kushina. Not only was she pregnant, but she was pregnant with quadruplets. That in itself would be a problem if she wasn't an Uzumaki, but she was, and that is exactly how she survived the Kyuubi escaping its seal just moment after she gave birth to her final child. And with that she drifted into unconsciousness. Village outskirts. Namake's Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, was just waking up from unconsciousness. The last thing he remembered was sending away the Kyuubi's Baijidama with his most feared Justu, the Hiraition, and it blowing up a majority of the eastern side of the forests surrounding the village walls. After that he warped away the Kyuubi and himself to the outskirts of the village. He remembered retrieving 3 of his 4 children from the hospital room where Kushina gave birth and setting up the altar for the sealing. After that everything went black for Minato. After looking around and noticing that the area was almost completely destroyed, the young Hokage's eyes settled on the collapsed form of Sarutobi Hiruzen. Then his 3 crying children, each bearing an identical seal on their stomachs. Sandaime-sama must have knocked me out and done the sealing himself using the Shiki Fuin that I taught him in case of an emergency. Minato silently thanked Hiruzen for making the sacrifice so that he would be able to take care of his children and watch them grow up. He vowed to himself that he would do anything within his power to prevent his children from living the life that normal jinchuriki live. Minato would make sure that they were seen as heroes of the leaf and treated like saviors. He picked up his still crying children and flashed to the Hokage Tower to announce to everyone that the Kyuubi was defeated because of his 3 children and deal with the council while ANBU operatives collected the body of Hiruzen Sarutobi. The Yondaime's thoughts of that night would lead him through pain and suffering. Pain and suffering greater than the Kyuubi could ever cause, at the hands of the son that he had not once thought about that fateful night. Time skipped 9 years. Uzumaki Namake's estate. A young blonde-haired boy could be found in his small room on the 2nd floor. He was sitting on the windowsill, his eyes glued to the private training ground in their backyard. His eyes weren't interested in the training ground itself, however, they were fixated on the 5 figures within it. He moved out of the shadows and onto the rooftop so he could see more clearly and perhaps learn a few things that he could practice on his own later. After all, his parents had refused to teach him anything beyond unlocking his chakra at this point while they still actively taught the boy's younger siblings. The boy's features could now clearly be seen. He had sun-kissed blonde hair in the same style as his father's, including the 2 jaw-length bangs, and cold gray eyes. He stood at a height of 4 feet 2 inches, which was tall for a 9-year-old boy. However, the most distinguishing feature about this boy were small clumps of freckles that adorned his cheekbones. This boy was none other than Uzumaki Namake's Naruto. The Uzumaki Namake's compound was huge, to be blunt about it. It was as large as the Hyuga estate which was right next to it, but there were a few major differences. One of them was that the Hyuga estate housed both the main family and the branch family, which equals around 100 people in total, while the Uzumaki Namake's estate only housed 6 people. It was a large mansion with 5 bedrooms, a guest room, kitchen, 3 bathrooms, and an absolutely huge study/office where Minato and Kushina kept all of their jutsu and training methods. The second difference was that the Uzumaki Namake's compound was comprised mostly of large training grounds, as most of the jutsu they practice were quite destructive. But the estate didn't always look like this. No, this whole renovation with the addition of the training grounds were added at the requests of his siblings so that their training could be more efficient. Really, they were just jealous because someone named Hyuga Hinata said that their estate was bigger while Naruto's siblings were at the Hyuga estate to play. Speaking of the Uzumaki Namake's siblings, if you concentrate on where young Naruto is staring, you'll find them along with their parents in the distance. Yes, they were quite a distance away, so far that most of the younger Hyugas would have trouble seeing them. Naruto had always been gifted with incredible eyesight. Why? Who knows? It is likely that the leftover Kyuubi chakra that he inherited when he was born from Kushina was concentrated into and melded with his eyes. At the training ground stood the Yondaime Hokage, dressed in his usual attire. Standing next to him was his wife Uzumaki Kushina. She wore a yellow short-sleeved battle kimono that stopped at her mid-thighs with spandex shorts underneath, black tights that reached above her knees, and dark blue shinobi sandals. Before them were 3 of their children trying but failing miserably at tree climbing because of their terrible chakra control due to possessing the Kyuubi's yin, yang, and leftover chakra respectively. There was one thing in common with all 3 of Uzumaki Namake's siblings in the training ground. All 3 of them looked about 3 years younger than their older brother Naruto, even though they were only a few minutes apart. The reason why they looked so much younger than their brother was because of the demonic chakra sealed within them. It took a while for the Kyuubi's chakra to adjust to their own chakra networks and even longer for bodies to adjust to the amount of power, close to 3 years. The one climbing in the tree farthest to the left was a young girl who stood at about 3 feet 5 inches. She had silky red hair just like her mother's that went down to her mid-back and deep violet eyes. She was extremely beautiful for a girl that looked only 6 years old. She held the Kyuubi's yin chakra. This is Uzumaki Namake's Natsuki. The one climbing the tree in the middle was Uzumaki Namake's Nawaki, who stood at 3 feet 4 inches. He had short spiky blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and 3 whisker marks on each cheek. He wasn't trying as hard as the other girls and seemed to not really care about the training. He was a bit on the chubby side and could easily be mistaken for an Akimichi. He held the Kyuubi's yang chakra. On the far right was Uzumaki Namake's Narumi, who had made it farther up the tree than the other 2 because she had less of the Kyuubi's chakra. She stood at 3 feet 5 inches and had long blonde hair that was tied into pigtails to give her a cute schoolgirl look. Her sapphire blue eyes stared at her parents arrogantly as she had made it 15 feet up the tree because of her slightly better control, while her 2 siblings had only made it up 7. She too had 3 whisker marks on each cheek. She held the leftover Kyuubi that was saturating the atmosphere from the large amount of demonic chakra that was used by the Kyuubi 9 years ago. Naruto had seen enough. He climbed down from his position on the roof back into his bedroom after watching his mother and father smother and congratulate their children for making it so far up and making so much progress after a week of continuously practicing tree climbing. What a joke. They do the smallest little thing and receive more love and affection than I have my entire life from them. He grabbed his pouch filled with kunai and shuriken off of his dresser and left his barren room that had nothing more than the essentials within its confines. He briefly toyed with the idea of telling his parents that he was going to a secluded training ground near the outskirts of the village to do his own training, but opted against it after he recalled the last time he wanted to start his shinobi training. Flashback, 6 months ago. Naruto had just woken up to the sounds of his parents walking around the house getting ready for the day ahead of them. He could hear his mother in the kitchen getting breakfast ready and his father was getting his siblings up to start their day. Naruto could hear Natsuki's voice asking what they would be doing for training today. His expression reflexively turned into a scowl and his mind began to wander as he lay in bed, already forgotten. Training? They refused to help me at all or even let me train since we unlocked our chakra 6 months ago. Naruto started to remember the reasons his parents told him why they would need to focus on his siblings. He understood that, but they haven't been doing anything besides chakra control for the past 6 months. Naruto was far from ignorant. He was smart for his age, some would even go so far as to call him a prodigy, so he could easily see the gap that their training was putting between him and his family. And he didn't want that. Our young prodigy hadn't just been laying around all day while the rest of his family trained, he was training too. He noticed early on that after breakfast his mother and father would take his siblings to one of the farther away training grounds to train. They would spend all of their time there until lunchtime came around and they came back, with the exception of his father who made his way to the Hokage Tower for his duties sometime before then. Naruto would use this window of time to head into his father's study and find a chakra control exercise to train on until his family came back to the house. He had already mastered leaf concentration, leaf spinning, and kunai balancing. He had found out that even with his naturally large reserves, being an Uzumaki, he had naturally good chakra control which made the exercises that much easier for him. He had also already learned how to preform what most people called the Academy 3 jutsus. Those particular jutsus being the henge, kawarimi, and bunshin. He found them by accident when looking around in the study and decided to give them a try. He had learned them relatively easily. It only took him a few days to get a good grasp on them and had mastered them a few days after that. If that was all the academy requires to graduate, then he wasn't going to be looking forward to his time in the academy. Our young blonde made a silent vow, one more time. I'll ask for training just one more time, and if they refuse I'll start training even harder on my own. With those thoughts in mind, Naruto got out of bed and started heading downstairs. He saw both of his parents in the kitchen and decided to ask them after breakfast. It was a silent breakfast of pancakes, eggs, and orange juice. He sat at the end of the table, his siblings barely awake sat to his left. Minato sat at the head of the table, reading the paper to catch up on the daily events. Kushina had already gotten up to do the dishes before training. Naruto decided now to make his request. Unto-san? Ka-san, he asked in a shy voice. Both of them looked towards the voice, wondering when he had arrived at the table. Minato glanced up from the newspaper and gave Naruto a curious look before returning back to his paper. What is it, Naruto? We were about to head off to start Nawaki's, Narumi's, and Natsuki's training. Kushina was staring intently at Naruto now, knowing what he was going to ask. It's about that actually. I was wondering if you could start training me to be a shinobi too, just like them? Naruto ended hopefully. His siblings were paying close attention to the interaction going on between their parents and their older brother. Minato and Kushina both gave him a frustrated sigh knowing he wouldn't like the answer. It was Minato who responded, Naruto, you know exactly why we have to train them early. If we don't, they could lose control of themselves and hurt a lot of their classmates once all of you start going to the academy. Besides, we promised you we would only teach you the basics, and we did by helping you unlock your chakra a few weeks ago. The rest you will learn at the academy. Naruto started to get upset at those last few sentences, but the last time you helped me was 6 months ago. I know you have to help them because of the Kyuubi chakra, but all clan children start learning before they go to the academy. Minato was also starting to get a little worked up, but before he could get a word in, Kushina decided to interject herself into the argument. No buts. Kushina replied heatedly, you'll learn chakra control, basic jutsu, and taijutsu at the academy. Naruto was about to respond but he was cut off. You will listen to your father, he is the Hokage, he knows what's best for you, and he said no, and that's final. Now go to your room and think about what we've said. Kushina yelled, her temper getting the best of her. Naruto didn't say another word, he just did what his mother asked and headed up the stairs to his room. His siblings looked on at the scene with either a confused or a sad look on their face. Don't misunderstand, Kushina and Minato didn't hate Naruto, but they had seen much during their careers as shinobi and had committed unspeakable acts as well. They wanted to have at least one child spared from that fate. Or at the very least, they wanted to let one of their children to enjoy their childhood instead of forcing them to train every day. Unknown to them through these beliefs that had already started to push him away from their perfect little family, and it would eventually come back to haunt them. Flashback end. Naruto walked down the stairs and saw that his family had finished their training and were getting ready for lunch in the kitchen. He sighed, hoping they wouldn't ask where he was going. He walked through the kitchen with them, ignoring his very presence. His brother and sisters were dead tired, their form completely slumped over the kitchen table. His mother was the only other one in the room. She was facing the counter, preparing some sandwiches for his siblings after their long day of training. He took this as the perfect opportunity to take his leave. He rushed to the front door, Mom, I'm going over to Hana's, and with that he left. Kushina looked up surprised, What? Who was that? I could have sworn I heard someone's voice just now. She looked over confused to see 3 of her children resting their tired forms on the kitchen table. I feel like I'm forgetting something, or maybe someone. She decided to dismiss that thought for now and went back to preparing lunch. Naruto stood in a secluded clearing not too far away from the Uchiha compound. He liked this place because it was quite the distance away from the other compounds, the park, and the heart of the village. Really, it was quite a ways away from everything, so it was unlikely that anyone from his family would catch him training, let alone anyone in general. This was one of his more favored areas to train in. From what I saw, Kaa-san used her chakra to walk up a tree. This is probably the tree walking exercise I read about in Tusan's study. From what I could gather, I need to figure out the necessary amount of chakra required. Too much chakra and I'll be blown off, too little chakra and I won't stick to the tree's surface. He looked at the tree, determination shining in his eyes, and drew a kunai out of his weapons pouch to mark his progress. He began gathering chakra at his feet and sprinted towards the tree. A teenager, of about 18 years of age, had been sitting high in a tree above the clearing watching our young blonde making astounding progress with tree walking. He had untamed, wild, and somewhat curly black hair. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt that was common among Konoha shinobi attire and a dark green Jounin's vest. His hitayate was tied around his forehead, spiking up his hair even more. He had been walking back to the Uchiha compound from another successful mission and decided to make a detour when he heard the sound of footsteps, a kunai slashing through something, and panting. He decided to satisfy his curiosity and shunshined into a tree in the clearing once he saw the boy. From what he could see, the boy had only just started tree walking today and was almost halfway up the tree. The panting boy seemed familiar for some reason, so he decided to watch for a while. That is exactly when the boy ran past his other marks and made it halfway up. That is when he saw the boy slip. Wait. Blonde hair and with that haircut. Isn't that the Yondame's son? I have to hurry. Little did he know the boy didn't slip, nor was he out of chakra. As soon as he started to move, he sensed a barrage of shuriken coming his way and had to shunshin to the other side of the clearing. The boy reached the ground and pulled out a kunai from his weapons pouch. Who are you and what are you here for? Because of the distance his family put between them and Naruto and his lack of interaction with children his age, he had become somewhat aloof and cynical. This isn't what I expected. He actually reminds me a bit of Itachi, the teenager thought. I didn't expect you to be able to sense me. How'd you do that anyway? He asked, genuinely curious. Naruto thought about what guy could possibly want. He noticed that he was a shinobi, so one thought crossed through his mind, shit. Did Toussaint send him here to find me? Does he know about my training? He figured that he should just play along for now. I suppose I'm somewhat of a sensor. I was able to sense you the moment you arrived in this clearing. I answered your question, now it's your turn to answer mine, Naruto replied in a cold yet demanding tone. Yep, definitely reminds me of Itachi, teenager mused to himself as he activated his Sharingan and smirked. You're Naruto, right? The name Shisui kid, Uchiha Shisui. I was on the way back to the Uchiha compound when I saw you training. Why are you out here anyway? Shouldn't kids your age be at the academy? Shisui noticed that his emotionless look turned into a scowl. I'm not enrolled in the academy and I won't be given a chance to for 3 more years. The raven-haired teenager's curious was immediately replaced with one of confusion after he had processed the information and tried to come to a conclusion based on that statement. Why is that? Most children from clans join the Shinobi Academy after they turn 9 years old. That is unless they are specifically being groomed and trained for the duty of the clan heir. Naruto let out a dry chuckle that sent a shiver down Shisui's spine for some unknown reason. I assure you that isn't the case. In fact, the title of clan heir will most likely be given to one of my siblings once they turn my age, and that is also the reason I'm not in the academy yet. After a moment of silence, Shisui was about to speak before Naruto raised his hand up. You know of the circumstances dealing with the sealing, correct? Shisui nodded. Demonic chakra can take years to fully assimilate itself into a jinchuriki's body, that's why they tend to be a few years older than they look. That is also the case with my siblings. While we may only be born a few minutes apart, in reality they are close to 3 years younger than me. For some reason my parents decided to keep us together, so I can't attend the academy until I turn 12. So why aren't your parents supervising your children until then? Surely they can't expect you to sit around and do nothing for 3 more years. Shisui noticed that Naruto had a deadpan look on his face as opposed to his angry one he had a minute ago. Naruto sighed as he began his story from the very beginning. Naruto and Shisui were staring off into the distance at the setting sun as Naruto's tale was coming to a close, and that is what's written so far in my story. I'm out here because my parents have refused to train me or even acknowledge my existence. I don't want to sit back in the warmth of the Uzumaki Namake's estate while everybody moves forwards with their lives. I want to prove to myself that my existence is worth something, that it was good that I was born. Naruto looked over to Shisui and noticed he had tears flowing down his face. Stop crying. I didn't mean for this to sound like some sob story. You're a grown man for Kami's sake. And get off of me, damn it, he yelled as Shisui clung to him. Sorry kid, *sniff*, it's just that, *sniff*, our life stories are pretty similar, Shisui managed to get out while wiping the tears from his eyes. How so? Shisui sighed and turned back towards the sunset. You ever heard of someone named Uchiha Itachi? Naruto looked at him confused but nodded. He's my best friend, but he's also some kind of prodigy that the Uchiha clan hasn't produced since the era of warring states. Even though I'm stronger than Itachi, I'm a different kind of genius. I'm a genius of hard work, as Madogai would put it. I've worked my ass off since before I was your age, kid, and still I'm always compared to Itachi. Even my own parents told me that they wished that they had Itachi as a son instead of me. Trust me, I get where you're coming from. Naruto let out a small smile on that nobody has seen for a long time. From what I saw today, I can tell that you have the potential to be both Naruto. Naruto looked shocked. This was the first time all day that Shisui had called him his name. It was the first time that somebody had genuinely him like they cared for him. Shisui noticed the tears in Naruto's eyes that he refused to show. Itachi has a little sister too, she's about the age of your siblings I think, and he's already started training her too. What do you say, Naruto, will you become my student? That was the final damn. The tears started pouring out of his eyes. *sniff*, yes, Shisui sensei. The will of fire still burns. 2.5 years. 2.5 years, that is how long it had been since Shisui had taken Naruto on as a student. It had gone by in the blink of an eye, and yet so many things had changed for him during that time. One of the things had changed was that he was actually training to be a shinobi. Serious training, Not those children's training regimens that Minato and Kushina had his siblings on, or even those taijutsu classes at the academy that he had seen a few times. No, he was going through training routines that would make Madogai break a sweat. What do you expect? Shisui was currently one of the top shinobi in Konoha, right beside Hitaki Kakashi, Madogai, and Uchiha Itachi. His daily routine was to wake up at 5 a.m., before anybody at the estate was awake, eat a small breakfast and head to the Uchiha compound to meet up with Shisui. From there they would head out of Konoha, and Naruto would be given the task of running at least 10 laps around the village. After which, they would head to the clearing where they met for the first time for taijutsu training. If you remember, Naruto's eyes aren't exactly normal. They aren't any kind of Kekkai Genkai, but when he was born the Kyuubi's chakra fused with them, granting him with exceptional eyesight. Shisui once referred to them as the eyes of a hawk because they can track even high-speed movements. These unique abilities are quite similar to the Sharingan's ability to read and predict movement. It is because of this that Shisui was able to start teaching Naruto the Uchiha's interceptor fist style of taijutsu, which he excelled at. Naruto shivered as he remembered all those taijutsu spars he had with Shisui, which were actually more like beat-downs than anything. They usually ended their taijutsu training at around lunchtime, so they would usually take a break and grab a bite to eat. They would either head to the Uchiha compound to grab some homemade food, or they would head into the village and stop at a sushi bar that Naruto had taken a liking to. They stopped at Ichiraku's once for ramen, and ironically enough he wasn't very fond of the stuff. After lunch they would head back to the clearing for either ninjutsu or jinjutsu training. They would switch off between the two every week. He usually returned to the Uzumaki Namake's estate close to 7 p.m. where he ate dinner and headed up to his room to either study or meditate. On days when Shisui had missions, Naruto would usually practice his bukijutsu instead of ninjutsu or genjutsu, and he would practice his taijutsu katas in the morning instead of sparring. He had never been very interested in weapons, so kenjutsu was immediately dropped from their training regimen after he had learned the basics. He even disliked using shuriken and kunai, but they were essentials for every shinobi. He started on bukijutsu early so that he could move on to other aspects of his training. He had become so accurate with his kunai and shuriken that they could rival most jounin. Ninjutsu and genjutsu were Naruto's two favorite shinobi arts. Ninjutsu because there were so many different types of jutsu and how most of the figures that were known all throughout history. Due to his sensei's specialty, one of the first things Naruto was taught was the shunshin. Not just any kind of shushin, Shisui's specialized one where he just vanishes in a flash, not so different from the Hiraishin. He loved genjutsu because the possibilities were almost limitless. Over the years the blonde had become a bit sadistic and enjoyed the idea of torturing a person's mind. For various reasons he excelled in these two areas of the shinobi arts specifically. The second thing that changed was his relationships with people outside of his family. He has always been rude and untrusting towards people who want to be his friends, especially when he would be at the park with his siblings or even on his own. It wasn't hard to tell that many of the village's children wanted to befriend him just so that they could get closer to the village's saviors. That was a main reason why he didn't attempt to get close to outsiders. Before he met Shisui he did make one friend, Inuzuka Hana, the former heiress of the Inuzuka clan. Former heiress was the key word there because she has a younger brother, Inuzuka Kiba, who happened to be friends with the three younger Uzumaki Namakazes. The fact that their siblings were friends and that they were in the same boat when it came to family relations was what gave them the chance to connect with each other and become good friends. In a family dominated by alpha males, females are often looked over by their family to raise the perfect leader of a pack. Hana's mother, Inuzuka Tsum, also wanted to keep her and her brother together since they were only 2 years apart from each other. Therefore Hana wouldn't be enrolled into the Shinobi Academy either, or at least until Kiba turned 9 years old. This didn't mean that she was neglected as much as Naruto was, but it was enough for him to open up to her. After that they were often seen together around the village or at the Inuzuka compound. Besides her, he still is pretty much the same way with people, but that didn't stop him from making a handful of friends, even if he wanted to. Flashback, 2 years ago. Uchiha compound. Naruto and Shisui were walking through the Uchiha district heading towards the Uchiha library. The young blonde gave his sensei a questioning look. I know you're an Uchiha, that much is obvious, but I'm pretty sure their jutsu library was made by Uchiha for Uchiha. I don't think that they would take too kindly to an outsider learning all of their jutsu. And as much as I hate to say it, me being the son of the current Hokage doesn't exactly help my case. Shisui looked down and gave him a smirk. As one of the top shinobi of the Konoha and the Uchiha clan, I'm granted certain rights that normal Uchiha clan members don't have, such as being able to teach whatever I want to my apprentice and bring them to the Uchiha library. It doesn't matter if they're Uchiha or not. Plus me being on the fast track to becoming an ANBU helps too. And besides you've been training non-stop from dawn till dusk since we started your training 6 months ago. It's a beautiful day, the sun is shining, the breeze feels great. If you don't stop and take a look around you every once in a while you just might miss all of the little things in life. Life isn't all about training, you know, kid. He was expecting some kind angry outburst or death glare that he was so used to by now, so he was surprised when Naruto stopped mid-step deep in thought. You know, sensei, now that I think about it I guess I do feel a bit burned out by the amount of training you've been putting me through. He began looking up and down the streets of the Uchiha district as if expecting something, and I think I already like the Uchiha district better than being in the village. No villagers bowing to me wherever I go, nobody hasn't tried to kiss my ass yet, no one is trying to give me free handouts. This place just feels right. Perhaps we could take the rest of the day off from training. Shisui beamed at him. Of course you weren't really going to give me a choice in the matter, were you? Naruto asked in a demanding tone. Shisui rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. The truth is I also wanted you to meet some good people. I know how you are and what you think of people, but you should have some friends that you can depend on other than me and Hana. Naruto scowled a bit at the mention of friends but decided to think about it a bit instead of lashing out. He sighed. I guess if you trust them then I could at least give them a chance. Shisui sighed in relief, but before he could say anything he was cut off. Hey! Wait a minute. Weren't we supposed to keep you training me a secret? I haven't told them anything yet, I just decided this now. And besides we only decided not to tell your family so that they wouldn't be able to stop you from training. By the way, have things gotten any better between you and them? Naruto just sighed in frustration. No, in fact they've gotten worse now that the training has gone to Nawaki's, Natsuki's, and Narumi's heads. They act like a bunch of spoiled brats that make me want to use my strongest katan jutsu just to set the mansion on fire and hope they burn inside. Shisui sweat dropped at the evil smirk on his face. Maybe you should stay at my place tonight? Naruto just nodded. The rest of the trip to the library was spent in silence. They made it into the library with only a little hassle. After explaining their relationship to each other they were allowed to pass. Naruto ended up picking up a few katan jutsus that were favored by Madara Uchiha and some more intricate scrolls on Genjutsu. Shisui had tested Naruto's elemental affinity about 2 months ago and was surprised by the results. After giving him the piece of chakra paper and telling him to concentrate chakra into it, the paper split in half. One of the halves became damp, and the other half caught on fire and didn't just turn to ash but turned into a miniature fireball before disintegrating. Both of them had wide eyes and agreed to train his fire affinity first, seeing as it was the strongest, which was strange because neither of his parents had a fire affinity. Soon after, they left the library seeing as they has gotten the more advanced katan jutsus that they were looking for. Naruto just let Shisui guide him to his desired location. After a good 10 minutes of walking, they finally arrived at what Naruto could guess was the house of the clan head's family. Shisui led him inside and after taking off their shinobi sandals, they proceeded further into the house. He was then greeted with a sight that he could only describe as a perfect happy family. The first person he saw was a beautiful woman with silky black hair and a perfect heart-shaped face. She wore an apron over her gray long-sleeved shirt with the Uchiha crest on the back and a pink skirt. She was in the kitchen making lunch while her 2 children sat on the couch. One of them was a teenager, close to Shisui's age and height, with black hair that formed 2 bangs which framed his face and a ponytail in the back. He had black eyes and wore a high-collared blue shirt with black shinobi pants. This must be Shisui's friend Itachi. The one that really stood out to him was the girl sitting on her brother's lap trying to read a scroll about chakra with a confused look on her face. She had long black hair that reached down to her back and covered her right eye and had pale skin that reminded him of snow. She wore a pure white kimono with an Uchiha crest on the back. She looked about 6 years old. And this must be his little sister, Satsuki, that Shisui told me about. Hello everyone. Naruto heard Shisui call out before he was smacked in the head with a wooden spoon. How many times have I told you not to yell in the house, Shisui-kun? The woman yelled. You really have hit me with that damned spoon, Mikoto-san. Mikoto just smiled. I wouldn't if you would listen for once. Naruto smirked at his sensei being scolded like a child. And who might this be? Itachi and his sister looked up, now paying attention to the other new arrival. Ah yes, that's the reason we're here. This is my apprentice Naruto. Itachi chose this time to move off of the couch and speak up. Apprentice? When did you take on an apprentice? Did Hokage-sama assign you one? No offense, but you really don't seem like teaching material. Shisui puffed his cheeks out like a child. Oi. I'll have you know I'm a great sensei. Right, Naruto? Naruto? Shisui looked over to where Naruto was and noticed that Satsuki had gotten up from her seat on the couch and was now playing with Naruto's hair. He noticed Naruto's twitching eyebrow and burst into laughter. Naruto gave him a dark glare. I will kill you slowly and painfully, Shisui. Yeah, anyway it looks like she's taken a real liking to you. Kami knows why the little devil girl hates me. Satsuki stopped playing with Naruto's hair to respond to Shisui. I'm not a devil girl. I just don't like you cause you're stupid, she yelled, after which she kicked him in the groin to stop his laughing. After he got off the floor and recovered from the pain, he spoke again. Anyway, I brought him here to meet all of you. Besides me and Inuzuka Hana, he doesn't really have any friends. Mikoto and Itachi both looked surprised, but Itachi is the one who responded. What do you mean, Shisui? Isn't he Hokage-sama's son? I would think that being the son of the Hokage would make plenty of children want to be his friend. Naruto looked at Shisui, who nodded. About that. Naruto then proceeded to tell all of them his story, the same one that he told Shisui 6 months ago. Itachi and Mikoto both looked shocked and Satsuki just looked confused. Mikoto decided to speak. Is all of that true? Minato and Kushina-chan don't even treat you like a son anymore? Naruto just nodded and looked up to see Mikoto's angry face after she stood up. Then I'm going over to their compound right now to have a talk with them. Shisui was about to restrain her, but it was then that Naruto calmly spoke. Please don't, Mikoto-sama. I would prefer if you left them alone. I want to see for myself if they will begin to understand what they are doing to me. If they are just so overwhelmed with their other 3 children that they continue to push me away, even after all of my efforts to become closer to them, or they just don't want to take the time to even think about me, whatever the outcome, I don't want it to be altered by anyone from the outside, please understand. Mikoto froze at his reasoning. What kind of child could possibly think like this? The risks for his relationship to turn out badly is too great, but every decision has consequences and I guess this will be theirs. After a minute, Mikoto moved towards him and engulfed him in a motherly hug. If they don't show you any love or affection, then we will. You can be part of our little family. Okay? Naruto just nodded with tears in his eyes and returned Mikoto's hug. Itachi got up, put a hand on Naruto's shoulder and smiled at him. Satsuki looked happy at what was going on, only understanding half of it. Do I have a new Ni-san, Kaa-chan? Everybody started laughing at that, even Naruto. Shisui was watching the whole scene with a smirk on his face, succeeding in what he came here to do. Flashback end. Uzumaki Namake's compound. Naruto had just woken up from his room in the Uzumaki Namake's compound. It needed to be specified because over the last 2.5 years Naruto has spent most of his time at the Uchiha compound, sometimes even going as far as eating dinner and staying the night in Satsuki's room. They are not in an intimate relationship in any sense of the word, but over the past few years she had grown rather attached to her, Naruto and Naruto had grown to see her as more of a sister than his actual blood-related family. Speaking of family, they had grown even further apart over the last few years. Both Natsuki and Nawaki had both gone into one-tailed states before and lost control of themselves, destroying most of the training ground they were at in the process. That only resulted in their parents paying even closer attention to them, and not just during training. No, even during family outing when all 6 of them went into the village, everything was always about Nawaki, Natsuki, and Narumi. How they wanted new training equipment or wanted a new toy, or even what flavor ramen they wanted, completely disregarding Naruto's requests or objections. They didn't even know that ramen was one of the blonde's least favorite foods. Naruto leisurely got out of bed and got dressed. After all, it was his day off from training. He opened his bedroom door and walked downstairs. Naruto noticed that it was about 9 a.m., so his family should be finishing up breakfast and leaving for their morning training. It was these observations that brought him back to his thoughts on his family. The first was his father. He almost never had any contact with Minato anymore. Naruto usually left the house early in the morning to spend the day at a friend's house, or at least that's what he told his parents when asked. And Minato spent most of the time either training Naruto's siblings or at the Hokage Tower doing his usual duties. Naruto usually saw him at dinner, but he usually just talked to Kushina or his other 3 children how their training went. His thoughts then drifted to Kushina. The situation with her was pretty much identical to Minato's. Although because of her highly annoying temper, in Naruto's opinion, she often scolded him for being late or for missing dinner. This often ended with her asking Naruto why he couldn't be a perfect child like his siblings. This normally should have left a pain in his chest, but he stopped caring about such childish remarks from them a long time ago. The next was Nawaki. Now this little cockroach was someone Naruto could say he truly hated. He started off as a sweet little kid, but after years of his parents spoiling him and giving him everything he could ever ask for, he believed that he could do no wrong and became spoiled to the core. He believed that he was Kami's gift to world. Not to mention his superiority and god complexes. And Tsunade doting on him every chance she got didn't help. Due to this he became lazy and expecting everything to handed to him. Tsunade completely adored Nawaki and even gave him extra training. This was all because Minato and Kushina decided to name him after her brother who died during the Third Great Shinobi War. Speaking of Tsunade, Naruto had not once even spoken to her. Next was Narumi. She often bragged about how she was getting training and Naruto wasn't. She believed that she was better than everybody else just because she was a jinchuriki. The foolish girl had no idea how jinchuriki are usually treated. Narumi was a daddy's girl believing that he could do no wrong, and that's why she thought of Naruto as the loser of the family, because he was the only one not being trained. Natsuki was an odd case. She used to be a little brat, but now she just seemed indifferent to him. She had some kind of high and mighty holier-than-thou personality, which he found annoying, but at certain times he could believe that she cared for him. "Oh Naruto? You're usually gone by this time." It was this voice that broke him out of his thoughts. The rest of his family was standing by the door getting ready to go to one of the training fields. It was Kushina who had spoken to him. Naruto looked at Kushina and then headed towards the refrigerator. "I had nothing to do today so I thought I'd sleep in for a bit. He's been awfully cold to us lately. Perhaps if we let him join training today he'll smile a bit." Kushina thought. "Naruto? Why don't you join us for training today?" The whole room went silent. Everyone had different thoughts. Did she really just say that? After 2.5 fucking years she asks if I want to join training for the day. Ha, what a joke. What's your game, Kushina? Why should someone like me have to even share a train ground with pathetic trash like him, were Nawaki's thoughts. Narumi's hands clenched into fists. "I thought he was supposed to be some loser who wasn't even supposed to be a shinobi, and now you want him to train with us, Kaa-chan?" Natsuki's emotionless face cracked a small smile. "Oni-sama is finally going to train with us. It has been so long since I've been able to spend time with him. Maybe Kaa-chan and Tusan will even let me spar with him." It was Minato who decided to voice his thoughts. "Are you sure, Kushina? I mean, Naruto hasn't had much training before and we need to concentrate on the others in case that they lose control of the Kyuubi's chakra." Kushina had a thoughtful look on her face for a minute. "We should at least let him spar with one of them to show him what he'll be up against when he starts the academy in 6 months with his siblings." Naruto gained a tick mark on his forehead. "You're the ones who refused to teach me anything and forbid me from training until the academy. And besides, I have been training. I've even defeated a few Chunin from the Uchiha clan in sparring matches." Minato was silent for a few seconds. "Okay. How about we let him spar with Natsuki?" Natsuki had a happy look on her face. "Yes, yes, yes, yes." Naruto could only groan, seeing as there was no way out of it. After his breakfast they all headed out the door to one of the larger training grounds closer to the compound walls. Once they got there, Naruto and Natsuki moved toward the center, about 15 feet apart from each other, as everybody else moved towards the side. Minato decided to set the rules for the match. This will be a straight taijutsu match. There will be no use of ninjutsu or genjutsu under any circumstances. The match will end when I call it or when either one of you are unable to continue. Do you understand? They both nodded. Natsuki took this chance to speak. "Nisan, I'll use this chance to show you the difference between the two of us. To show you how strong you need to become." Naruto just scoffed at her arrogance. "Begin." Natsuki rushed forward as fast as she could, hoping to end the fight quickly so that she wouldn't have to hurt her Oni-sama too much. Naruto used this chance to get into his interceptor fist stance. With her straightforward approach she pulled her fist back and swung at Naruto, who sidestepped, causing her to stumble with the lack of contact. As she lost her balance, he swept Natsuki's legs out from under her, causing her to fall back. Naruto followed up with an axe kick to the gut, causing her to cough out some saliva and some of the ground to break in a spider web pattern. He jumped back as she got off of the ground and wiped the saliva from her mouth. Naruto felt how angry she was through her sensor abilities and how much chakra she was letting run wild. He steadied himself. Natsuki rushed towards her brother with newfound speed and appeared right before him. She sent a backhand towards his head, which he ducked under and retaliated with an elbow to the solar plexus, causing her to lose her breath. Naruto then connected with her chin with a fierce uppercut, after which she flew into the air. Naruto wasn't done yet. He grabbed her leg as it was in midair and threw her into the ground. Hard. He was expecting her to get up or for his father to call the match before things got out of hand, but he was too late. As soon as Naruto turned to look at his father, his was hit with a huge wave of malicious killing intent. He looked over to where his sister had landed and saw exactly what he didn't want to. Natsuki's violet eyes turned red with a black slit through them. Her fangs elongated and her perfectly kept nails had turned into claws. And the worst part of all of this was that there was a crimson cloak of chakra surrounding her body, sprouting 2 fox-like tails. Just then the third tail emerged. Fuck me. That was all it took to bring out 3 tails worth of the Kyuubi's chakra. Has she never taken a few punches before? Before Minato of Kushina could even move to suppress the Kyuubi's chakra, she disappeared in a flash of pure speed and reappeared right in front of Naruto. He barely even had time to move before she stabbed him right above the eye with one of her claws and dragged it down the length of his face, which sent him stumbling back. She jumped forward, grabbing his body. One of her claws wrapped around his right hand with the other grabbing his right calf. The sinister chakra started eating away at his flesh within milliseconds of her touching it. As quick as Natsuki grabbed him, she threw him into the ground, the impact creating a small crater. She rushed towards the middle where he was and hazed on of her claws. Her aim was to cut him in half vertically, but Naruto managed to move his body to the left a little, causing her to miss and instead slash through almost the entire right side of his body from shoulder to his abdomen. It was then that chakra chains erupted from the ground, restraining all of her limbs, as Minato appeared in front of her and attached a pre-written seal on her forehead. The Kyuubi's chakra receded and she fell to the ground, unconscious. Then Minato looked down at his son's body and his eyes widened. Naruto's right side of his face was covered in blood with a jagged slash mark through his right eye. The flesh surrounding his hand and calf were completely burned off. And the wound that really worried him was the largest one. The right side of his torso was almost completely severed from the rest of his body. The time from when Natsuki sprouted her third tail to when her chakra was suppressed was about the span of 6 seconds. There were small patches of flames on the injured parts of his body that looked like they were trying to heal him somehow, which made Minato curious, but he looked up and saw his son gushing out of his body and slowly started to drown, and it made Minato forget that thought. He heard Naruto groaned and grabbed him and Natsuki before flashing to the hospital, leaving his wife with a horror-stricken face while his other son and daughter emptied their stomachs onto the training ground with the sight of their brother and the amount of blood. Konoha Hospital. After seeing the condition that Naruto was in, he was immediately rushed to the emergency room to be operated on by Tsunade. He may not have liked the woman much, but she was a damn good doctor. With the condition Naruto was in, he should have been unconscious due to the amount of blood loss, but he had been awake for the last 3 hours. He was even awake when Minato dropped him off at the front desk and he was taken away on a stretcher while his father went with another nurse to take Natsuki to another hospital room. I can't blame him this time, I suppose. He's, probably checking to make sure the seal is still holding up. Naruto now understood a little bit better why his parents were so focused on his siblings, but then his face contorted with rage. But, I almost just died. They, probably already finished checking up on her. The least that they could do is be here for me. Just because I understand doesn't mean that I have to forgive. With those thoughts he drifted into unconsciousness. The Will of Fire still burns, reincarnation and prophecies. Hokage Tower. It was a beautiful day in Konohagakure no Sato. After all, they were living at a time of peace. Every day was beautiful, the sun was shining, birds were chirping, and there was a relaxing breeze that just made you want to take a nap under one of the bountiful trees that Konoha was so famous for. It was almost like any other day in the village, almost. Namake's Minato was not having a good day. Everything had just started out with a simple spar. The first thing that had gone wrong was that Kushina had asked Naruto if he wanted to train with them for the day. Of course Minato was against it at the time, but if he had voiced his opinion, would have probably been on the under end of Kushina's temper and most likely a beating. The next was that Naruto was actually winning the spar when they hadn't trained him, while their daughter, who had gone through daily training for the past 3 years, couldn't even touch him. That brought up more questions. How could he be so advanced in taijutsu already? Has he been training all this time? No. Naruto isn't smart enough to know how to train on his own properly. He probably just picked up a few things from watching his friends. Minato thought for a minute, who were his friends again? Oh, that's right, he usually spends time with Inuzuka, Kiba's older sister. But it looked like he was using the Uchiha's interceptor fist. Fugaku has a younger daughter, doesn't he? Perhaps Naruto is friends with her. Yes, that has to be it. His thoughts on Naruto ended there and were brought back to his daughter. This had been the second time that she had lost control in the past 6 months. In reality, none of his children were even relatively close to being able to control, or even use the Kyuubi's chakra without going berserk and trying to destroy anything in their paths. They had been training their children to try and control the Biju, but it looked as if that were never going to happen since none of them inherited their mother's chakra chains yet. What went wrong? It was just a taijutsu spar. She shouldn't have even been using churka, let alone the Kyuubis. Do they need more training? They can't lose control of themselves every time they take a few punches. I knew we shouldn't have let Naruto train with his siblings. We needed to be focusing solely on the others so that situations like this don't happen. He couldn't help but remember the scolding he got from Kushina when she arrived at the hospital, and he couldn't even tell her what condition Naruto was in because he was checking on Natsuki's seal. Kushina understood why Minato was checking the seal instead of getting information about their son's condition, but that didn't mean she couldn't be upset with him. After all, their son almost died because their daughter gave in to her negative emotions. That only solidified the fact that they should be entirely focused on training their children to withstand the Kyuubi so that they don't hurt anyone they care about again. And this time it was far more serious than the others when they just destroyed the training grounds before they were restrained. No, this time one of them had almost killed their brother. Not to mention the fact that this was the farthest that any of them had gone with the Kyuubi's chakra. 3 tails. 3 fucking tails. That's only 1 tail before the Kyuubi will starts taking over your body and the chakra starts eating away at your skin. We can't ever let this ever happen again, it is far too dangerous. The entire village could feel the malicious chakra of the Kyuubi and they were in mass panic. It was nowhere near the oppressing terror that so many had felt that night over 11 years ago, but it was enough for people to immediately recognize the chakra. Minato had to publicly announce what happened, minus the part about Natsuki going berserk, and tell them that everything was under control and the situation was taken care of. Some were still weary but went on with their daily lives nonetheless. The only people who knew the truth about what happened were the Uzumaki Namake's family, Tsunade, Kakashi, and a handful of ANBU. Dealing with the council was a load of fun for him. He had to make up some kind of lie that they had an accident when dealing with the Kyuubi's chakra. Of course Danzo made a point to ask for him to train the children, which Minato immediately refused. Minato then remembered what Tsunade had told him just a few hours ago after his conversation with Kushina and dealing with the village and the council. Flashback, morning. Minato had just finished dealing with the council when Tsunade called him back to the hospital to inform him about his children's condition. Tsunade, how is Natsuki? She didn't suffer any repercussions from using the Kyuubi's chakra, did she? His mind had been on Natsuki all morning due to having to check the seal, thinking about her going into a 3-tailed state, and later having to talk to the village and council about her, so he was immediately concerned about her well-being. Tsunade just raised an eyebrow but answered him nonetheless, Natsuki is fine. She is suffering from chakra exhaustion and torn muscles from overexerting herself in her cubified state, but otherwise she's fine. Though she should probably spend the night in the hospital just to be on the safe side. Minato let out a sigh of relief. He was worried that if too much of the Kyuubi's chakra got into her chakra coils at one time, then it would start eating away at her chakra network. He was glad that wasn't the case. Tsunade raised the clipboard that she had in her hand up so that she could read it. Naruto, on the other hand. Minato's face instantly paled as he remembered the state that his son was in and cursed himself for forgetting how serious his wounds looked. Naruto's situation is far worse than it looked. The operation was a success and we managed to stabilize him, but not all of his wounds could be solved with medical ninjutsu alone. The entire right half from trapezius to mid-abdomen was almost completely cleaved through. We managed to repair all of his organs, internal damage, and even close the wound. He'll need immense physical therapy before he's even able to use his right side again, unless some kind of miracle happens. Next up, those burns he received. When Natsuki grabbed his right hand and right calf, the Kyuubi's chakra immediately started devouring his flesh. Had you not gotten him here when you did, it would have started invading and eating through his chakra network. There was nothing we could do about these specific wounds besides extracting the demonic chakra from them. It's likely that the skin on his right hand till about an inch above his wrist will never fully heal. The wound had pretty much already cauterized itself before you got him here. The same could be said about the burn on his calf, the only difference is that it is in the shape of a claw mark. His final wound was the slash to his eye. This wound was specifically difficult to operate on. One of Natsuki's claws slashed straight through his eyeball. Normally we would have been able to repair something like that, but with the amount of Kyuubi chakra eating away at it, we needed to remove it altogether in order to repair his nerves. Minato was speechless at the amount of damage that was done to his son's body. He gulped. Will he be able to recover? Is he awake yet? Theoretically he should be able to make a full recovery when he wakes up, but there lies the problem. He's in a coma. We don't know when he will wake up, or even if he will wake up. A look of shock was evident on Minato's face. He didn't even ponder the possibility that Tsunade wouldn't be able to solve all of the young Hokage's problems and that they wouldn't walk out of the hospital one big happy family, or at least in Minato's mind. Little did he know what was going on in Naruto's mind as they spoke. Flashback end. Naruto's mindscape. What the hell is going on? The last thing that Naruto remembered was being operated on in the hospital, losing consciousness, and then flames. An enormous amount of flames, then feeling dizzy and waking up in this war-ridden wasteland in a body that wasn't his own. It felt like he was seeing everything from the perspective of another person. He would do everything that that person did, it would feel as if it were himself talking as this person spoke. He could even hear this person's thoughts. From what he could gather, he was in a different time period within his own mind. A time long before the formation of the hidden villages, or even before the time of the era of warring states. This was long before then. This was an era when only 3 people could wield chakra. The first was this man's mother, Otsutsuki Kagaya. The second was his brother Otsutsuki Hagoromo, and the third was his other brother, Otsutsuki Hamura. The man's body that he was trapped in was known as Otsutsuki Ace and was the only one of Kagaya's sons born without the body to wield chakra. From what Naruto could understand from the thoughts of Ace and the conversations he had, Kagaya was the progenitor of chakra. They gained this ability by eating a strange fruit that she had picked from the Shinju tree. Naruto found it strange that a fruit was the cause of chakra that every person possessed in his time, but quickly became used to the idea as he had seen stranger things happen. It was that Ace got up and looked in the mirror. What Naruto saw surprised him greatly. Ace's reflection looked like an older version of his own. The first thing that Naruto's noticed were freckles in the same area as Naruto's, on his cheeks in small clumps just under his eyes. Naruto had always found them childish. It was odd, nobody in his family had freckles and yet somehow he had to have inherited them from somewhere. The next thing he noticed were his eyes. They were the same shade of cold gray. This wasn't too surprising as it wasn't exactly a rare color. But it was odd, Ace's mother had the Byakugan and the Rinnegan, so did his brother. While his other brother had the Rinnegan. Even if Ace didn't possess chakra, he should have at least inherited an inactive Byakugan or something. Then he saw his hair. Ace had naturally parted pitch black hair that framed his face and refused to cover his forehead. It was coarse and wave and fell down to the bottom of his neck in the back. It was reminiscent of Naruto's own hairstyle when he didn't purposely spike it up into his father's hairstyle. Naruto's face was more angular though, similar to his father. Ace wore knee-length black shorts with an orange eyelet-studded belt, and a button-up pale yellow shirt. He also wore an orange cowboy hat with 2 smileys, a smiling and a frowning face that were connected by red beads. 2 long side strps came down from his hat and met at a medallion of a bull's skull on his chest. He wore a red beaded necklace around his neck. His attire was far different from the dress of the other Otsutsukis who usually wore traditional robes. Ace of course had his trademark tattoos. The first vertically red ASCE with the S crossed out on his left bicep. He got this one in memory of his best friend Sabo, who died after standing up against Kagaya, telling her that she was abusing her power and should use it to help bring peace towards of the world. He was killed by her not long after, but news of his actions had already reached the ears of many and started a rebellion. The second was a purple skull with crossbones shaped in a cross-like pattern behind it. The skull had white eyes and a large crescent-shaped mustache. This was a tribute to his father, Otsutsuki Newgate Edward. He was the first person to ever show Ace that someone was happy that he was born. They were similar in more than just appearance as well. Ace was more intelligent than even his brothers and was rather polite when the situation called for it, but out of those times he was often rude and aloof, especially to people who tried to order him around or demand something from him. However, he was always in the shadow of his mother and even his brothers. Ace's mother was the ruler of this era and was often referred to as the rabbit goddess for bringing peace to the world with her unrivaled power. However, after she gave birth to triplets, her power began to cloud her judgment and soon resorted to trying to control mankind by force, and people began to see her as a demon rather than a benevolent goddess. Because of what his mother was becoming, he often questioned his own right to exist. He believed that, with what his mother was doing and how she ruled over humans like a tyrant, if he were to die nobody in the world would care, as nobody wanted the son of the devil to live. He never sought after true peace like Hagoromo did, or to lead his clan towards a better future like Hamura did. No, all he ever sought after was the answer to his lifelong question of whether he had truly been born. Ace never really cared about world peace or anything like that. It was too much of a naive dream for someone like him. He knew that any kind of peace wouldn't last and that there would be war with or without chakra for any reason that humans could possibly think of. Ace may not have believed in peace, but there were a few things that he did believe in. Freedom and family. He would do whatever it took to help his brothers achieve their dreams. That is what family is for, right? And Kagaya was a tyrant who was slowly taking freedom away from the people of the world. These were 2 things that Ace would willingly fight and die for. He knew that Kagaya that was close to finding them, but he was going somewhere where he knew that he would find answers, the Shinju tree, where his mother attained this power. He had read a legend recently that only once every millennium would the tree bear a true chakra fruit. However, this legend also stated that 2 decades after the first chakra fruit would be eaten, 5 more would be formed. Though these 5 wouldn't be as strong or as versatile. The 5 fruits each contained a specific element, and once eaten could even give the user the power to turn into that element. Only one person would be able to eat each fruit though. The fruits were supposed to make the user intangible, which would make any person seem like they were invincible, but he knew that wouldn't be enough to stop his mother. He would need the help of others along with his brothers. He had finally made it to the tree and saw the 5 strange-looking fruits hanging from several different branches. She had always been extremely protective of that tree, so he had to hurry. She never wanted anyone to have that kind of power besides her. He climbed up it and reached for an orange fruit with flame-like markings covering the outside. He gulped and took a bite. Naruto watched vividly as Ace's entire life depicted the defeat and sealing of Otsutsuki Kagaya, the creation of the Bijou, how chakra was passed on to humans, how after going off on his own to travel changed his name from Otsutsuki Ace to Portgasti Ace, and finally where Ace planned to have his chakra fruit reincarnate when he died. At Ace's eventual death, Naruto was ejected out of his mind. Naruto's hospital room, Natsuki POV. Natsuki was watching Naruto like she usually did whenever she had time. It had been 4 months since he had fell into a coma. Natsuki had felt so guilt-ridden all those months ago when she woke up and found out that she caused her brother so much pain and suffering. She cried for the better part of the day when she found out that he may never wake up. She had refused to even leave his room for a week. It was only when her parents had gotten on their knees and begged her to come home that she finally listened. Though she does come back every day to visit him for hours on end. After spending so much time with him in the hospital room, she became even more attached. Natsuki had met a lot of the people that Naruto could say was his family. She had met Inuzuka Hana, Uchiha Mikoto, Uchiha Itachi, Uchiha Shisui, and Uchiha Satsuki. She grew immediately jealous that her Oni-sama knew girls besides her, and such pretty ones at that. The ones that came to visit the most were Satsuki, Hana, and Mikoto. Itachi was an ANBU and Shisui was always being sent on ANBU missions and had his duties in the Uchiha police force as well. Kushina and Minato had only come to visit a handful of times, and that was either when they had come with Natsuki or when they came to drag her back home. They stopped coming after the first few weeks. Hana and her became friends after a few months, while Mikoto didn't want anything to do with her at first because of how Naruto's family treated him. But Mikoto decided to give the girl a chance and they could now hold a civil conversation. Her and Satsuki did not get along at all, mostly because Satsuki had decided that Natsuki didn't deserve her Naruto Nii's forgiveness or love. For anyone watching the two, they would just see a cat fight between 2 little girls with huge brother complexes. Natsuki brought herself out of her thoughts and stared at the motionless form of her brother. She had a sad smile on her face. Oni-sama, I hope you wake up soon. Hokage Tower. Minato was sitting on his desk finishing up all of the paperwork that had accumulated over the week due to spending so many hours training his children. They had really focused more on using the Kyuubi's chakra, so that they wouldn't lose control, should it ever try to take them over like what happened to Natsuki. Even Nawaki had actually trained a little more. A little, he was still lazy and refused to do much hard work, but it was better than nothing. Minato had noticed that Natsuki was getting even more depressed as the days went on. She still blamed herself for what happened to Naruto and would spend most of her time in his hospital room. At first he was concerned with Nawaki's and Narumi's lack of concern about Naruto, but he later put off the thought, thinking that they were probably greatly disturbed with the amount of blood they saw and didn't want to see their brother in that condition. He was half right, their minds were scarred from the amount of blood, but they wouldn't ever really put any thought into Naruto's condition. He had been busy the last few months, he could barely make any time to spend with his children. Tensions were rising within Konoha, and if something wasn't done it could spell the end of Konoha as he knew it. From the spies that he had in the Uchiha clan, he had found out that they were planning a coup d'état. If they went through with it, could cause a civil war within Konoha which would give other nations a chance to invade and overtake the village. It was the worst-case scenario. Minato knew he had to do something, but for now he would be patient and see if they could come to a peaceful negotiation. The Uchiha were one of the founding clans of Konoha, but over the years they had lost power and influence. One of the causes was that night over 11 years ago when the Kyuubi escaped from its seal. There were many eyewitnesses who claimed that they had seen the design of the Sharingan eye in the eyes of the Kyuubi, suggesting that sometime after its escape it was caught under the control of an Uchiha and used to cause mass destruction and death before it was resealed. If it really was the Uchiha who were responsible for that act of terrorism on the leaf, and they would be dealt with accordingly, but Minato's spies denied all knowledge of any Uchiha wielding an eye strong enough to control a Bijou. The last person to be able to fully subdue a bijou with visual prowess alone was Madara Uchiha, and he was killed by the Shodaime Hokage after his betrayal. However, it cannot either be confirmed nor denied that the Kyuubi was being controlled, and yet the Uchiha slowly lost all of their political power and were segregated to the outskirts of Konoha. It didn't help the village's cause that every Hokage up to date has led the village according to the Senju's ideals. The Shodaime and Nidaime Hokages were both Senju by blood and helped to found the village and make it into what it is today. The Sandaime Hokage was the student of Senju Tobirama, the Nidaime Hokage, and was also trained by Senju Hashirama, the Shodaime Hokage. After being directly trained by two of the previous Hokages, Sarutobi Hiruzen adopted many of their principles and beliefs. The Yondaime Hokage, Namikaze Minato, was trained by Jiraiya, one of Sarutobi's prized students and one of the Sannin. All of the Hokages had led the village with the beliefs of the Senju, always trusting their judgment. After years of being oppressed, they had finally reached their breaking point and there would be no going back. Minato was broken out of his thoughts as he sensed someone land on the roof just outside of the office and climbed through the window. "Sensei, I didn't expect you to be back so soon. I would have thought that you would at least stop by the hot springs for a few hours to do your research." The Toad Sage let out a chuckle. "Normally I would have, but the information I have is too important." Minato's face lost all of its playfulness from before. "The toads summoned me to MT Mayaboku a few days ago. They came to me with a prophecy." Minato immediately remembered how seriously the toads take their prophecies. The previous one Jiraiya believed was about him and how he would bring peace to the elemental nations. It hasn't happened yet, but believed it would someday. "What did they say, Sensei?" Jiraiya closed his eyes as he remembered what the prophecy was. "They told me that a child born from great power but with memories of old shall pave the way toward a new era of peace. Whether they walk the path of light or is forced into the darkness shall determine what the future will hold. Their predecessor has already burned the path for them, but it shall be their will of fire that determines whether they will walk it or forge their own." "Minato, I believe that the child the prophecy speaks about is either Nawaki, Narumi, or Natsuki. I'd like to let them sign the Toad contract when on their birthday." Minato looked shocked. "Are you sure they're ready? And they've already signed Tsunade's slug contract too. Can a person even hold two contracts at once?" Jiraiya just nodded. "I have already spoken to Tsunade about this. She and the slugs both agreed, so it should be fine. Besides, their birthday is still 2 months away and they'll start the academy a few weeks after, so it'll be perfect." Minato looked excited for the first time in weeks. "Okay, I'm sure they'd love it. I think I'll teach them how to summon after they start the academy." Jiraiya nodded and left out the window to do his research. Minato could hear him giggling as soon as he left. Little did they know that they couldn't be more wrong about the prophecy. Naruto's hospital room. It was dark, almost midnight. Visiting hours were over long ago and only nurses working the night shift could be seen around the hospital. Though if you were to look into one of the rooms you would see a skinny, frail-looking blonde stirring. His fingers would twitch every now and then. Groans could be heard escaping his mouth and his breathing became irregular. Then there were flames. Orange-red flames surrounded his body and then he started glowing. After the flames disappeared from view, anybody would be shocked at what they saw. Gone was the skinny and frail build that looked as if he would break if you pushed him over, and laying there was a tan muscular blonde that looked as if he didn't have an ounce of body fat on him. Naruto slowly took off the oxygen mask that was hooked up to life support and tried to open his eyes. The key word was tried because there were bandages covering his forehead and the entire right side of his face. He unhooked himself from all of the machines, pulled himself to the side of the bed and sat up. The first thing he noticed when he opened his left eye was that almost all of his body was covered in medical bandages. He noticed that he was in a hospital room and his mind tried to come up with the possibilities of why he was there. It was then that flashes of his fight with Natsuki made their way into his mind. "Oh yeah, Natsuki lost control during our spar and almost killed me. I guess living someone else's memories in fast-forward messes with your memory a little. They were real, right? Of course they were too real to be any kind of dream. I must have been out for a while if I was on life support." It was then that he headed towards the bathroom to see why he had all those bandages on him. Naruto slowly got up off of the bed and stumbled a little due to not walking for so long. After a minute or so he managed to recover and walked into the bathroom and looked in the mirror. What he saw made him realize that his first assessment was correct. The entire right side of his body was covered in bandages. Naruto then noticed the length of his hair. It had grown considerably and resembled a hairstyle that Uchiha Madara had favored. He noted that what he had on were solely medical bandages so that any wounds he had received under them would be able to breathe and heal over time. He closed his eyes and braced himself for what he would see. Not wanting to make any conclusions until all of the bandages were off, he proceeded to unwrap them with his eyes closed. He unwrapped the last of the bandages and let them fall to the floor at his feet. He opened his left eye, for some reason his right wouldn't open, and stood in front of the body-length mirror with a speechless expression. His mind was black and couldn't even form words for a minute. The first thing he did was move closer to the mirror and forcibly opened his right eyelids with his index finger and thumb. It was then that all his worries were confirmed. His eye was gone. Naruto removed his fingers from his face and focused more on the large scar over where his eye used to be. He traced his hand over its length and chuckled dryly at its design. The scar itself reached from his mid-forehead on the right side of his face and extended through his eye and ended to the right of his mouth in a lightning bolt pattern. Yep, a freaking lightning bolt. His eyes then moved downward and saw the scar that started near his trapezius and ended just a few inches above his waistline. It was several inches thick with fraying edges every inch or two. He felt every centimeter of the scar with his right hand and cringed, remembering what the pain of being sliced open felt like. By all means he should have bled out. It was then that Naruto noticed that the skin on his right hand was burned off. The burn extended to an inch or two above his wrist. There wasn't a single patch of skin left in that area. What caught his sight next was that the burn on his leg had the same characteristics as his hand, only in the shape of a claw. All in all he was a mess, but for some odd reason he smiled. Battle scars, huh? Proof that I fought and survived. I suppose that it's fitting for the past to mark me before moving on to a new future. With those thoughts in mind he walked out of the bathroom and the hospital room he had been staying in and moved into the hallway. He looked out the window of the hallway while walking. Must be close to midnight. Konoha Hospital front desk. Naruto had just arrived in the lobby of the hospital and was only a few feet away from the front desk when all of the nurses turned to him in shock. Uzumaki Namikaze-sama, you're awake. You shouldn't be standing. You've been in a comatose state for a while now. Your body shouldn't even be able to function right now. The head nurse looked at him and saw that he was only wearing a pair of elastic shorts. In fact, your body was frail and weak yesterday. I don't know how you recovered so quickly. Even with medical ninjutsu that should be impossible. Naruto looked at her with a blank face. I am fine, there is no need for your concern, but thank you. Now can you tell me how long I've been out for? The nurse looked shocked when he claimed to be fine. If I remember correctly, you've been in a coma for a little 4 months now. Oh, I need to contact your parents, please stay here. With that the head nurse left the hospital and left only a few of the other nurses behind. One of the other nurses decided to speak up. She'll be right back after contacting your parents. If you have any other questions about what has been going on while you've been in your coma, please feel free to ask us and we'll answer to the best of our ability. Naruto looked at her thoughtfully. Do you keep visitors' logs for specific patients? The nurse looked at him oddly. Yes we do. In fact yours should be, right around here. She reached under the desk and pulled out a small booklet of sign-in sheets labeled Room 304. He started flipping through the pages and predictably enough Nawaki and Narumi had only visited the day that he was brought in and he could count the times that Kushina and Minato visited on one hand. He smiled softly when he saw Hana's, Mikoto's, Satsuki's, Itachi's, and Shisui's names written down. What surprised him the most was Natsuki. She had visited him every day that he had been in the hospital. It made him a little happy that at least someone in his old family still cared about him. Perhaps she just feels bad that she was the one who put me in there. Perhaps I should give her chance. We may never be family ever again, but that doesn't mean I should forsake her completely. After all, a family isn't a group of people related to one another by blood. My memories of the Otsutsuki clan prove that. No. A family is a group of people who will do anything for each other and will love each other unconditionally. Hana, Mikoto, Satsuki, Shisui, Itachi, they are my family. It was at that point the head nurse returned with Minato, Kushina, and Natsuki in tow. I figure I should just play as part of the perfect, happy, little family for now. At least a little. Minato and Kushina just stood there with happy little smiles plastered on their faces, not realizing his thoughts. However, as soon as Natsuki saw him, she charged him at her top speed and glomped onto him, sobbing into his chest. He could hear the muffled cries of, "I'm sorry," and, "It's all my fault," as he lovingly rubbed the back of her head. She looked up into his eyes, and sobbed, even hurt her, noticing all of his scars. The scars that she caused. Natsuki was just glad to have him back, and now they could become even closer than before. Poor Natsuki. Her dream may have come true had Namikaze Minato not been their father. The Will of Fire still burns. Uchiha Massacre. It was a cold fall morning for the people of Konoha in early October. It had been a rough few months for Naruto especially. He had woken up from his coma 2 months ago and there were several things irritating him at the moment. The first was his physical condition. For some odd reason, or innate power, his body was in the same condition as it had been almost 6 months ago, but that didn't mean that he was without problems. Naruto had to begin his training from the ground up because his muscles had not been used for any kind of strenuous activity for months. Though that problem was rather easy to fix after several weeks of physical therapy and starting back up on his training regimen again. The second was Natsuki. She had become far too attached for Naruto's liking. At first he had thought that it was kind of sweet that she was worried for him, but now it was just pissing him off. She would cling to him whenever she could and her eyes would start tearing up every time that she had looked at his face because of the scar. And of course she was still blaming herself for it. Naruto knew that his accident wasn't completely her fault and didn't really blame her for it, but it didn't exactly drive them closer. Natsuki had started babying Naruto unnecessarily. Every time that he would try to leave the house she would try to stop him, thinking that she would lose him again. Needless to say, Naruto had to resort to sunshining everywhere just so he wouldn't have to deal with her. Naruto had not been able to use his chakra at all while in his comatose state, so his training with Shisui had to start from the ground up once again. He could still remember their reactions to when he walked into the Uchiha compound the day after his dismissal from the hospital. Flashback, 2 months ago. It was the morning after Naruto had been discharged from the hospital and he was on his way to the Uchiha compound. It had taken some doing to get used to using his body again, but he managed. "It's been a long time since I've been here, huh? I wonder how they will react once they see me," were his thoughts as he walked up to the main gates of the Uchiha compound. Naruto was walking through the streets of the Uchiha district and noticed all of the stares he was getting. At first the young blonde was confused as to why he was receiving all of the attention, but then it hit him, news about what happened to me must have spread through the village. It's not that often that your morning is greeted with the one-eyed son of the Hokage with a lightning bolt engraved into his face. Naruto wasn't too fond of the scar on his face. Sure, it was kind of cool, but it looked like something out of a manga to him. How ironic. He was broken from his thoughts as he arrived right in front of his destination. The Uchiha clan head's house. Naruto had never met Fugaku before. Every time that he was over at the Uchiha compound, Fugaku was either at meetings with the clan elders or attending to his clan duties. But from what he had heard, Mikoto's husband had a stick shoved pretty far up his ass and was far too absorbed in the beliefs of the Uchiha clan to even make time for his wife. Naruto knocked on the door a few times before waiting for someone to answer. He then heard footsteps and a distinctly feminine voice, "Hold on, I'll be right there." The door slowly started to open a few moments later. "What can I do for dash?" Mikoto just stared down slightly at Naruto with a shocked look on her face. Naruto just smiled softly at her. "It's good to see you again after so long, Mikoto-sama." It was then that Mikoto was broken out of her frozen state and hit him over the head with the wooden spoon that was in her hand. "How many times have I told you to call me Mikoto-chan?" "Mikoto-chan," she yelled tearfully and pulled him into a tight motherly hug. Hi Mikoto-chan, I've missed you." Naruto returned the hug toward his mother figure. They stayed like that for a few minutes as Mikoto let all of her tears out. Mikoto pulled away and wiped the tears from her eyes. "Why don't you come? I'm sure Satsuki and Shisui would love to see you." Sniff. "I wish Itachi was here to see you again too though. He has been busy with his ANBU duties over the past few months, but he visited you in the hospital when he had the time. We all did." It was then that they walked into the living room and Mikoto called out to her daughter and nephew, "Satsuki-chan. Shisui-kun. Guess who came over to visit?" A few moments later Shisui walked out of the bathroom sleepily, toothbrush still in his mouth. "Who could it possibly be to get you this worked up, me dash?" Shisui stopped his question as his eyes traveled to the long blonde-haired boy with a large scar on his face. He stared at the boy for a minute before his eyes widened, realizing who it is. "Naruto? Is that really you, Naruto?" Naruto smirked. "Does it really take you that long to recognize your own student sensei? We've known each other for over 3 years. You should be able to recognize me by now. I see you still have your poor manners as always." Mikoto could only stifle a laugh at the student and teacher interaction. Shisui was rooted in his spot. His toothbrush had long since fallen out of his mouth and landed on the floor. He couldn't believe it. The student who many of the doctors told him would never wake up, including Tsunade herself, was standing in front of him. Sure, he had a few changes to his appearance, but it was definitely him. Nobody else was that rude or sarcastic with him. It just had to be him. That was when Satsuki chose to walk out of her room, still half asleep and in her pajamas. "What's going on?" she asked in her cute little voice as she yawned. It was then that she noticed that there was one extra person in the room. It was her, Naruto Nii. But he looked so different. Whatever, he's still my favorite Nii-san. Yes, over the years she grew far more attached to him, and with Itachi always gone on his ANBU duties she wound up spending much more time with Naruto. Because of this she always played with him and watched him train. There were even times that she refused to sleep in her own bed, opting to cuddle up with her Naruto and Ai in the guest bedroom. She really did love her Naruto and Ai. She even had dreams about him sometimes. Satsuki knew that her Nai-san was in a coma and they didn't know if he would wake up, and that made her sad. So much so that her dreams about them spending time together only increased. Because of this, she thought that him standing there in her living room was just another dream, so she wanted to make the most of it. She walked up to Naruto and just hugged him tightly and looked up at him with tears threatening to fall. "I love you, Naruto and Ai. Even if you are a dream, never leave me alone again." Shisui got out of his shock and smiled sincerely at the scene, while Mikoto just cooed at cute they looked together. Naruto cupped her chin and raised her head up so that she was looking into his eye. "Satsuki, I promise I won't leave you ever again. I'm not going to be dying that easily anytime soon." Satsuki clung onto him even tighter. "By the way, what do you mean dreams? I'm right here, Satsuki-chan. Have you been having dreams about me?" Naruto asked in a teasing tone. Needless to say, Satsuki flushed red with embarrassment after realizing that she was wide awake, which caused everyone in the room to erupt in laughter. They spent the rest of the day catching up with each other. Naruto was naturally curious about everything that happened while he was unconscious, and the Uchihas were curious about his new scars and appearance. It was decided that Shisui would help him get back on track with his training before the academy started in a couple of months. Flashback end. It was October 10th. Some believed that this day was cursed because of all the things that had happened on this day: the Kyuubi attack, the birth of the Uzumaki Namikaze quadruplets, and the death of the Sandaime Hokage. Little did they know that another event would be engraved into that curse as of tonight. As of this moment, Naruto was cursing the Nidaime Hokage for creating the academy. It was the most pointless and boring thing he could ever think of doing at this moment. He had learned everything that the academy had to offer already. He had mastered the henge, kawarimi, and bunshin ages ago, and he heard that people actually failed to graduate because they couldn't preform them. He just couldn't fathom it. Naruto had started the academy 2 months ago, and guess what he found out? The entire first year of the academy is devoted to language, mathematics, history, physical education, etc. There were classes for civilian students. The blonde could not actually believe that his parents wanted him to wait to train until the academy started. He would essentially be wasting another year. The only redeeming quality about today was that it was the Kyuubi festival, where the villagers and shinobi would celebrate the Yondaime's defeat of the Kyuubi in a festival going on in the center of the village. Because of this, class got out at noon so that everybody could get ready for the celebrations. Now Naruto didn't care about this. What he did care about that it was his and his siblings' birthdays. Unlike his siblings, however, Naruto wasn't excited for the party they would be having tonight or all of the gifts that he would receive. No, Naruto would usually spend the night on top of the Hokage monument after receiving a few gifts from the people that actually mattered to him. He would sit on the Sandaime's head and wonder thoughts such as, was it good that I was born? Would anybody cared if I died? He had always pondered his own existence and had trouble accepting his parentage, seeing as how they had never shown him the kind of love that a child should receive. Naruto had even more to think about now, as his values were similar to Ace's, and he had found his answer only at his death. He was brought out of his musing as Satsuki grabbed his hand and dragged him out of the classroom towards the Uchiha compound. I guess class already ended and I was too preoccupied with my own thoughts to notice. They finally made it to the Uchiha district and started walking through the streets. It was then that Naruto's thoughts ran wild as he noticed everyone looking over at him nervously. Why does everyone look so nervous around me? It can't be because I'm an outsider. I always come here. I've noticed before too. Pretty much all of the Uchiha except the children have been looking pretty on edge the past month or two. Especially when I'm around. Could it be because of how close I am to Satsuki, because she's a member of the clan head's family? No, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Perhaps it is because I'm the Hokage's son. If that's the case, then they're probably planning something. Whatever it is, it can't be good. A normal 12-year-old boy wouldn't notice such things, but it can be said that Naruto is a genius or some type of prodigy, only second to Itachi. I suppose there's no use worrying about it at the moment. I might as well just enjoy spending today with my family. With those thoughts in mind, they arrived at the house and took of their shinobi sandals before heading into the living room. The only ones there were Mikoto and Hana. "Happy birthday, Naruto," they both shouted. Naruto looked around and noticed that neither Shisui nor Itachi were there. Mikoto noticed him looking around and chose this moment to speak. "Sorry, Naruto-kun, but Shisui and Itachi aren't here. They were called to the Hokage Tower earlier today." Her eyes looked sad at that last part, and Naruto noticed that, "but they did leave behind gifts in case they didn't see you later on today." Naruto noticed that Mikoto was forcing a smile. Mikoto-chan, you know I don't believe in celebrating my birthday. Hana voiced her own opinion on the matter. We all know how you feel, just don't think of this as a birthday party then, just all of spending the day together. Now go ahead and open your presents. Mikoto nodded and handed Naruto a navy blue box with a red rope tied around it. He opened the box and found two things. The first was a pure black eye patch. A chuckle escaped his mouth after seeing the present. The second was a scroll. He opened the scroll and gasped. This is Dash. It was Mikoto who answered him. That is from Itachi. It's his own personal scroll of all of the genjutsu that he know or has created. He thought that you might like it seeing as how you're quite interested in genjutsu. Naruto was left speechless. I don't know what to say. Mikoto smiled sadly, knowing that these would be the final gifts he received from part of his family. Now for Shisui-kun's gift. She grabbed another box. This one was black and had the Uchiha's clan emblem on the front of it. Naruto opened the box and saw a thicker black scroll. He tried to open it but couldn't. Naruto was surprised at not being able to read his sensei's present. Mikoto saw his surprised expression and figured that she should explain. This scroll contains every jutsu that Shisui-kun knows as well as a few that he thought that you might like. Naruto's shock only grew. Every jutsu that Shisui-sensei knows. Sensei is the most powerful Uchiha of this generation and knows dozens of different jutsus. But still that doesn't explain why I can't open the scroll. As you may have noticed, you're not able to open it just yet. Certain circumstances must be met before it'll open for you, but he said that those circumstances should be met sooner rather than later. Naruto noticed Mikoto's downcast expression. Okay, something has to be going on. Mikoto is always so sweet and energetic, she's almost never sad. And both Shisui and Itachi not being here. Why would Minato call them to the Hokage Tower? He should be helping to set up for the party tonight. Maybe I should show up to the party for once just to see what's going on. Mikoto noticed Naruto looking at her suspiciously and decided to take his mind off of whatever he was thinking, knowing that he was too smart for his own good. Okay, everyone, time for cake. That brought Naruto out of his musings. Whatever, I'll figure it out later. Hokage Tower, meeting room, 2 p.m. The Yondaime Hokage, Namake's Minato, was sitting behind a long desk inside of the Hokage's personal meeting room. Sitting beside him were all three of the elders, Hamura, Kohara, and Danzo. In front of them were two kneeling ANBU operatives, Uchiha Shisui and Uchiha Itachi. These two were Minato's spies inside of the Uchiha clan. They had just finished reporting all of the information they had on the Uchiha's plan for the coup d'état. Minato rubbed the bridge of his nose. He really wished that it didn't have to come to this. Is that everything you could gather? Do they really plan to revolt against Konoha? Shisui closed his eyes and let out a sigh. Hi Hokage-sama. The children have no idea that the rest of the clan plans on doing this though. The only one who has spoken against it is Uchiha Mikoto and has refused to participate in the coup. Minato was glad that his wife's friend was still on their side. Where will she be tonight? Itachi chose to reply. She is one of the only Uchiha to have relation with those outside of the clan. Tonight she should be at your children's birthday party, Hokage-sama. Minato smiled, knowing that she would be spared should things not go as planned. If the Uchiha have decided to wage war on Konoha, then we will have no choice but to judge them as traitors to the village. Kohara declared. Hamura decided to voice his opinion. Yes, I believe that is the correct course of action. We need to deal with them now before they take action and cost us the lives of countless shinobi and civilians in a conflict with the village. Danzo looked impassively as Minato, already having plans of his own. You know what you must do, Minato. Are you willing to risk the lives of everyone in the village based on the actions of one clan? Minato just sighed. If this situation isn't taken care of, then it will cause a civil war inside of Konoha. Any war will suffer losses on both sides. I am not willing to risk the lives of the villagers based solely on the actions of the Uchiha. Should a civil war break out and the other hidden villages catch wind of it, then it will give them a chance to invade the village while we are weak. If this problem is not taken care of before the revolt, then it may as well lead to the Fourth Great Shinobi War. All those in the room came to the same conclusion. Minato continued, I have a plan to take care of this. Shisui, you have the most powerful eyes seen in several generations of Uchiha. I need you to put Fugaku under your control for as long as you can. I need you to but me as much time as possible until I can come up with a way to negotiate peacefully with the Uchiha. Shisui nodded. Tonight during my children's party and the Kyubi festival, I want you to place this genjutsu on him. The Uchiha do not usually come to either of these events, so it will be the perfect opportunity. Minato sighed. However, I do have a backup plan should you fail or if the Uchiha catch wind of our plan. This caught the attention of both the Uchiha and the elders in the room. Itachi, Shisui, you two are to separate the moment you leave this office and are not to make contact with each other until 5 p.m. exactly, which is when your mission will start. Itachi, you are to wait outside the main gates of the Uchiha compound, and should Shisui not arrive at exactly 5 p.m., then you are to exterminate the Uchiha 1 hour later. Everyone in the room gasped as they heard Minato's plan. They were expecting to hear a plan such as this, but expecting and hearing are two different things. Though you are to leave anyone under the age of 12 alive since they have nothing to do this coup d'etat, and your mother should she be at the compound. Itachi, should it come to this, then you are to leave this village as a nuke nin. Itachi nodded. Good, then you are dismissed. Let us hope that everything goes smoothly tonight. Danzo had his own thoughts on his mind. I cannot let Shisui succeed. They are traitors who have gone against Konoha and will do it again if they receive the chance. If my plan works, then I shall gain the Mangekyo Sharingan and all of the Sharingan left in the corpses of the Uchiha. Konoha Forest, 4 p.m. Uchiha Shisui was not having a good day. First he found out that the coup d'etat was going to take place tomorrow, then he had to miss his student's birthday party because he had to report to the Hokage and the elders, then he is given the order to place the Uchiha clan head under his jinjutsu to control him, and now before he could make it to the Uchiha compound to perform his mission, he was intercepted by Danzo. Shisui had already known that Danzo would have some kind hidden agenda, so he was ready. This fact alone was the reason that Shisui still had both of his eyes. Danzo had tried to give him some kind of speech about protecting the leaf his own was and came at him with the intention to steal his eye. However, Shisui caught his wrist and put him under a powerful Sharingan Genjutsu. He knew it wouldn't last though. As soon as the Uchiha activated his Sharingan, he noticed the chakra in Danzo's right eye. It was the same chakra color as a Sharingan. Shisui immediately realized that the only reason that Danzo would have the Sharingan was to use the Izanagi, a forbidden jutsu of the Sharingan that allows the user to alter fate. However, the cost of using it is blindness in the eye that was used. He quickly shunshined to his left, and sure enough, the Danzo that he was looking at disappeared and another reappeared right behind where he used to be standing. How did you manage to see through my Izanagi? Danzo asked, annoyed. Did you really think that any illusion could escape my Sharingan? The one-eyed man sighed. I suppose I'll have to approach this differently then. Danzo signaled for his root to come out of the shadows and appear before him. 20 shinobi wearing blank porcelain masks and regular ANBU attire shunshined onto the battleground. 2 more appeared in different clothing though. Both of them wore short-sleeved black jackets with high collars and red straps. Both of them also had tantos strapped to their backs. The first one had shoulder-length orange hair and wore his black jacket open with a brown kimono-like shirt underneath. The second one had short black hair, wore a strange mask covering the top half of his face. He wore clothing similar to an Aburame's under his jacket. He recognized these two as Yamanaka Fu and Aburame Toryun. Both of them were members of his graduating class back at the academy. He had always wondered what happened to them. Shisui stared at the root, assessing them, a bit excessive if you ask me. I mean, I am only one man and yet you send some of your best operatives after me along with yourself? You must be getting old, Danzo. Danzo just stared at him impassively. It is quite the contrary actually. You are the strongest Uchiha to have been born in generations. But that ends now. I will take your eyes and then retrieve the eyes from the Uchiha corpses that Itachi will leave behind. I shall protect Konoha with my own 2 hands. I can't let him go through with any of that. It will go against everything that we have been working towards. I need to take care of him now. Shisui started weaving hand seals and finally ended in the tiger seal, Katan, Gukaku no Jutsu. Shisui breathed out a large fireball that was aimed straight for Danzo. As the large fireball moved closer, all of the roots started weaving hand seals. Suetun, Mizurappa, large torrents of water escaped from each of their mouths and met the oversized fireball in the middle of the field. Their collision produced a steam that covered the entire field. It was a bad idea to counter on their part when they could have easily dodged. Shisui could easily sense their chakra signatures while in the steam and proceeded to make his move. The Uchiha shunshined across the battlefield, drew his tanto, and proceeded to slit the throats of 5 root agents before someone realized what he was doing. 2 charged him, but were easily disabled by a Sharingan, Genjutsu, and their chests slashed open with a tanto enhanced with Katan chakra. Futon, Daitappa, Danzo let loose a large gust of wind to blow away the steam, but by then Shisui had already killed 3 more of his root agents. Shisui sheathed his tanto and reached behind him into the 2 weapons pouches on his belt. A group of 6 root began to charge him with kunai in hand, but after they had taken their first few steps, Shisui shunshined in between the group and let loose a barrage of shuriken, killing them instantly. I'm glad that most of Danzo's root are only mid-chunin to low jonin level shinobi. Had they been more skilled I may have already been dead by now. Shisui jumped back and started to quickly go through his hand signs, hoping to finish all of them off. Katan, Zukaku, he unleashed a small fireball towards them which erupted into a giant firestorm, causing widespread destruction and incinerating a large part of the forest they were in. Danzo, Fu, and Torian managed to get out of the blast radius, but they were forced to dodge the flying debris that the jutsu caused. The 4 remaining route were not as fortunate and were incinerated instantly. What was the previous battlefield was now nothing more than crater and completely scorched debris. Many of the trees were still on fire, creating even more shadows, and the setting sun wasn't going to make it easier to find them. Danzo, Fu, and Torian were nowhere in sight. The young Uchiha knew that they had escaped his last jutsu and were now waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Fu is a Yamanaka, so he will specialize in mine techniques, and Torian is an Aburame, so he'll be using bug techniques. If I remember correctly, he specialized in venomous bugs, which is why he always wore so much clothing. They'll probably try to work together to bring me down. It's likely that they are the strongest shinobi that Danzo has in his route. They'll probably be at least mid-jonin level. I'll need to be careful. I need to take care of them first, and then I can focus on Danzo. He was right. Out of the corner of his eye, the Sharingan picked up the movement of 2 people moving out of the forest shadows. He jumped to the right to dodge a barrage of kunai that would have killed him had he not seen it. They charged him moving in a zigzag pattern and tried to overwhelm him with taijutsu. Then Fu unsheathed his tanto while Shisui pulled out his own. They engaged in a fierce kenjutsu match, trading blow for blow, sparks flying everywhere. Shisui slowly overwhelming him, but just as he was about to take control, he jumped back to avoid a punch from Torian. Shisui noticed that the ground where the punch connected was being eaten away by a strange purple substance. Those must be his nano-sized poisonous insects. It seems that they corrode whatever is touched. Quite the troublesome ability. I can't let him touch me. I need to put some distance between us. Shisui shunshined to the other side of the battlefield and unleashed a barrage of shuriken towards them. They jumped out of the way and prepared for another assault. Torian slowly began to remove his jacket and later his shirt until he was topless. The poisonous insects spread to completely cover his entire body. Damn. So now I can't even touch him? I'll have to rely on my ninjutsu and jinjutsu now. Fu was the first to rush at Shisui. He made a peculiar hand sign that was used by all of the Yamanaka, Shintenshin no Jutsu. Fu quickly took over Shisui's mind but was quickly forced out with the help of the Sharingan. However, it was enough time for Torian to get close and grab his left arm. Shisui quickly pulled away, but the damage had already been done. Arg! Damn it, he infected me with those damn insects. I have no other choice. Shisui quickly unsheathed his tanto. He concentrated Katan chakra into it and brought it down on his left arm, severing it just below the elbow. I need to finish this quickly. I've already spent enough time with these 2. The one-armed Uchiha quickly put the tanto in his mouth and grabbed a handful of shuriken and threw them at Fu while making a few one-handed seals. Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Justu. Fu was able to dodge the majority of them but was hit by a few. He winced, and as he opened his eyes back up was met with a pair of Sharingan, Jinjutsu, sleep. Fu slowly lost consciousness before he fell to his knees and his head was severed by Shisui's tanto. Fu! He heard Torian yell. As soon as Fu's head hit the ground, Torian rushed toward Shisui and threw a barrage of punches and kicks out of rage. Shisui was forced to dodge them all, not wanting to risk being infected by the poisonous insects again. The Sharingan uses finally found an opening after ducked under one of Torian's punches and drove his fire-encased tanto into his heart. He overloaded the tanto with Katan chakra and burned a hole right through where Torian's heart used to be. Shisui's hand and arm was completely burned from the use of Katan chakra, but he pushed through it, knowing that he still had one fight left in him. He turned around and was greeted with the sight of Danzo. The bandages on his face were gone, revealing a pure white eye, a sign of blindness from the use of his Anaji. He had tossed away his large black robe and was left shirtless so his right arm could clearly be seen. It was a sickly gray color with what looked to be a face on the shoulder. Is that a face? What the hell is up with his arm? So it has come down for me to actually fight? You are indeed strong, Uchiha Shisui, but you shall meet your end by my hand just as so many others have. Shisui reached into his weapons pouch and pulled out 3 kunai with exploding tags attached. Before Danzo could even move, Shisui enhanced the kunai with futon chakra and threw them through the air at a piercing speed. Danzo couldn't get out of the way, so he just put his hands in a singular seal, Mokuton, Mokujihiki. Danzo created dome-shaped wooden wall made from tree roots to protect him from the blast. TCH. He can even use the Mokuton? What the hell is going on? It must somehow be connected to that arm and face. I have to close the distance. I can't let him use any more Mokuton jutsu. Shisui rushed and unharmed Danzo and engaged him with taijutsu. The Sharingan was able to predict Danzo's movements perfectly and he managed to avoid a majority of them, but his body could keep up with that speed for long and was eventually overwhelmed and launched into a tree with a punch to the chest from Danzo. Danzo rushed Shisui once again, but this time he had to avoid a series of small fireballs coming from one of the tree branches. He quickly wove a few hand seals, futon, shinkaha, a highly compressed blade of wind escaped Danzo's mouth and cut the tree down, along with several others in the area. Shisui shunshined back to the ground panting, about 30 feet behind Danzo, before the trees could collapse onto each other. Damn it, I'm tiring out. I need to finish him off soon. If I can't change the fate of the Uchiha clan then I'll at least do Konoha the service of killing this bastard. Danzo saw the exhausted form of Shisui over his shoulder. I suppose I'll finish this right now. Danzo finished his hand seals and inhaled a deep breath of air. Futon, Shinku Taijyoku. Danzo then released a large, crushing sphere of wind chakra meant to completely crush Shisui, but when the dust cleared Danzo couldn't believe his eyes. In front of him stood a completely battered Shisui with his Mangekyo Sharingan active within a large red skeletal figure. A second later, muscle and tissue began to wrap around the skeletal figure and then its chakra began to flare until it was completely clad in armor. Danzo was about to summon Baku, but before he could even flinch he was pierced with a large orange sword of ethereal energy. This is the third and final power of the Mangekyo Sharingan, the Susanoo. This is my last resort, my perfect defense Danzo, nothing can penetrate it. To think that I'd actually be forced to use it, you're finished Danzo. That blade stabbing you through the stomach is the sword of Totsuka. It is an ethereal weapon, an enchanted blade that seals anyone it pierces into the world of drunken dreams for all eternity, never to see the light of day again. Goodbye Shimura Danzo. With that Danzo was slowly absorbed into the blade and sealed into the sake bottle from which the blade came from. Shisui deactivated his Mangekyo Sharingan in his left eye back into his normal Sharingan. He clutched his right eye in pain. Erf damn. I was just a second too late in activating my Susanoo. One of the stray wind blades from his last jutsu managed to damage my eye. I was lucky to still be able to use the Susanoo after that. Well, it's finally over. From how dark it is I'd say that it's around 6 o'clock. I was too late, damn it Danzo. It was then that Shisui started coughing up a large amount of blood. So I was right. He must have collapsed one of my lungs with that chakra-enhanced punch that sent me flying into the tree. That must have been why I could only preform low-level katan jutsus. I can already feel my other lung being filled with blood. I assume I won't be able to breathe anymore within the hour. His hand then went up to his eye as he was brought back to his thoughts. I suppose my student could use one last gift from his sensei. Shisui took out an empty scroll and wrote a small note in it. He summoned one of his messenger crows to deliver the message, and with that done he hobbled not too far away to the meeting place he wrote down. Uzumaki Namikaze's estate. Naruto was not having a fun night. He had thought that as he went home to the birthday celebration at the Uzumaki Namikaze's estate then he might find some answers as to why Mikoto had been so depressed that afternoon. He had seen her at the party, but she was acting pretty much the same, so he decided to put it out of his mind at the time. He had left when it was time for his siblings to open their presents and the first one they received was the Toad contract from Jiraiya and he told them about some prophecy. Naruto for one never believed in prophecies, but he was a little upset that they received yet another summoning contract only a few months into the academy while he got nothing. He should have expected that. It was right after he left the estate that a crow landed on his shoulder and handed him a scroll. Crows were Shisui's summons and he never used them unless it was an emergency, so Naruto quickly unrolled the scroll. It read, "Dear Naruto, meet me at the cliff overlooking the Naka River, just outside of the clearing where we met for the first time. Come as quick as possible, there are things you need to know as well as one final gift from me. Come as quickly as possible, I don't have much time to speak to you. Make sure you aren't followed. Shisui." What could all of that mean? Might as well hurry, I don't have anything else to do. He quickly rushed towards their desired meeting spot, wanting to get there as fast as possible. Cliffside, 5 minutes later. Naruto finally arrived at the specified location, making sure he wasn't followed. He saw Shisui standing near the edge of the cliff facing the river waiting for him. Naruto approached quietly, wondering what it was that was so important that he was called all the way to the outskirts of the village. "Naruto, it's good to see you, I'm glad you could make it here quick enough," Shisui commented as he slowly turned around. "Sensei, what was it that was so important?" He stopped his line of thought when he saw Shisui's battered form. There was a large gash over his right eye and was releasing a large amount of blood from it. There were cuts and bruises all over his body. He was coughing up large amounts of blood, but the worst was his arm. His left arm was completely severed from his body and he was bleeding profusely from the stump. Sensei, what happened to you? Who did this to you? We need to get you to a hospital right now. No, it's too late for the hospital. One of my lungs is already collapsed and the other one is filling up as we speak. So please just listen to me. You need to know the truth about everything. Naruto just stood there, tears threatening to spill, as his sensei bled out in front of him. The Uchiha clan was planning a coup d'état. Over the years they had lost much of their power, both politically and influentially. The main cause of this was they were blamed for the Kyuubi attack on the village 12 years ago. Why Minato said that it was a natural disaster, an accident from childbirth. Naruto argued. Yes it was, but that isn't the whole truth. There were witnesses who claimed to have seen the Sharingan in the Kyuubi's eyes. The village believed that sometime after it escaped it was used by the Uchiha to attack the village as revenge for the way they had been treated over the years, living under the ideals of the Senju. The only Sharingan jutsu strong enough to control a Bijuu is the Kodo Amasukami, and that particular ability has only been known to two people with the Mangekyo Sharingan, Uchiha Madara, and me. At that last sentence Naruto gasped. I can tell you that it wasn't me. I personally believe that the Kyuubi was never taken out of the control of Madara and has remained in effect after all of this time. The Kodo Amasukami is the most powerful genjutsu to ever exist. If it were to fall into the wrong hands it could spell the world as we know it. Naruto, once I die tonight people will try to steal my remaining eye for themselves. Naruto, I want you to have it. Naruto could only remain speechless. What? Naruto, you're my only student as well as one of my best friends. Please take my eye and help to carry on my will. This shall be my final gift to you. Think of it as a birthday present. Shisui said, all the while smiling. Naruto could only nod. Shisui made a Kage Bunshin and reached into his right eye socket and pulled the Sharingan out. The Kage Bunshin took it and removed the eye patch from Naruto's right eye. He began to implant the eye with his limited knowledge of medical ninjutsu. After the operation was finished, the Kage Bunshin put the eye patch back on Naruto and poofed out of existence. Shisui stood before him with both of his bleeding eye sockets closed. Now then for the rest of my tale, Itachi and I were working as spies for the Hokage because both of us knew that a civil war within Konoha would have sparked the fourth great shinobi war when other villages would have tried to invade when we would be weakest. Father was the cause of all of this? The coup was going to happen tomorrow and it needed to be stopped one way or another. It was decided that I would control Fugaku using the Kodo Amasukami, but I never got the chance to. One of the elders, Shimura Danzo, stood in my way. He had some sick sense of loyalty to Konoha and planned to steal my eyes and then the rest of the Uchiha when they were dealt with. I managed to defeat and seal him away, so you don't have to worry about him. Cough. He spat out an enormous amount of blood and smiled sadly. It seems that my time is running shorter than I thought. I'm sorry that I can't tell you the rest of this directly, but this should be good enough. Memory transference jutsu. With those words he touched Naruto's forehead and memories from awakening the Sharingan to the secrets of the Mangekyo to the meeting with the Yondaime and the elders to Shisui's final battle with Root and Danzo flooded Naruto's mind. Thank you, for being, my student, Naruto. With those final words the life faded from Shisui's voice and his body fell into Naruto's arms. The will of fire still burns. Aftermath. Konoha Cemetery. It had been a few days since the Uchiha massacre. Naruto was seething in rage at the moment. He had to use all of the willpower that he had built up over the years to stop himself from releasing his most deadly Katon Jutsu upon everyone who was attending the funeral for the Uchiha clan. The reason for this silent rage? Minato and the elders had decided to come and pay their respects for the fallen Uchiha. Not only that, but as the Hokage he had given a speech about how much of a tragedy the massacre was and how much Konoha would suffer from it. Naruto knew that Minato probably saved many lives by ordering the masses and that he had made the right decision to stop the coup before it could begin. But he had made the right decision as the Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, not as his father. Naruto knew that the Hokage would have to do whatever was best for the village. However, that also means that if the Hokage's own family stopped believing in the will of fire, then they would be eliminated as well. That is what Minato did to his own son. The Yondaime had taken away half of Naruto's family from his. He had taken away Itachi by forcing his to slaughter his own clan, leaving only children and his mother alive, and forced him to become a nuke nin. He had taken away Shisui with his inability to control his own advisors, letting Danzo run free. Minato should have known that the old war hawk would have tried to do something on his own, especially during a situation where the whole village's safety was at stake. With these two actions he had lost his son. It was raining now. It had been for the better part of the hour, but three figures could still be seen at the cemetery. All three of them were wearing black funeral attire. One was a beautiful older woman with black hair and pale skin. Her eyes were red from crying so much and had bags under them. The second was a young man with long blonde hair and was wearing an eye patch over his right eye. The final one was a 9-year-old girl with empty black eyes and red puffy cheeks. These three were Uchiha Mikoto, Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, and Uchiha Satsuki. The other Uchiha that had been left alive numbered no more than 7. Those who were old enough had already gone back to the compound, and those who weren't had already been escorted back to the orphanage. All 3 of them were silent, not having the voice to speak from the amount of sobbing that they had done. All 3 of them had different thought running through their minds. Why did it have to come to this? Fugaku had always been too prideful in the clan and wanted the Uchiha to spread their power and influence, but was this really the only way? Could things have turned out differently, were Mikoto's thoughts? Is this really what Konoha stands for? Fight side by side until their ideals start to waver from your own and then slaughter them just so they can't turn on you? Is this really what Ace and Shisui worked so hard for? I refuse to believe that this is all that there is to life. I shall live my life on my own terms until the day I die. Freedom, family, and my own ideals. I shall live by those 3 things alone, was Naruto's declaration. Why? Why did Itachi do all of this? He put me to sleep with his genjutsu before I could find out why. Satsuki looked over to Naruto. I don't want to die like everybody else. If I die, then Naruto and I will be sad. I won't let his be sad. Never again. We promised that neither one of us would die. Was that the reason Itachi spared me? Satsuki didn't know what to think of everything that had happened, but she did know one thing: if she died, her Naruto and I would be sad, and if Naruto died, she would be sad. She would never let either of those things happen. The massacre had hit them all hard, incredibly so. They were still picking up the pieces that Itachi had shattered and still would be for a long time to come. That was when Mikoto started sobbing again. She fell to her knees and the tears started pouring down her face, mixing with the raindrops so they were barely noticeable. Naruto quickly got down on one knee and embraced her. He noticed he had been doing this a lot ever since he first saw her again the day after the massacre. Normally he would blush at the contact, but this wasn't one of her motherly hugs or the ones where she would press her assets onto his back. No, this was serious. He had never seen Mikoto so broken before. For now he just let her cry into his chest while stroking her hair, not uttering a single word. There were no words that could fix how she was feeling. Satsuki was standing behind them, staring at her mother intently. She was jealous that she wasn't the one being embraced, but she understood. Her mother was taking things really badly. After Mikoto started to calm down a bit, Naruto decided they should get back to the compound. After all, it was pouring out. Mikoto, Satsuki, let's head home. I think we've spent enough time here today and the rain doesn't look like it's going to let up anytime soon. You'll catch a cold at this rate. Besides, someone's got to look out for you too now. Both of them nodded at his words. Mikoto smiled for the first time since the massacre happened. It was rare for anyone to get a glimpse at Naruto's gentle and caring side. With that, they left the cemetery to head back to the Uchiha compound, Mikoto not ever letting go of Naruto's hand. Konoha Council Room. Minato, Hamura, and Koharu were all sitting in the council chambers discussing the outcome of their latest assignment. It turned out rather well, all things considered, Koharu stated. Yes, but we had to rely on the backup plan, which was something I wish that we didn't have to do, Minato responded solemnly. I too wish that we could have come to a peaceful outcome. Whatever happened to Shisui that night? I was sure that he would have succeeded, and there was only a small chance that the Uchiha would have found out about our plan beforehand, Hamura stated his own opinion. Minato closed his eyes for a minute and thought, I don't know exactly what happened, but I know that Danzo is involved with it somehow. From what Itachi told me, Shisui never showed up, so it is likely that something stopped him from doing so. Danzo has also been missing since Shisui and Itachi left this room. We also found the bodies of over a dozen of his root agents in the forest near the Naka River, where it looks like a battle took place. Did either of you two know that he had his root still active? It was more of a demand rather than a question. There was silence for a moment, but Koharu decided to answer. I had my suspicions that he never disbanded them when Hiruzen ordered them to, but I never found any proof of this. I knew that his did some kind of underground dealings, but I never knew what he was into or what he did, Hamura replied. Whatever the case is, he's most likely dead. He would never be gone from Konoha for so long when something so important is happening, so it begs the question of what happened? If either of you two find out anything about what happened to Danzo, I want you to inform me immediately. Both of the advisors nodded. Koharu decided to move to the next topic, now onto the actual massacre. How many were left alive exactly? Minato looked on a piece of paper with the information of the aftermath written on it. There were 9 Uchiha left alive. Mikoto, being the only adult, is now the current clan head. There are 3 currently enrolled in the academy. The rest are too young to be entered into the academy and are currently being taken care of by the orphanage until they're old enough to live on their own. There is one more grown Uchiha, but he is working as a liaison between us and Kiri in case our alliance with Suna doesn't work out. He was also against the coup, but hasn't been in Konoha in well over 3 years. Hamura wanted to clarify something. Itachi is supposed to be infiltrating that suspicious organization that just started up, correct? Yes, the Akatsuki. It is an organization made up of a few S-rank nuke-nin, but we have no idea what their goals are or what their purpose is as of yet. Itachi will be acting as our spy in the meantime. That organization had been worrying them for a while, especially after rumors began to spread that they had taken out Hanzo of the Salamander. The very same man that defeated all 3 of the legendary Sannin in their prime and gave them their title. Koharu was concerned. How many know the truth about what happened on the night of the Uchiha massacre? Only us, Itachi, and Mikoto. How wrong they were. Uchiha compound. It had been a long day. Emotions had been running high, the funeral had lasted several hours, and people kept coming up to the survivors of the Uchiha clan to express their condolences. That is the reason why Mikoto had just finished putting Satsuki to bed. She was still a 9-year-old girl after all. She had just come out of Satsuki's room after making sure she was sound asleep. The Ravenet walked into the living and sat down on the couch right next to Naruto and leaned onto his shoulder. She loved his warmth and right now she could use the comfort. She had grown quite accustomed to it over the past few days. However, Naruto had things he needed to discuss with Mikoto. He first wanted to find out if she would tell him the truth, so he started out simple. How long did you know it was going to happen? Mikoto's eyes widened in shock. He can't be asking about the coup or the massacre, could he? There's no way he should know the truth about either of them. She decided to act confused. What are you talking about, Naruto-kun? I want to know how long you knew the massacre would take place. You were the clan head's wife, it would be obvious you knew about the coup d'état since the very beginning. Mikoto's eyes widened in shock, however she calmed herself down and closed her eyes. I never knew about the massacre specifically, but I had a feeling that this would be the outcome. I never wanted the clan to stage a coup, all of the unnecessary loss of life for what? Power? The clan were too stuck in their past glory and only wanted more power that they thought they were entitled to. I refused to take part of it. I had to think about Satsuki, you know? She's still just a little girl. How would she grow up without a mother? Naruto cringed at that last part. She would have probably ended up like him. Nonetheless, he was glad that she was honest with him. Thank you, Mikoto-chan. She was confused. She was expecting an angry outburst, a slap across the face, for him to never talk to her again. Everything except for those words had run across her mind when he first asked her about the massacre. Then she realized something. You knew about all of this too, didn't you? Naruto shook his head. No. At least not before everything took place. I learned everything that night, from the Uchiha's decision to stage a coup to what happened during Shisui's and Itachi's meetings with the Hokage and the elders, and even how they came to the final outcome. Mikoto was left speechless. You were just testing me, weren't you? Naruto wrapped his arms around her in a tight embrace. Yes. I wanted to know if you would trust me enough to tell me the truth, and you did. For that I thank you. How? Who told you all of this? Naruto didn't say anything for a moment. He pulled back from their hug and looked her in the eye. Obsidian black eyes met one cold gray eye. The blonde slowly reached for his eye patch and slowly removed it. He then opened his right eye. Mikoto gasped as Naruto revealed his lone 3-tomo Sharingan. Shisui sensei told me everything that night. Naruto proceeded to tell him everything that happened between Shisui and himself on that cliffside, and to everything that happened to Shisui before they met up. He's gone now, Mikoto-chan. He died right there in my arms. And you know what the last thoughts on his mind were about me and how happy he was to have me as a student. Sensei didn't want to die without me knowing the truth behind everything he did. Naruto finally let his tears loose at the end. Mikoto had been rubbing the back of his head affectionately as he reached the end of his story. This had been one of the few times that Naruto had openly cried in front of her. Minato took away the first person who ever truly treated me like family away from me. One of the few people who actually showed me that they were happy I existed. I can't bring myself to see him as a father anymore or ever again. Mikoto looked surprised for a minute but then went back to comforting her pseudo-son. Then don't. If you truly feel that way, then come here and live with us. We will always love you no matter what. If you don't want anything to do with your old family now, then you accept me as your one and only mother. Naruto smiled up at her and nuzzled himself further into her neck. They remained there in that position until they fell asleep. Uchiha household. Next morning. After waking up in a rather compromising position on the couch, Mikoto could be seen preparing breakfast in the kitchen, with a smile on her face for some reason, while Naruto sat at the kitchen table. Naruto noticed her drastic change in mood since yesterday. You seem different today, Mikoto-chan. Mikoto looked up with a small blush on her face, remembering waking up with his face in between her breasts. I suppose I do feel like something has been lifted off of my chest. Is different good? He smiled at her softly. Yeah, different is good. I like seeing you happy. Mikoto could only blush a little darker at that charming smile. Are you planning on going back to the academy today? Both Naruto and Satsuki hadn't been to the academy since the day of the massacre. It wouldn't be good to miss too many days of the academy. Well, for Satsuki it wouldn't. She would fall too far behind the rest of the children her age. Naruto just didn't care about it anymore and already knew everything they had to teach. Satsuki hadn't been as broken as Mikoto had anticipated. The older woman had thought that Satsuki would become depressed at the loss of her father and the rest of the clan, and later become obsessed with revenge against Itachi. The difference that she noticed was that her daughter had become even more attached to Naruto and refused to let him out of her sight. She was getting a bit obsessive about her brother figure, but it was still endearing in a way. Naruto's eyes grew colder at that last question. No. I don't think I'm ready to see anyone from my former family yet. Seeing their faces would only serve to remind me of all of Minato's betrayals. It somehow feels like he's doing this to spite me, to tell me that I should never have been born and that I don't deserve to be happy. I know that probably isn't the case, but I still need time to think about everything that has happened. Mikoto was a little surprised at his declaration, but her eyes then filled with sadness, remembering how he felt about his birth and his old family. Honestly, to anyone who knew the whole story, it would seem like some kind of sick plot just to make Naruto suffer. She broke herself from her thoughts and continued the conversation, knowing Naruto could have ended it with that. Well then, what will you do today? I know you aren't just going to sit around the house all day, that isn't like you. Or do you plan on spending some time with little old me? Naruto just chuckled dryly, as tempting as that sound. No. Every time I look in the mirror I see that team looking right back at me, mocking me. I look too similar to him for my own liking. I need to change my appearance a little, plus I have some other things due. I need to get stronger so nobody can take away my family ever again, and I know just how to do it. Naruto ended with an evil smirk. He had tried to open the scroll that Shisui had given him on his birthday, and this time it actually unrolled. The scroll was filled with dozens of different jutsu, including a few kinjutsus. Naruto came to the conclusion that the scroll would only be able to open upon his sensei's death. Shisui had known that he would die that night, and yet he still went through with the plan. He had wanted Naruto to be able to protect Mikoto and Satsuki in his stead. Before Mikoto could ask what he meant, Satsuki came running out of her room and latched onto Naruto's arm, rubbing her cheek against his, much to his annoyance. Kaa-chan, what's for breakfast? I'm starving. Then I need to rush to the academy or I'll be late. You can be late to the academy every once in a while, after all breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Mikoto walked over and placed a plate filled with a large piece of toast topped with butter, ham, eggs, and a green salad on the side in front of each of them. She then walked back to the kitchen to grab her own, then sat down with them to eat. Itadikamasu, they all announced before starting on their meal. Satsuki chose to speak in between bites of food. Ni-san, are you going back to the academy today too? No. I have a few things I have to take care of before I return. Besides, there isn't really much of a point in me going. I learned pretty much everything they teach either on my own or during my training with Shisui. Naruto and Mikoto had agreed that they would keep the reason of the Uchiha massacre a secret from her. Letting the younger generation of Uchiha know about the truth would be going against everything that Itachi and Shisui worked so hard and gave up their lives and freedom for. Besides, many of them were young and could not truly understand the coup of the Uchiha would have. Neither Naruto nor Mikoto had much love for the village or what it stood for, but so many of their friends and family gave their lives to protect the village, so they would try to honor it the best they could. Naruto noticed Satsuki's downcast expression and chose to reassure her. Don't worry, Satsuki, I'll start going again in a few weeks, a month at the most. Besides, I don't want you falling too far behind me, so you better step up your game. With that said, he poked Satsuki in the forehead with both his index and middle fingers, like he had done for years, after which she just pouted. After breakfast, the young Uchiha left for the academy, leaving Naruto and Mikoto behind. With Satsuki gone, Naruto decided to start his day as well. I think I'll get going too. Naruto started toward the door but quickly paused, as if he had forgotten something. He turned around and walked to Mikoto and gave her a small blush on the cheek. With that done, he left. Mikoto's face was as red as Kushina's hair and couldn't form coherent thoughts for a minute. Though after that her mind started to wander to more explicit scenes, the memories and pain of the last few days forgotten. Village streets. Several minutes later, Naruto could be seen walking through the village streets, which is strange in its own right. After all, being the only student of Shunshur no Shisui, you begin to pick up the habit of sunshining everywhere you go. However, Naruto was using to this time to think in order to collect his thoughts. He had been so busy the last few days comforting Mikoto and Satsuki that he hasn't had much time to himself. In fact, this was the first time that he had been on his own since the day of the massacre. The first thing I need to change is my hair. I will not walk around this village with this godforsaken blonde hair. Had I been born with red hair like Kushina, this wouldn't be as big of an issue. Our currently blonde friend soon found himself outside the best barbershop in Konoha. Why were they the best? They could cut your hair into any style, even if it went against what your hair did naturally. It was also owned by retired shinobi who were extremely skilled in chakra dyeing. Chakra dyeing can only be done by customers who are able to use chakra. Chakra dyeing is a process where the customer infuses their chakra into hair dye, in which the chakra makes the hair dye permanent. It can only be removed by exposing the hair to the person's chakra. And this was exactly what Naruto was here for. I guess I could also use a haircut. I haven't gotten one since before my coma. With those thoughts running through his head, he walked into the shop and was greeted by a man in his mid-60s with a slight limp in his step. "Ah, Naruto-sama. What can I do for you today?" Naruto was glad the man didn't call him by his surname. Had he done so, Naruto may have melted the man's flesh off. "I've come here for a haircut. As you can see, it has gotten quite long. Too long for my tastes. And more importantly, I came to get my hair chakra dyed." The man stroked his beard. "Ah, yes, you do look like you are due for a haircut, but many people in the village would kill to have your particular shade of hair. I'm surprised you would want to get rid of it." Naruto's emotionless expression turned into a scowl. "I am not the biggest fan of it." The man noticed the underlying disgust in his voice but chose not to comment on it. "All right, Naruto-sama, just hop onto this chair and describe to me what kind of hairstyle you wanted." Naruto smirked as he knew just what he wanted. "All right, well, first." 2 hours later. A young man with wavy black hair that naturally parted in the middle and bangs on the side of his face that refused to touch his forehead walked out of the barber shop. This young man looked like the spitting image of a young Portgasti ace. A man he admired more than anyone. Man, that took longer than I thought it would. Chakra dyeing sure does take a long time. Well, whatever, I'll never be doing it again if I can help it. As Naruto walked down the street, his mind began to wander. His mind immediately went to Shisui. He really missed his sensei. He was like the older brother he never had. Hell, he had raised Naruto better than his own father had. The new Ravenet just couldn't bring it in himself to forgive his father for everything Minato had done to him. His eye caught the Yondame's face on the Hokage monument, and he remembered what Portgasti Ace once said to Hagoromo. "Do you know what it really means to forgive someone? Forgiveness means accepting all of the betrayals that a person committed against you. It isn't as simple as people think. Could you forgive Kaa-san for all of the pain and suffering that she had caused to the people of this land? Forgiving her for all of her sins is no different than telling all of the people that their suffering was worth nothing and that we don't care about what she had done. I can't do that. I can't just accept what people have done without looking at their past betrayals and being able to believe that they won't do the same thing again. That is why I don't believe in forgiveness. You don't need forgiveness for the people who will stay at your side no matter what. The people who have always been there for you will never need to be forgiven. People will then ask why I can't just forget everything that happened. People always try to forget and move on, but does that really happen? Would you be able to look at Kaa-san's face and be able to forget everything that she ever did to us, to our people? No, you will always be reminded of the past. That is why forgetting is impossible. And would you want to forget anyway? The past is what shapes us, what makes us who we are today. Should we change who we are just because it's at a person's convenience? I refuse to do that. Always remember. I do not forgive and I do not forget. These are two of the most important ideals that I live by. When those memories surfaced in his mind, he had made his decision. He would live his life just as Ace had. Ace had been a man that Naruto respected above all others. He had been a man born with no special traits or abilities, but he still rose to the top in a world riddled with war and helped put an end to the tyrant seeking to control mankind. While his brother sought noble dreams such as peace and harmony, Ace had never been influenced by them. He lived his life of his own accord and only sought two things: the answers to his lifelong questions and freedom. Naruto would live his life the same way. It was then that something caught his attention out of the corner of his eye, a tattoo shop. Naruto smirked and headed inside. Academy. Satsuki was very irritated at the moment. The first thing that happened when she walked into class this morning was that everybody rushed and crowded around giving their condolences. These people weren't there when me and Kaa-chan needed comfort, so why should they pretend to care now? Satsuki thought with a frown. The only one who actually showed that he cared about us was Naruto and I. Yes, Satsuki saw the truth. Her classmates didn't really care about her, they cared that she was one of the few survivors of the Uchiha clan. Even before the massacre she was only popular because she was an Uchiha and everyone knew that she had received previous training. Really all she had previously done was unlock her chakra and learn the katan, Gukyaku no Jutsu, after it was the Uchiha's rite of passage. Satsuki was sitting through another one of Irika's boring lectures. She was beginning to see why Naruto disliked the academy so much. Pretty much everything Irika was going over right now would never be used once they were outside of the academy. She just wanted to get straight to shinobi training and skip all of the useless civilian lessons, but she knew she would have to sit through them for the better part of the next few years. The Ravenet looked to her right and glared at the 3 Uzumaki Namake's siblings that were in class today. Nawaki was in the back sleeping through the class as usual, Narumi was gossiping loudly with Ino, and Natsuki was sitting there quietly next to Hinata. Satsuki scoffed as none of them seemed worried or even troubled in the slightest about their missing brother, TCH. They haven't even noticed that Naruto and isn't in class today. They can't even imagine how much pain he is in. This only proves that they don't even deserve to be in his presence and that I am his one and only Imuto, whom I wonder what he's doing right now. Naka Shrine. Naruto had already entered the Naka Shrine and removed the 7th tatami mat from the far right, after which he performed the necessary hand seals to remove the stone blocking the way to the secret meeting place of the Uchiha clan. This is where the Uchiha had met in order to discuss plans for the coup d'état. Naruto had changed his attire since this morning, his previous clothes had been covered in hair, disinfectant, and a little blood. He now donned attire similar to an Uchiha's. He wore a high-collared gray shirt with an Uchiha crest on the back. Mikoto had given him a few sets of extra clothes since he lived with her most of the time. He also had on knee-length black shorts and gray shinobi sandals. His left bicep was covered in plastic wrap because of the new tattoo on his arm. The process of getting a chakra tattoo was extremely painful, so very few people got them. Having your side ripped open by your cubified sister does have its advantages. The process was similar to chakra dyeing. Naruto had poured his chakra into the ink and from there on the process was the same as a regular tattoo. However, because it was infused with chakra it would grow along with his body. After a few hours it was finished and they healed the skin with medical ninjutsu. It was an incredibly efficient process. Naruto had gotten Ace's trademark ASCE tattoo. He even got the crossed-out yes, however this wasn't a tribute to Seibo, it was a tribute to Shisui. It was also out of respect for Ace and a symbol to mark a turning point in his life. He would live his life on his own terms and he would live free. He no longer cared about being accepted by the Uzumaki Namake's family. He no longer cared about receiving training from them. He no longer cared for Jiraiya and his foolish prophecies. No, this was the life of Naruto and he would live how he wanted. In fact, he would no longer even refer to himself as Uzumaki Namake's and would legally change it as soon as he could. In the room stood a stone monument depicting all of the Sharingan. There was much more on the stone but Naruto wouldn't be able to decipher it, for that he would need the Rinnegan. To be honest, he didn't care what the stone said, he had already learned everything it said from Shisui's memories and he had witnessed the beginning of chakra itself. He walked up to the stone and performed another set of hand seals, after which the stone started to rumble and then rise into the air. What it revealed was a much longer stairwell than the first stone. Naruto started down the pitch-dark stairwell and as he did the torches adorning the walls slowly started to light up. After 5 minutes of continuous walking he finally arrived at his destination. Naruto had arrived in a room with light gray-colored walls. In front of him were 2 large concrete doors with a barrier protecting them from outside entry and a large seal array on the left side of the room. He remembered exactly how Ace had set up this room and what to do. The Ravenet moved in front of the sealing array and bit his thumb to draw blood. In blood he drew a pattern of 9 Magatama in the center of the sealing array and then drew a line from each of them into a single point at the center. He placed his hand on the center and concentrated his chakra into the seal. The barrier dropped and the doors slowly started to open. The doors revealed a large cave-like room, easily the size of the Konoha Coliseum where the Chunin exams were held. Naruto marveled at all of the seals covering the walls that were used to prevent people from entering without doing what Naruto did, and that would prevent any damage to the cave walls from either the inside or the outside. He silently noted that this place would be perfect for training in secret, but then he saw it. He finally found what he had come here for. At the other side of the cave was a large black and gold chest. Naruto slowly walked across the room until he was standing in front of the chest. He noticed the seals on it and drew the same pattern that he did to get into the room. After completing the pattern in blood, the seals on the chest started to glow bright blue until they broke and revealed what was inside. Inside of the chest was a leather-bound journal, an orange cowboy hat, and what he had hoped would still be there. The final item was a bright orange fruit that had an odd-shaped stem with flame-like patterns completely covering the fruit. This was Ace's chakra fruit, the Mera Mera no Mi. Naruto wanted to eat the fruit first and opted to read the journal. He opened the leather notebook and read the first passage. To whomever is reading this, my name is Portgasti Ace. The fact that you have been able to get into this cave and are reading this means that you have been chosen to be my reincarnation. As for the reasons of why you were chosen, I'd say that it is your conviction or ideals. Or at least that is probably why. I never really understood the whole reincarnation deal, but my brother Hagoromo did, and that is the reason I have chosen to leave behind what may help you with your journey. If Hagoromo was right, then you've probably seen my memories to a certain degree, but I've left some notes in this journal just so you don't strain your memory too. You've really seen my memories, then there are probably a disturbingly large amount of parallels between us. For the sake of both of us, I will give you one piece of advice: live life the way you want to and enjoy the journey. I've already lived mine and I eventually found the answers I was looking for. You will too, eventually. Portgasti Ace. Naruto smiled a little and turned the page. It was a passage about the fruit he had found. If you're reading this, then you must be curious about the Mera Mera no Mi. I suppose I could give you a little background on it. The Mera Mera no Mi is a Logia chakra fruit. This means that your body can actually turn into the element and make you intangible. It will also give you unparalleled control over fire and heat. The fruits from the Shiju are made from natural energy itself, and fire is one of the most powerful forces of nature. This was the fruit that I ate and enabled me to defeat Otsutsuki Kagaya alongside my brothers and the eaters of the 4 other fruits. These 5 fruits were comprised of the 5 natural elements: fire, water, earth, lightning, and wind. It was these 3 fruits that eventually lead to what are now known as elemental affinities. There are only a few weaknesses of each fruit. Each of their intangibilities can be negated through the use of haki, or what you may know as a special use of in release. You'll read more about it in the later passages. The other weakness is fire's elemental weakness, water. Water can douse the flames of the fruit, but it can be overcome by producing more heat and turning it to steam. One last thing: if you do eat this fruit, then you will never be able to use another element for as long as you live. That is why it is called the Mera Mera no Mi. You become fire itself. Besides all of this, I'll leave the rest to you. Portgasti Ace. Naruto flipped the page and it was a list of techniques that he could use after eating the fruit. He decided to save the rest of a journal for a later time and sealed it into an empty scroll he had in his pouch. He did the same with the hat, noting that he should get replicas made as this one was quite old, though he did like Ace's style. Next he picked up the fruit. Naruto stared at it intently before slowly opening his mouth to take a bite. He noted that it was quite juicy, but nearly spit it out after the taste reached him. The fruit tasted like hot ash, but he steeled himself and decided to eat the entire fruit. He may have let out a few tears after, but that was a story for another time. Naruto closed the chest and looked around the cave. This place would make the perfect training ground to test out my new abilities. With those thoughts he spent the rest of the day working on gaining control of the Mera Mera no Mi. Uzumaki Namake's estate. Tsunade had just made her way into the compound. She was curious. Ever since Naruto had gotten out of the hospital, she had been wondering about him more and more. She was supposed to be his godmother, and yet she didn't know a single thing about him besides what medical reports said. She didn't even remember ever speaking to him before. Had she pushed him aside just so she could spend time with Nawaki and the girls? Sure, he was older, but that didn't mean she should ignore him. What had happened? This is why Tsunade was on her way to see the Uzumaki Namake's family, to find out more about her godson. She had noticed that Natsuki was the only one from the family who had visited Naruto more than a handful of times. She tried to think back on the times when all of them would spend time together, and it just wasn't there. Or more like he wasn't there. She didn't have a single memory of spending time with Naruto other than when she was operating on him. With those thoughts she knocked on the door of the main house. She was greeted by an energetic redhead. "Oh, hello Tsunade. Why don't you come in?" "Sure, there were some things that I wanted to talk about anyway." They walked into the living room and were greeted with the sight of Natsuki doing her homework on the table and Narumi reading a manga. Tsunade decided to greet the girls. "Good afternoon Narumi, Natsuki." Namimi merely nodded, not even looking up from her book. Natsuki bowed and greeted her. "Good afternoon Tsunade-sama. What are you doing here today?" "I actually came by to see how your brother was doing after getting out of the hospital a few months ago." Natsuki looked shocked. Tsunade never came to ask about Naruto before. Kushina's thoughts were brought to her oldest son. "You know, I don't think I've seen him in a while now that I think about it. Natsuki-chan, did he come with you from the academy today?" Natsuki looked down. "Nisan wasn't at the academy today. In fact, he hasn't gone for the past couple of days. Even Satsuki-san came today." The two women remembered the poor girl who was one of the few survivors of the Uchiha massacre, but then they got curious. Kushina started to get angry that her own son was turning into a delinquent. If he isn't going to the academy, then where does he go every morning? I didn't raise my son to be some kind of delinquent. Tsunade and Kushina then noticed Natsuki's downcast expression. I don't know, I don't really talk to him that much in the academy, he's usually either with Satsuki-san or Hana-san. Tsunade was getting irritated at not finding any answers about Naruto. Well, why not? He is your brother, isn't he? Shouldn't you at least be friends with him? I try to spend time with him, I really do. But as soon as the bell rings, all of us surrounded by the rest of the kinds in our class who just want to spend time with the Hokage's daughters. Nawaki also gets trapped by his fangirls. Yep, somehow he had fangirls. It was still a mystery to all of the students and teachers of the academy. It was probably due to his stuck-up emo attitude. That kind of personality just draws in girls, like moths to a flame. Tsunade and Kushina grew tick marks on their foreheads. Fangirls. He's 9 years old, how does he have fangirls? They shouldn't even know about things like love yet. Tsunade screamed. Natsuki just sweat dropped at her godmother. Anyway, that's when Naruto usually leaves. Why don't you just check his room to see if he's in there? Narumi replied, clearly uninterested in the topic at hand. Kushina tried to remember the last time that she had been to his room, but she couldn't, which confused her greatly. She knew that she was a great mother even if she couldn't train him when he was younger. Yeah, why don't we go do that? With that said, Kushina, Tsunade, and Natsuki went upstairs and stopped just before the door. I don't ever remember coming up here, Kushina stated, rather confused. You've never been up to your own son's room before? Tsunade asked suspiciously. It's not like I went out of my way to avoid him, but we had to train Narumi, Natsuki, and Narumi so that they wouldn't lose control. Tsunade could only roll her eyes, remembering Naruto's previous condition. That just worked wonders, didn't it? Tsunade opened the door, leaving a gaping Kushina and a guilty Natsuki behind. She didn't like what she found. The room was barren. Not only was Naruto not there, but there was nothing in there at all. The only thing that she found was a bed with only a mattress on it. There was dust covering everything and there wasn't a single personal item in sight. It was quite obvious that nobody had lived there in quite a while. Tsunade's eyes hardened. Would you like to explain what's going on, Kushina? Kushina and Natsuki could only stare on with wide eyes. I don't know what this means. I don't know what any of this means. I swear I saw him here yesterday, I think. You think? It's obvious nobody has lived in this room for months. Natsuki now had tears rolling down her face. Her Nissan was gone and he wasn't coming back. Tsunade had one thought on her mind, he's not coming back, wherever he is. What could Minato and Kushina could have done? Uchiha household. It was almost 7 p.m. and Naruto had just finished training. He had only been at it for around 5 hours and he had already gotten basic control over his Logia abilities down, just so he wouldn't burn down the house by accident. He had accidentally burned his shirt off during training when he was first getting started, and as soon as he had gotten back to the house, Mikoto caught a glimpse of his new tattoo. Needless to say, he had gotten a harsh scolding after that. He actually enjoyed it though. Make no mistake, he wasn't a masochist or anything like that, but it made it feel like Mikoto really was his mother. Not to mention she looked quite cute when she was angry. Where did that thought come from? Anyway, she calmed down pretty quickly and gave her an edited reason of why he got it. Naruto didn't want her to think he was crazy after all. She quickly understood and actually told his new look suited him rather well in her opinion. Though she was staring at his bare chest quite a bit, he was too muscular for any 12-year-old to be. After that, Satsuki came out of her bedroom and nearly fainted at the sight of a shirtless Naruto. Things at the Uchiha house were always entertaining. Nani-san, is that real? She asked, pointing at his left bicep. It sure is, Satsuki. I just got it today and I've decided to go back to the academy at the end of the week. She was beaming at that. Really? I'm so lonely without you there. Yeah. If I'm gone for too long, people will start noticing I'm missing. Even my family will realize I'm not living at home anymore not too long from now. Plus we still have 3 more years left at the academy. I can do whatever I need to do during that time, okay? Satsuki quickly nodded and gave her Naruto and a tight hug, but soon remembered that he was shirtless and ran back to her room squealing. Mikoto had watched the whole interaction with a jealous look on her face, but an equally large blush. Naruto only had one thought going through his mind: things are going to get a whole lot more interesting around here real soon. Watch me, Shisui, ace. The will of fire still burns. End of academy days. Academy. 3 years. It had been 3 long years since the Uchiha massacre and so much had changed. Naruto had grown strong, tremendously so, far too strong for any child his age to be. He had grown bored of the academy, and once they got into actually shinobi training, he saw how useless it would be. What they would be teaching was pathetic. Shuriken and kunai practice, academy-level taijutsu, and the basic 3 jutsus, henge, kawarimi, and bunshin. After he saw how pointless it would be to go, he opted to send a kage bunshin that he had learned from the scroll that Shisui had left him. He only attended the days where they were scheduled to have taijutsu spars so that he wouldn't be found out. Nobody knew that he was doing this though, not even Satsuki or Mikoto. Naruto would usually head to the bathroom after breakfast and make a kage bunshin there. He would send it out to walk to the academy with Satsuki while he would shunshin to the underground cave for his personal training. Those thoughts brought him back to the Uzumaki Namake's family and how they had reacted when they found out that he no longer lived in their compound. Flashback, almost 3 years ago. It had been a few days since the Uzumaki Namake's family learned that their eldest son didn't live at home with them anymore. They still had no idea where he was. Minato had managed to finish all of his paperwork yesterday, so he was able to take the morning off and walk Narumi, Nawaki, and Natsuki to the academy today along with his wife. He was deeply worried. They hadn't seen Naruto for the better part of the last week. In fact, nobody had seen him. Minato was starting to think that he had left the village. But for what reason would he do that? It was then that the family of 5 saw a young black-haired boy walking to the academy with Uchiha Satsuki. What they noticed first was the lightning bolt-shaped scar on his face. One thought crossed through their minds. Is that Naruto? Naruto. Naruto heard a voice call his name and turned around. His face turned emotionless as he saw who it was. Good morning Hokage-sama, Kushina-sama. Minato and Kushina were both shocked at how he addressed them. Naruto, what happened to you? Your hair? That tattoo? What is all of this about? Minato couldn't believe it. It was like he was staring at a completely different person. That is none of your concern, Hokage-sama. I much prefer my new appearance compared to how I used to look. He really didn't want to have to explain his choices to these people. There was a moment of silence. It was clear to his parents that they would be getting any answers about that subject, no matter how much their parental instincts wanted to object. It was Kushina who chose to speak, a bit unnerved as she stared into Naruto's lone eye. You Naruto? Where have you been the past few days? We haven't seen you at all. So they finally found out that I haven't been living at home for the better part of the past 2 months. They've probably even gone up to my room and noticed there isn't anything in there, not that I had much to begin with. I've been at home. I just didn't have it in me to go to the academy these past few days. Minato started to sweat a little at the last few words. Was he close to any of the Uchiha? I can see that he is friends with Satsuki and he probably knows Mikoto. No, he was probably just comforting them the past few days. Yeah, that has to be it. Satsuki and the rest of the Uzumaki Namake's children chose to remain silent. Kushina could only raise an eyebrow. Home? Where were you really? I told you that we haven't seen you at home the past few days and it is quite obvious that you haven't been in your room in quite a while. Naruto grew tired of Kushina's little interrogation. Not your home, Kushina-sama, my home. The entire family's eyes widened in shock, even Namaki's and Narumi's. Kushina grew a bit hysterical at his answer. What do you mean? You live at the compound with us, of course. You're not old enough to move out yet. I won't let you. You're still my baby. I won't let you go. You're coming back to the compound with us right now and we're going to have a long talk. A crowd was starting to gather around the commotion. Kushina's shouting had caught the attention of many of the people passing by, both civilian and shinobi alike. Naruto didn't react visibly to Kushina's loud outburst or the crowd she had gathered. He only responded to her emotionlessly. Let me ask you this, Kushina-sama, when was the last time that you ever treated me like family? There was a moment of silence before he continued. I would tell you, but I cannot remember. You claim to want me to come back to your home so that you can force me to obey you and your rules, so that we can be a perfect little family again. But you are missing something important, Kushina-sama. The crowd grew curious at Naruto's pause while Kushina and Minato's eyes widened, knowing that they would not like that they were going to hear. We have never been a family. When have you ever showed that you love me? Everything had always been about your other children, claiming that you had to pay more attention to them because of the Kyuubi, even training them early so that they wouldn't lose control of themselves. We see how well that worked, didn't we? Look at my face, look at my body. Everyone stared at his scars as he opened up his shirt, especially the one on the side of his chest. Your training did not help. I was nearly killed by my own sister. And you did not even care. I've seen the hospital logs. The both of you claim to be my parents, and yet I can count the number of times you visited me on one hand. The villagers could only stare on in shock and disbelief at the revelations. You have not even showed that you loved me for close 3 years. Ever since you started training them without me, the rift between our family has only grown. Can you tell me what you did this week? You don't have to answer that, I already know. You celebrated Natsuki's, Nawaki's, and Narumi's birthday on October 10th. Did you forget that we were born on the same day? If you truly did, then I can tell you that we are not in fact family. A family is not a group of people who are related by blood. A family is a group of people who will love each other unconditionally and never abandon each other. Well, you abandoned me. I only have one mother and one sister. Their names are Uchiha Mikoto and Uchiha Satsuki. Goodbye Kushina-sama, Hokage-sama. With those final words he walked off towards the academy with Satsuki in tow. Minato could only stare on in shock at what his son said. Kushina was covering her face with her hands. She had broken down after he denounced her as his mother. Natsuki was sobbing as she watched Naruto walk off with his new little sister, the position that was supposed to be hers. Narumi had a speechless expression on her face, thinking about how she had always acted toward him. Even Nawaki raised an eyebrow, but what Naruto had said didn't really bother him all that much. The crowd soon dispersed, leaving the Uzumaki Namake's family, -1, a lot to think about. Flashback end. Since then Naruto had been constantly approached by Kushina, Natsuki, and even Narumi repeatedly. That last one surprised him. She had always acted like a spoiled little brat to him. After his speech in the middle of the village, Narumi had done a lot of thinking and decided that she hated how she had acted. She vowed to become a little sister that Naruto could be proud of. Of course he wanted nothing to do with them, and their repeated attempts to bring him back into their family were starting to piss him off. They even came to the house once to try and talk to him, but they were soon banned from ever entering the Uchiha compound again by Mikoto after their persistence. He actually thought about incinerating them with one of his new Keton jutsus once when they pushed him too far, but he soon put off that thought. Those thoughts brought him back to thinking about his training. Naruto had mastered most of the genjutsu in the scroll that Itachi had given him on his birthday. This was made even more fearsome with the fact that he had also learned to activate them with his Sharingan. His abilities with Shisui's Sharingan had improved greatly. He was already used to being able to read high-speed movement with his own special eyes, so the Sharingan wasn't very different in that aspect. However, being able to cast genjutsu with just eye contact was something that Naruto was fascinated by. He had even grown to be able to activate Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan and use the Kodo Amatsukami. It turned out that he was able to use the jutsu with a significantly less period of time between uses. Naruto's chakra had grown incredibly powerful and potent after eating the Mara Mara no Mi, and with a chakra fruit being what gave birth to the Sharingan, his eyesight did not deteriorate with constant use. Naruto had learned most of what was in Ace's journal. His techniques took a bit of time to learn, but he mastered them all and then some. The one thing he did have trouble with was Haki. Haki was one of the only things that could negate his intangibility, so he made a point to learn it if he would ever need its use. After reading more of Ace's journal, the young Ravenet learned what Haki really was. Haki was an ancient form of Yin release that hadn't been used in ages. He knew that the Yin part of chakra was used primarily in genjutsu. He was an expert in the art after all, but he had never heard of Yin release being used like this. Haki came from the spirit, and the reason it was able to hurt Logia users was because it used the spirit to attack the spirit of the user. There were 3 types of Haki: Kenbunshoku, Busashoku, and Haoshoku. Kenbunshoku Haki granted the user a sixth sense of the world around them that surpassed any and all sensory abilities. It also gave him limited precognitive abilities that even surpassed the Sharingan when it came to predicting movement. Busashoku Haki allowed the user to turn their spirit into armor to either defend against attacks or to make their own attacks more potent. If used correctly, this type of Haki could even be used to surpass Tsunade's super strength. Haoshoku Haki was an extremely rare type of Haki that was only found in 1 out of every million people. It is used to overpower the will of others and render them unconscious. It turned out that Naruto did have the Haoshoku Haki, but it was extremely hard to learn. There was one other thing: Haki could not be fully utilized without perfect chakra control. Naruto then remembered just who he had to ask for help with his chakra control to be able to use Haki. Flashback, 2.5 years ago. Naruto had just entered the hospital. He really didn't want to have to resort having to ask her for help, but he really had no other choice. He needed perfect chakra control, and she was the only one who could say that they had succeeded in that feat. Naruto walked up to the nurse at front desk to make his request. "I would like to see Senju Tsunade if she is not busy at the moment. If she is, I am willing to make an appointment when she is free." Oh. Uzumaki stopped herself when she caught Naruto's cold glare. What happened between Naruto and the Uzumaki Namake's family had spread through the village pretty quickly. I mean, Naruto-sama. "Tsunade-sama is in her office right now. Follow me and I will take you there." Naruto nodded and let her lead the way. They arrived in front of an office, after which the nurse knocked on the door. "Tsunade-sama. Naruto-sama has come to see you." A tired voice quickly answered. "Let him in." The door opened and Naruto walked in, quickly noticing the empty sake bottles on her desk and the paperwork made into a makeshift pillow. It was quite easy to figure out that she was sleeping on the job. "Naruto? What can I do for you? After you left the hospital all those months ago, I thought you would never be coming back." Tsunade was curious at why he was here, but she was also happy. She had given up trying to spend some time with her godson several months ago after she had heard what happened between him and the rest of the Uzumaki Namake's family in the village. When she first heard about their confrontation, she was shocked at how he acted, but after she got over that, she was furious at Minato and Kushina when she realized what they had done. She tried to figure out all of the possible reasons why Naruto would be here. She knew that he was not too fond of her and wouldn't come to see her if he had any choice in the matter. Whatever the Ravenet wanted, Tsunade was going to try her hardest not to blow this opportunity. It was most likely the only one she would get. She just had to make sure not to drive him off by mentioning his family or anything like that. Naruto stared at her intently. "As much as I don't want to be here, I really don't have many other choices. I need your help." Tsunade wasn't expecting this. "Huh?" He just sighed. He really didn't want to spend time with this woman. "I need help with my training. I've hit a minor bump in the road with my progress and I require assistance in order to overcome it." Tsunade was silently cursing. "Naruto, I can see that you need some help, but I have no time to train someone from the ground up. I want to help, I really do, but from what I know you haven't even begun shinobi training yet. She was cut off as Naruto raised his hand up. "You're mistaken about one thing, Tsunade. I have shinobi training. Years of it, in fact. What I need help with is my control." Tsunade was surprised. Who could have possibly trained him? Control? "Yes, I need to be able to have perfect control over my chakra. I'm almost there, but there must be something that I'm missing. My aim is to be able to completely separate the spiritual and physical halves of my chakra." Tsunade was speechless. He's already that far along in chakra control? If that's true, then I may be the only one who can teach him how to achieve perfect chakra control. Tsunade made her choice though. "If that's your aim, then achieving it will take a while. But if you're as far along as you say, then I'm willing to train you for as long as it takes." Naruto was both pleased and annoyed at this outcome. Pleased because he would finally be able to start learning hockey after his training was complete, and annoyed because this woman clearly wanted to make amends and he had no intention of starting any kind of familial relationship with her. "Alright, when do we get started?" Flashback end. Naruto had managed to achieve perfect control of his chakra in less than a year. During that year he would always head to the hospital right after the academy ended and work with Tsunade. He had even learned the basics of medical jutsu during his time with the woman. She was astounded at his growth. It had taken her years to achieve her level of chakra control and he had reached it in under a year. She had offered him a position as her apprentice, but he declined, not wanting to spend more time with her than he already had. Naruto even declined her offers to teach him her super strength or sign the slug contract. That was disheartening for Tsunade, but she was content with civil relationship they had. After Naruto finished his training under Tsunade, he immersed himself into training with hockey. He made great success with both Kenbunshoku and Busashoku hockey. However, he only had mild success with his training in Houshoku hockey. He usually tested out his new techniques at Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death. It wasn't all that it was made out to be. Sure, there were some large animals, but they were nothing compared to the Bijou or even those sea kings that Ace used to always run into. However, right now he was neither training nor researching new techniques of applications to his old ones. Right now he was sitting in the academy waiting to be called for his practical test. Naruto had already aced the written test, got a perfect score in shuriken and kunai target practice, and defeated Mizuki in a taijutsu spar. Most who had witnessed his tests would think that he would be the rookie of the year. However, this was not the case. Naruto only sent a Kage Bunshin to attend the class for him a few times a week. He quickly found out that he would receive all of the memories his clone received and he would grow incredibly bored during his training after it dispelled. For this reason he was only seen attending class about half of the time. However, he was just too smart for it to matter, so he was somewhere in the middle of his class. Currently Naruto was wearing a pair of black combat boots, a black glove on his right hand to cover his burns, knee-length black cargo short, an orange eyelet-studded belt, a perfect replica of Ace's hat that he had custom-ordered from Shinobi store, and a pale yellow button-up shirt that he wore open that is the large tattoo on his back, which he had gotten a few years back after his confrontation with the Uzumaki Namake's family. It was a mark that Ace wore with pride for his father, and now Naruto wore it with pride, stating that Ace was his only father. After living his life and respecting him for so long, Naruto started to look up to Ace as a father figure of sorts. This was also his way of denouncing his parentage, his final attachment to his birth family. He was broken from his thoughts when Narumi walked back into the room with a new Konoha Hitaiate tied around her forehead. Irika walked in after her. Naruto, it's your turn for the practical exam. People had learned quickly not to call him by his surname. It didn't end well for anyone who did. Naruto slowly started walking down the stairs. He was about walk past Narumi when she spoke up, "Good luck, Nisan." Naruto only stared at her for a minute before nodding. It made her happy that he didn't just completely blow her off. The Ravenet didn't really care whether she had a change in personality or not, he was completely apathetic to the whole family. He headed into the room where Irika and Mizuki sat behind a desk to judge his performance. There was only one Hitaiate left on the desk, he was the last one to go. Irika decided to start the exam. "Alright Naruto, you're the last one, you may start with any of the 3 academy jutsus you like." Naruto nodded and formed a single hand sign. A second later there was a puff of smoke and the young raven-haired one-eyed young man was replaced with a perfect copy of Irika. He released the henge a moment later. "Good, a perfect henge, how let's move on to the kawarimi." Without even making a hand seal this time he switched places with a chair in the corner. He did the kawarimi again a moment later to return the chair to its previous location. Excellent, and now the bunshin. Naruto hated the bunshin. To him it was a completely useless jutsu that someone would never use once they were out of the academy. However, this would be the last time he would ever do it, so he held in his distaste for the jutsu and formed a hand seal. A moment later 3 perfect illusionary copies of himself popped into existence. Irika smiled as Naruto released the jutsu a moment later. "Okay, good Naruto. Here is your Konoha Hitaiate. Wear it with pride and make the village proud." The Hitaiate had the symbol of Konohagakure in the middle of it with a black cloth to tie around the forehead. It didn't really fit his taste, so he made a note to get a custom one later on. Naruto walked back into the classroom and sat down next to Satsuki and Hana. Hana decided to speak before Mizuki and Irika came back. "Looks like you passed, congratulations." Naruto smirked at his childhood friend. "Was there really any doubt? I learned those jutsus over 3 years ago." Hana puffed her cheeks out and pouted. "I know that, but you barely came to the academy half of the time. If you weren't so smart you would have been the dope instead of that idiot brother of mine. So who do you want to have on your team?" Satsuki decided to interrupt their banter, knowing that it could go on forever. Hana had a thoughtful look on her face. "Besides you two, I think I could work with anyone, minus Nawaki and the fangirls." There were 3 people that were constantly a pain in the ass for everyone to deal with. The first was Nawaki. He had grown even more egotistical and arrogant over the years. Nobody knew where it came from, he really wasn't that good. Sure, he was the rookie of the year, but the only other real option for that spot was Shino, who just didn't want to be at the top. Nawaki hadn't really changed much besides that. His sisters constantly tried to get him to eat better and not always go to Ichiraku's, but he wouldn't listen. He had eating habits similar to Choji's and a body to match. Minato would probably make his children minus Naruto a team though, because Kushina wanted to come out of retirement and become a sensei. The fangirls as they were called were Ino and Sakura. They had some potential, but always swooned over who was at the top of the class. It was a major headache to hear those screeches every day. Naruto didn't even have to think. "I would prefer not to have any of Hokage-sama's children on my team, but other than that I don't really care. I really hope they put us together." Hana and Naruto smiled at that thought. It was at that moment that Irika and Mizuki came back in. "Congratulations for everyone who passes the exam this year. For those who didn't, please try harder next year so that you do. Everyone who passed, please come back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. for your team placements. You're dismissed." After Irika's words, everyone started filing out of the classroom. Hana decided to continue their conversation as they walked before they parted ways. "So what are you two going to do to celebrate?" Satsuki and Naruto looked at each other for a moment. "Naruto and I are probably going to go out to eat with Kaa-chan." "What are you going to be doing, Hana-chan?" Hana sighed. "I'm probably going to go out with Kaa-san and Kiba. I'll have to sit through her scolding Kiba about how he barely passed and needed to apply himself more so that he won't embarrass our clan, being the clan heir and all." They finally made it outside the academy and saw all of the parents waiting there. Naruto spotted Mikoto. "Well, this is where we part ways for now. We'll see you tomorrow, Hana." With that they left and made their way to Mikoto. However, luck was just not on their side. They were cut off by Narumi and Natsuki as they were walking towards Mikoto. Satsuki's eyes hardened. She and Natsuki had never gotten along. From what Naruto could gather, it all started that time when he was in the hospital. Natsuki decided to speak. Nisan, congratulations on graduating. We were wondering if you wanted to come and celebrate with us and the rest of the family. Even Tsunade-sama and Jiraiya-sama will be there?" Narumi could only face palm at her sister's way of asking. Why would she tell him that some of the very people that caused him all of this pain were going to be there? Narumi sighed. What she means is we want to celebrate passing the academy with you, Nisan. Just the three of us, you don't have to even come back to the compound. Satsuki was about to say something when she was cut off by Naruto. I appreciate the offer, Narumi, Natsuki, but I already have plans to celebrate with my family, among other things. They both left before they could see the hurt expressions on the faces of the blonde and redhead. Mikoto was worried when Kushina's daughters walked up to Satsuki and Naruto. Those two girls had some sort of brother complex for their own blood-related brother. More importantly, they wanted to stop her Naruto-kun from spending time with her. So she was happy when she saw the two Ravenettes walking to her. Congratulations on graduating, you two. How was the test? Satsuki grunted. It wasn't that hard. I'm surprised that's all it takes to become a shinobi of the village. Hokage-sama seriously needs to raise the requirements to become a shinobi. I'm pretty sure I got a perfect score in everything. Mikoto could only sweat drop at the responses she got. Naruto needed something that he had been waiting years to do. Actually, I have something that I need to do before we celebrate. This confused the two women. Well then, mind if we come along and celebrate right after? Mikoto asked curiously. Naruto only shrugged. He grabbed both of their shoulders and disappeared in a flash using Shisui's specialized shunshin. When they got to their destination, Mikoto and Satsuki were confused as to why they were in front of the Department of Records in the Hokage Tower. Naruto walked up to the lady at the front desk. She immediately recognized Naruto. Naruto-sama. What brings you to this section of the tower? Naruto smirked. As you can tell from my Hitaiate, I am now a shinobi of Konoha and now legally an adult. I am here for a legal request form to change my name. The woman's and the Uchiha's expressions were ones of shock. I had planned to do this a few years ago, but I would have to have been emancipated to do that, and doing so would draw far too much attention, not to mention Hokage-sama would never allow it. The woman knew of the estranged relationship between the family and Naruto, but she didn't think it was this bad. Nonetheless, she handed Naruto the form. Very well. You seem sure of this, and it is my job to overlook this legal matter. Naruto filled out the form slowly. He had been waiting 3 years to fill out this exact document, and when he was finished he signed the bottom and handed it back to the woman. She read the paper and raised an eye at the name he had chosen. Portgas D. Naruto? Naruto nodded. Very well. I will enter this name into the village's system and change your shinobi license to fit this name. Naruto thanked the woman and left the building with Mikoto and Satsuki, still a little confused at what they had just witnessed. Mikoto chose to speak. Naruto-kun? What was all of that about? Naruto smiled softly at her. That was me getting rid of the final thing that tied me to the Uzumaki Namikaze family. This day marks the death of Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto and the birth of Portgas D. Naruto. Satsuki hugged him tightly, knowing how much he hated bearing that name. Mikoto had one final question though. Where does the Portgas D come from? Naruto stopped walking and stared into the sky. From the only man that I will ever call my father. But that is a story for another day. He grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the Akamichi's barbecue restaurant. For now it's time to celebrate. Uchiha household. Next morning. Naruto's head was throbbing. He had drank far too much sake at the restaurant last night. He had just woken up. He looked to his left at the clock. It was only 8 a.m. He still had an hour until he had to be at the academy. It was then that Naruto noticed that there was a weight on his chest that wasn't his own. He looked down to see a mop of messy black hair and the adorable sleeping face of Mikoto using his chest as a pillow. He had really drank too much last night. He looked under the sheets and noticed that he was still wearing his clothes, but she was only in her underwear. He couldn't draw his eyes away from her perfect body. Her long legs and smooth skin, all of the curves in the right places, her shapely hips, and her perfectly sized C-cup breasts. He was a teenager after all. His eyes roamed her body and he eventually ended up at her lips. Mikoto was still wearing her pink lipstick from yesterday and something inside him just told him to taste them. However, it was that exact moment that Mikoto began to stir and was greeted with the sight of Naruto's face as soon as she opened her eyes. She noticed the compromising position they were in and had the decency to blush. She noticed that Naruto was blushing too and got an idea. The raven-haired beauty crawled up Naruto's chest, rubbing her fairly large assets across Naruto's body and purred into his ear, "Good morning, Naruto-kun." Naruto didn't know how to react to the situation at hand. He expected Mikoto to freak out or lose her temper like so many girls in the village did, but he did not expect her to start teasing him. She always did this and it drove him crazy. Sure, she was his mother figure, but ever since the massacre 3 years ago he had started feeling attracted to her. He didn't know what to do at the moment, so he decided to play along. Her head was right next to his at the moment, so he just whispered in her ear, "Good morning Mikoto-chan," and took the opportunity to nibble on her earlobe. She was shocked at his actions, and couldn't help but let out a moan. He pulled back and they started intently into each other's eyes for a moment before they started to inch their heads forward, closing their eyes in the process. However, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, the door started to open and Satsuki emerged. "Hey Kaa-chan, are you up yet? Or should I start making breakfast dash?" She stopped her thoughts as she saw the position that her Kaa-chan and Nisan were in. "What the hell are you two doing?" she screamed. This surprised Mikoto and Naruto, which caused them to jump away from each other. Mikoto was stuttering clumsily, trying to make an excuse that would make sense, not knowing what came over her. Me and Naruto were just, nothing was going on, air was going to happen between us." Naruto decided to recover for Mikoto's terrible lying. Satsuki, we had just woken up and had no idea how we ended up in bed together. We're just as confused as you right now." Satsuki continued to stare suspiciously at Mikoto, but after a good minute of silence let up, "Well, I wanted to know if you were going to make breakfast or I should start on it?" Mikoto decided that this was the perfect opportunity to end the awkward conversation. "Oh, I'll get right on it, just give me a minute to get dressed." Satsuki nodded and left the room, but not before sending one last death glare to Mikoto. "I guess I should shower and get changed too." Naruto got up and started walking to the door. "Naruto, wait." He turned around and Mikoto pressed her lips against her son's cheek. Naruto's face flushed as he could feel something or somethings pressing onto his chest. "We can continue this later," Mikoto said suggestively before walking out of the room with a sway in her hips. Naruto was left speechless at her actions, but for some reason looking forward to this later she spoke of. He decided that he needed to shower and get ready for the day. He walked into the shower and cleaned himself thoroughly. For some reason he was quite sweaty and was covered in Miket's perfume. "Just what the hell did we do last night? I know we didn't have sex because my clothes were still on, but I can't help but wonder." He couldn't get the image of her clad only in her black lingerie out of his mind. "Mikoto-chan is rather beautiful. Why the hell did I have to start feeling this was about her of all people?" With those thoughts in mind, Naruto got out of the shower and walked back into the room. It smells just like her." Okay, even I have to admit that was a rather creepy thought. Naruto decided to take his mind of his mother so that he could look her in the eye without blushing. He walked to his dresser and put on a black pair of knee-length cargo shorts, his orange eyelet-studded belt with the metal part of his hitayate replacing his belt buckle, a pair of black combat boots, and his hat. He had decided to forego his shirt, deciding that it was time to show his pride to the world. He also wasn't wearing the eye patch that Itachi gave him, deciding that he would have to reveal it sooner or later. He just opted to keep his right eye shut for now. With that done, Naruto walked out of his room and into the kitchen. Once he did though, he was met with a stuttering Satsuki and a blushing Mikoto, both of whom were staring at him with wide eyes. Satsuki was wearing a different outfit than usual. She wore a high-collared zip-up white shirt that was unzipped a little to show some skin. She also had on black skin-tight shorts that went down to her thighs and black tights. She opted for a pair of black shinobi sandals instead of combat boots like Naruto. Satsuki chose to break the silence first. And Naruto and I thought you were going to get dressed?" "I am dressed," he replied bluntly. "It is quite the outfit." Fufu. Mikoto was soon silenced at Satsuki's glare. She was still jealous at the two of them for what they were doing everywhere. After a quiet and uneventful breakfast, they both headed off to the academy to receive their team placements. Academy, 9 a.m. Naruto and Satsuki had just walked into the academy classroom and immediately all eyes were on them. This was usually the case though. Nobody could ever figure out why the two of them came to the academy together every morning. Most of the guys were jealous that someone as beautiful as Satsuki would be with Naruto. Normally they would be staring at Satsuki's choice of, usually skin-tight, clothing and how beautiful she was. However, this was not the case today. All of the students had noticed that Naruto had chosen not to wear a shirt or his eye patch today. Most of the girls were staring on with blushes on their face, especially Natsuki and Narumi. The guys were staring in jealousy at his build. Naruto was tall, tan, and very muscular. In fact, he barely had any body fat on him. However, everybody was drawn to the scars and tattoos that marred his body. They were just things that people his age did not have. Naruto ignored all of the stares and took Satsuki's hand to lead them to their usual seat in middle of the room next to Hana. Naruto wabdlasili, jo. Morning Hana. Not even Hana was immune to his body as she blushed. Good morning Naruto. That's an interesting choice of dress. Naruto chuckled lightly, so I've heard. Satsuki only glared at him for remembering how her mother reacted. It was then that Irika walked in covered in bandages. Okay, everyone settle down so we can begin. Everybody went silent at that, but Sakura decided to ask a question. Irika-sensei, where's Mizuki-sensei? Irika slightly flinched at that, something that nobody but Naruto noticed. Mizuki-sensei had a bit of an accident yesterday night while training, so he won't be joining us today. I overheard Minato talking to Kushina about how there might be a traitor in the ranks of the academy and how he was worried if their children would be alright. I guess that answers that question. Irika cleared his throat as a sign of him starting one of his long-winded speeches. Now everyone, this will be my final speech to you all. This may or may not be the last time that you see me, but I just wanted to say this. I am proud to have had you as my students. From today onward you are shinobi of Konohagakure no Sato. Everything that you do as a shinobi will reflect upon Konoha, so I want you to wear your hitayatesh with pride and make your village proud. Shinobi are born, raised, grow old, die, and fight to protect their village. We may not share ties of blood, but everyone in the village are all part of the same family. I want you to make your village, your family proud. Many of the students were shocked, having no idea that Irika could speak like that. They were so used to his boring academy speeches. Naruto couldn't really care less about anything that Irika said. It was a speech that was rehearsed to make newly made shinobi buy into the ideals of the village. Naruto lived by his own ideals, no one else's. He wouldn't be so easily influenced by mere words when he had already decided how Ho would live his life. He then began the team placements. Naruto noted that teams 1 to 6 had nobody of real importance on them, however he started to pay attention after the first person on Team 7 was announced. Team 7 will be Uzumaki Namake's Nawaki, Haruno Sakura dash. True love conquers all, Ino Pig, yelled Sakura. Ahem. As I was saying, Team 7 is Uzumaki Namake's Nawaki, Haruno Sakura, Uzumaki Namake's Narumi, and Uzumaki Namake's Natsuki. Your Jounin senseis will be Hataki Kakashi and Uzumaki Namake's Kushina. Natsuki and Narumi looked visibly depressed at not being on a team with their Nisan. Others were wondering why there were 4 people on the team and why they had 2 senseis. Naruto remembered something, however. Tsunade did say that she was interested in Sakura because of her high level of chakra control and that she wanted to take her on as a partial apprentice, but she didn't have the time to take her on fully because of her duties on the hospital, so the girl would need to have a team as well. Kushina-sama just wanted to train her children and Kakashi wanted to train his sensei's son, so it all worked out like that. Team 8 is Hyuga Hinata, Inazuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. Your Jounin sensei will be Yuhi Kurinai. Team 9 is still in circulation from the previous year. Team 10 will be Nara Shikamaru, Akimichi Choji, and Yamanaka Ino. Your sensei will be Sarutobi Asuma. Ino decided to voice her opinion to the class. No. Anybody but those 2. Irika just ignored her outburst. The final team, Team 11 will be Uchiha Satsuki, Inazuka Hana, and, Portgas, D. Naruto. Your Jounin sensei will be Uchiha Obito. All eyes in the room drifted to Naruto. He was expecting this. It isn't every day that you drop one of the most respected names in the village. He glanced over to his siblings. Nawaki looked like it was beneath him to even bother looking at Naruto, but both Narumi and Natsuki looked visibly hurt that their brother didn't even want to share the same name as them. Irika continued, your senseis will pick you up in 1 hour. You're free to do whatever you want in that hour, just don't be late to meet your sensei. With that said, Irika left the room. Everyone decided to leave the room besides Hana, Satsuki, and Naruto. Hana was surprised. You changed your surname? Naruto shrugged. Yep, I'm finally free. But more importantly, Satsuki, do you know who our sensei is? I didn't know that there were any adult Uchiha alive besides Mikoto. Satsuki only shook her head. I've never met him before. Wait, didn't Hokage-sama have a student named Uchiha Obito? Hana knew she had heard that name before. Naruto's eyes widened. Oh yeah, I completely forgot about him. He wasn't here during the massacre. From what I know, he hasn't stepped foot within Konoha in over 5 years. He was an ANBU who was working as a liaison between us and Kiri to build up trust or something before we made an alliance with them. It was in case our alliance with Suna didn't work out. I guess he's back in Konoha now. Satsuki was naturally curious. He was an Uchiha survivor and yet she had never met him. Naruto and do you know anything else about him? Naruto nodded. I learned about him when I overheard the Uzumaki Namake's siblings asking Hokage-sama about the genin team that he taught when they had just started training to be shinobi. Uchiha Obito was part of the former Team 7. Team 7 usually includes the Rookie of the Year, the top kunoichi, and the dobe of the class. This is the first-year graduation class in generations that it hasn't been done. Anyway, his teammates were Hatake Kakashi and Noera Rin. They were a team formed during the Third Great Shinobi War. After an accident on a mission where Obito's left side was crushed by a boulder, he gave his left Sharingan eye to Kakashi to replace his after it was injured beyond repair. He was presumed dead after that mission, but under circumstances that are classified he returned to the village after the left side of his body was repaired. Sometime between his supposed death and reappearance, his teammate Noera Rin was killed in action. Because of that he always visited the memorial stone and was depressed, which is why he was sent out of the village to get his mind off of things. He's supposed to be one of the top shinobi that Konoha has. Hana was shocked. Wow, that is quite a lot of knowledge you picked up from just eavesdropping. I guess I'm happy to at least have someone competent as a sensei. The conversation deteriorated from there to just small talk about the aspects of being a shinobi and small chit-chat here and there. Soon everyone who had left the room to eat lunch or meet with their teams started flowing back into the classroom, and not too much longer after that the Jounin senseis started coming into the class and picking up their students. 2 hours later. Soon enough it was only Team 7 and Team 11 who were still waiting for their sensei. Naruto remembered something else. Oh yeah. I forgot one other thing about our sensei. Hana and Satsuki both looked at his questioningly. Naruto saw their looks and decided to answer their unasked question. He is always late no matter what. He's where Kakashi got his habit from. Everyone in the room could only sweat drop at the people who were supposed to be training them. It was then that the doors burst open, revealing an angry-looking Kushina dragging a silver-haired man wearing a face mask with his headband covering his left eye, and a brown-haired man of the same age with scars covering a majority of the right side of his face and what looked to be a glass eye in his left eye socket by their ears. Ah? Kushina-sama, please give me back my limited edition autographed Ika Ika. Kakashi cried. Kushina-sama, you're pulling too hard, please let go. Obito pleaded. Kushina was quickly losing her temper. No. We're 2 hours late because I had to look all over the village for you, only to find you two morons giggling like schoolgirls over that perverted book. The newly graduated genin could only sweat drop further. Kushina-sama, you're making us look bad in front of our students. Obito cried. Kushina realized they had reached their destination. Oh, we're here already? Okay then, Team 7 with me and Kakashi, follow us to the roof. The two of them left with their students not too far behind, leaving the newly named Obito alone with the remaining three. Alright Team 11, please meet me at Training Ground 7. You have 10 minutes to meet me there. After speaking he disappeared in a leaf shunshin. Hana stood up and noticed that her two teammates hadn't even moved a muscle yet. What are you two waiting for? We better get going now or we won't make it in time. Training Ground 7 is pretty far away. Naruto didn't say a word, he just stood up and grabbed Satsuki's shoulder. He reached his hand out motioning for Hana to grab it. Hang on tight. Were the only words he said before they vanished in a flash. They reappeared at Training Ground 7 only a moment later. This surprised Obito, who figured that he had a bit of time before they showed up. Not bad kiddies. From what I know about these three is that they were in the middle of their class in the academy. They seem like they trust each other, so teamwork probably won't be a problem either. They should no problem passing the bell test, but we'll get to that when the time comes. Alright you three, why don't you sit down on those tree stumps so that we can begin introductions. After they sat down, Hana wanted some clarification. What do you want to know about a sensei? The three of us already know each other pretty well. I'd like to know things: your names, likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams, and the area of shinobi arts that you specialize in or want to specialize in. Why don't I go first to give you an example? Obito stated. My name is Uchiha Obito. I suppose I like Jiraiya-sama's Ika Ika novels and discussing them with Kakashi. I dislike those who abandon their comrades. This is one of the beliefs that I live by. Those who abandon their mission are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. Make sure all of you remember that. My hobbies? I enjoy reading. My current dream is to lead a successful genin team that will not meet the same fate that mine did. I specialize in time-space ninjutsu. Naruto was interested. That's a pretty obscure area of ninjutsu. I thought Hokage-sama was the only one who used a similar type in the village. Hana chose to go next. I'm Inuzuka Hana. I like dango and animals. I hate people who abuse animals or treat them badly. My hobbies are working on medical ninjutsu and learning about medicine. My dream is to become a veterinarian for the village and to treat Ninken of the Inuzuka clan. I specialize in my clan's taijutsu along with the three Haimaru brothers, who are my Ninken partners. They're pretty big and would take up a lot of room in the academy, so I have a partial summoning contract on my hand in case I need them for combat. Don't Inuzukas only have one Ninken each? She must be pretty special if she has three of them. were Obito's thoughts on the matter. I guess I'm up. My name is Uchiha Satsuki. I love my Kaa-chan and Naruto and I. However, I hate when I walk into his room and find him and Kaa-chan, half naked, about to make out. She sent a glare towards Naruto, who rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. The other two members of the team were slack-jawed at the revelation. Naruto and Mikoto-sama? Oh my. I always thought there was something more going on between them. Hana was blushing furiously. Naruto and Mikoto-sama, Mikoto-sama and Naruto-iu. I don't want to know about their private life or even imagine those two doing that together, although it would be excellent material for Jiraiya-sama's new book. Obito got a bit of a nosebleed at the end. Anyway, my hobbies are training and learning to cook. I guess my dreams are to make sure that my family is never sad again, as well as to maybe start a family someday. She blushed at the thought and stole a glance at Naruto. I don't really have a specialization yet. I only have a few jutsus other than the ones we were taught in the academy, but I would like to be able to awaken my Sharingan and to proudly bear the Uchiha name. Naruto and Hana already knew most of this, so that left Obito with his thoughts. I thought for sure that she would be obsessed with revenge against Itachi, but apparently she doesn't give a damn about him. What the hell is going on with this team? Everybody's gazes then shifted to Naruto, who was sitting on the middle stump with his eyes closed. I guess it's my turn then. My name is Portgasti, Naruto. I like my mother Mikoto and my Amuto Satsuki. I dislike far too much to count, but mainly who don't live their lives by their own beliefs. My hobbies include training and spending time with either Mikoto, Satsuki, or Hana. My dreams, I want to live my life on my own terms, to live my life without regrets. There are only two things that I have ever sought after, the answers to my lifelong questions, and freedom. As for my specialties, I specialize in Katan ninjutsu. Much of the rest of the team was shocked at what his dreams were. This was the first time that he had talked about the subject. Granted, Satsuki and Hana were used to his attitude and beliefs, but they had never actually learned what drove him in life. Now they did. Oh, why couldn't I have gotten a normal team? Obito had started crying anime tears while all three of his students sweat dropped. Obito clapped his hands together, suddenly in a cheerful attitude. Okay, now that introductions are over and I know you all a little bit better, it's time for your Genin test. Hana was confused. Sensei, didn't we take the Genin exam in the academy? Obito could only chuckle. Did you think that pathetic little test would actually make you Genin? Of course not. That test was to hold those who weren't ready back so that they wouldn't die in this exam. Hana and Satsuki's eyes both widened. Of course, did you think that you would really pass without a combat exam? This will be a survival exercise that my sensei did with my team. Their sensei reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 bells. Here are the parameters of the test. Each one of you will try to get one of these bells. Notice that there are only 2 bells and 3 of you. This means that I will only be taking 2 of you on as students at most. Those who don't get a bell will be sent back to the academy. You have 3 hours to get a bell. Now, begin. Each of the genin disappeared from the clearing, heading in different directions. Naruto saw through the test immediately. He was a genius after all, but he decided to play along with the test for now and see how his teammates would react. Obito concentrated and was able to sense Satsuki hiding at the trees to his right, for chakra signatures heading towards him, probably Hana and the Ninken she just summoned. However, he couldn't sense Naruto, which interested him. He was the top jounin in Konoha after all. It was then that 4 large twisters charged at him. They were reckless and quite easy for him to dodge. You know, you could have done much better than a frontal assault. Hana growled and charged at him once more. In the trees not too far away were Satsuki and Naruto watching the fight in the clearing. Don't you think we should help her if this test is about teamwork? Satsuki asked. Yes, we should, but we shouldn't just charge in recklessly like Hana did. She was always one to rush into things before thinking. I need to see what our sensei can really do in order to make a plan that won't end in failure. It's obvious that Hana isn't going to make him show us anything with her predictable movements, so I want you to go down there and help her out. If it's 2-on-1 with your level of skill, he should show a bit more of what he can do. After I've seen enough, I'll get you 2 out of there. Satsuki nodded at Naruto's plan and jumped forward into the clearing. Getsuga. Hana repeatedly used her most powerful technique along with her Ninken partners, and spun at a high speed and formed into what looked like 4 large drills that were meant to deliver many beast-like attacks when it hit their target. However, at the moment it was useless because she couldn't even touch her sensei. He was just moving too fast. However, that didn't last long as Obito sidestepped her attack and grabbed her arm, stopping her assault. Her Ninkens also stopped, worried about their partner. Obito was about to plant his fist in Hana's gut when Satsuki shot out from the forest and engaged him in a bout of taijutsu. Her sudden appearance caused him to drop Hana, after which she jumped back to regroup with her ninkins. Satsuki charged at him, starting off with a punch to the chest which he easily sidestepped, then a knee to the gut which he blocked, followed by a high kick. Obito ducked under the kick and swept her legs out from under her, causing her to hit the ground. He was about to go for the finishing blow with a fist to her stomach, but as soon as he made contact, she shattered into splinters of wood. Oh? To be able to use the kawarimi so efficiently already is pretty impressive. However, I need to see what you can really do. Obito had already sensed where Satsuki had kawakami'd to. He turned around and saw her there, panting, right next to Hana. Their sensei was eyeing the girls curiously, wondering what they would do. Satsuki started going through hand seals and ended on tiger. She inhaled a deep breath and molded the chakra in her lungs and exhaled a large fireball, katan, gukyaku no jutsu. The large ball of fire rushed at, tearing apart the ground beneath it. The scarred man decided to counter with his own version of the technique. He put a single hand in the tiger hand seal and exhaled the massive ball of fire chakra, katan, gukyaku no jutsu. The two fireballs met in the middle of the clearing, where Obito's quickly overwhelmed Satsuki's and continued to rush towards her. Shit! I put too much power into that jutsu. If that fireball hits, it'll incinerate the both of them. Obito was panicking as the jutsu was moving too fast for either of the girls to dodge. However, it seemed luck was on the elder Uchiha's side as the fire started glowing yellow before it converged into a smaller form. Once the bright light faded, it revealed the form of Portgas D. Naruto. Though everyone in the clearing was happy he appeared, everyone had one thought running through their minds. What the hell did he just do? There was silence for a minute before Obito charged at him. Whatever he did, it doesn't matter. Naruto is finally here, which gives me the perfect opportunity to test him. Naruto wasn't fazed in the least bit at his sensei's actions, nor was he worried. Obito noticed that Naruto didn't even move a muscle, so he figured that he couldn't keep up with the mid-level Chunin speed he was moving in. Obito rushed him and dropped down to kick him in the chest, but to his surprise, he phased right through Naruto. The area he just passed through was being regenerated by flames. Before Obito could recover from his shock, Naruto took deep breath and molded fire chakra in his lungs. Katan, Heijingekure no Jutsu, fire release, hiding in the ash and dust. A thick blanket of ash and fire exploded from Naruto's position, completely burning anything it touched. Obito had managed a last-minute kawarimi, only receiving a few second-degree burns. However, he was speechless at what he saw when his eyes caught the clearing. The area was completely scorched and the ground was covered in ash. He had only just made it out of the radius of the jutsu. Many of the trees had been completely incinerated. Though what he noticed was that his students were no longer in the clearing. To use a jutsu that powerful just for smokescreen, that kid's really something. How'd he get his hands on that jutsu though? It was one of Uchiha Madara's personal jutsu. Oh well, I better move to a different location, don't want to inhale any of that ash. It'd be the same as smoking as much as Asuma does in a day. With Naruto. Naruto had just dropped the two girls he was holding on to the ground. He looked behind him. Hana's ninken hadn't gotten caught up in his last jutsu and were following him. He could still feel all of the heat coursing through his veins from using that katan jutsu. He loved for this feeling. The heat was comfortable. It made him feel at home, in his truest form. Now that we've seen how powerful he is, why don't we make a plan to take him on together? That's what he wants after all. Naruto stated bluntly. Hana looked surprised. What do you mean by that? Both of the other members of the team looked at her incredulously. It was Satsuki who spoke up. We're supposed to work together, obviously. That was the point of the two bells. He was trying to divide us up. Naruto and I realized it immediately, and I did not too long after the test started. You did too, didn't you? Hana could only blush in embarrassment and look down. Sensei wouldn't say that. People who abandon their comrades are scum and then make us turn on each other a moment later. It was all part of the test. Naruto stated emotionlessly. Anyway, he wants us to work as a team, and that's exactly what we're going to do, okay? I have a plan. Are you two willing to follow my lead? Both girls nodded. Naruto smirked, knowing his sensei would be in for one hell of a surprise. With Obito. Obito was in another clearing not too far away from the previous one. He was currently just standing there with his eyes closed, waiting. The elder Uchiha was waiting for his students to come after him once again. This is exactly the same kind of situation that he had to go through with Kakashi, Minato-sensei, and Rin. He still missed her. He shook his head, breaking himself of the thoughts of his former teammate as he needed to focus on the task at hand. Obito wouldn't let a repeat of the former Team 7 happen. The current sensei of Team 11 spread out his senses and found what he was looking for. Surrounding him from four sides was Inuzuka Hana and her ninken partners preparing for an ambush. Not a second later, for drill-like attacks were heading straight for him from north, east, south, and west. He only had two directions to move in, up or below. He chose the latter, knowing that they expected him to jump, Doton, Mogurigaker no Jutsu, Earth Release, hiding like a mole technique. Using one of his Earth Jutsus, he dove underground, thinking that Hana and her Ninken would collide into each other. They didn't, instead they each moved slightly to avoid each other and speed back into the forest. Obito could sense this using magnetic forces in the earth to sense. Honestly, he was confused, but also curious to what his students were planning. The Uchiha moved back up to the surface to see what they had planned next. As he rose, he noticed that the entire clearing has filled with small balls of green light floating in the air. They were beautiful, to be honest, and they captivated him, though he did wonder where they came from. He had never seen a jutsu like this. Just what were their purpose? He shouldn't have asked that. Naruto could be seen standing on a tree to the south of the clearing behind Obito. His hands were glowing with green light. The very same green lights that were seen throughout the battlefield, and more were being produced at the very moment. As soon as he saw his sensei rise from the ground, he activated the technique. Hadarubi, Firefly Light. The lights seemed to grow brighter, but they didn't appear to do anything yet. Hidaruma, Fiery Doll. He spoke once again. All of the floating balls of light converged onto Obito at speeds that were impossible to dodge, and then they exploded, setting everything that they touched on fire. The smoke cleared and Naruto saw the form of Obito standing in the middle of the crater, completely unharmed. Naruto frowned at the results, but things were going as planned. He must have used that space-time ninjutsu that he was talking about. It's quite impressive for him to be able to dodge that combination with a single jutsu. He must have some kind of intangibility that is similar to mine for a short period of time. As soon as the smoke was blown away by the wind, Satsuki dropped down from one of the trees and charged her sensei. She caught him just after Naruto's jutsu ended, so he had no time to recover and was able to make him block instead of just dodge. A kick to the head was blocked by the man's forearm, and the punch that followed was caught before she could react, was thrown back. He charged at her this time, forcing her on the defensive. He was going easy on her and she knew it, but she just had to keep him occupied long enough. Satsuki made her move and tried to sweep her sensei's legs out from under her, but he jumped into the air. However, she was expecting this and used her momentum to propel herself upwards in an uppercut. Obito jumped back to avoid the punch, but as he did, he noticed a shadow right behind her. Obito looked Naruto right in the eye, both eyes. Big mistake. Megan, Kasegui no Jutsu, Demonic Illusion, Shackling Stakes Technique. As soon as Obito looked into Naruto's lone Sharingan, he was caught in his illusionary world where large, metal spikes were driven into his limbs, preventing any kind of movement. The physical pain was unbearable and he quickly reactivated his Sharingan to break free from the genjutsu. The illusion broke, but he was forced on one knee, panting, could still feel the phantom pains that ached from where he was impaled. Obito looked up to see his three students standing in front of him. Satsuki was smiling there, triumphantly holding the bells. Hana was next to her, smirking, with the three Ninken at her side. And finally Naruto was looking over at Satsuki, smiling softly at how happy she was. He had both eyes open at this point. Obito's eyes widened. The Sharingan? I had, though, that I was imagining things. Why does he have it? I had thought that his right eye was removed years ago because of an accident. Obito composed himself and addressed his students. Very impressive, you three, especially your plan at the end. Though I have to ask now, who gets the bells? Enough games, sensei. We saw through the whole test a long time ago. You wanted us to work as a team to get the bells, but you tried to deviate us in the beginning with your only two bells plan. We all pass. You're the one who said that comrades don't abandon each other. Satsuki had gotten a bit irritated that he tried to pull another test at the end of all this. He looked at the other two team members and they nodded at what she said. The oldest Uchiha smiled. Very good, you three pass. This is the test that my sensei gave our team after we graduated and we failed miserably. We only passed the test because we decided to work together about 5 minutes before time was up. I guess that was enough to give us a passing grade. I'm glad that you three were able to figure out the meaning early on. From now on we are officially Team 11. Satsuki and Hana cheered while Naruto only smirked. This is technically supposed to be Team 7's training ground because it corresponds with their team number. I just wanted to do the test here for old time's sake. So meet me at Training Ground 11 tomorrow at 8 a.m. for team training and our first mission. You're dismissed. Obito disappeared into a swirl of leaves signifying a leaf shunshin. The three newly made genin looked at each other before Hana spoke excitedly. We're now genin of Konoha and officially a team. Why don't we go out and celebrate before we get into training and missions tomorrow? I second that. Let's go get some food. Satsuki cheered. Dango Onigiri Sushi. Were all called out simultaneously. They glared at each other for a minute before silently nodding and started walking towards the village. The Will of Fire still burns, team training and journey to Yuki no Kuni. Training Ground 11. It had been a month since Team 11 passed their graduation test. The four of them had been doing D-rank missions almost non-stop since the formation of their team. Thankfully they didn't have suffer through the most dreaded mission for every genin team. Finding Tora the cat. Sure, finding it took a while, but with the help of Naruto's Sharingan the devil cat was always subdued easily. They had done 42 D-rank missions over the course of the month, however today was different. Obito had finally decided to give them all some real training since they had already gone over their team formations and completed basic chakra control exercises. Today they weren't going to do any missions because their sensei thought that his students would need some extra training before the C-rank mission that they would take later in the week. At least Satsuki and Hana would. One thing that Obito realized early on was that Naruto was far above the level of a genin and didn't need his help quite as much. It first started when Obito began Naruto's training with the Sharingan and he soon figured out that Naruto didn't need any of it. The genin was as proficient in its use as he was. After that he pretty much left Naruto to his own devices. The three genin were standing in front of their sensei in the middle of Training Ground 11. Obito's thoughts began to ponder what to teach them. Okay, Hana doesn't really have any ninjutsu that can be used without the use of her ninken, so that's a major weakness. She excels in her clan's taijutsu, but if she doesn't have any time or room to get the techniques started then she's wide open. Her medical ninjutsu is coming along nicely though. Satsuki finally awoke her Sharingan during training last week, but she still only has one tomo in each eye. She doesn't seem all that interested in genjutsu either, which is one of the advantages of the Sharingan. She'll most likely be a ninjutsu specialist with taijutsu as a backup. Naruto, I don't even know where to start. I haven't seen the true extent of his capabilities yet. The scarred man brought himself out of his thoughts and addressed his students. Okay, my cute little genin, the three said. Genin glared at him. Today we are going to be focusing on getting you ready for a C-ranked mission at the end of the week. Hana, I need to focus on you the most, so I'll start with you while Naruto helps Satsuki with her taijutsu and fire nature manipulation. Hana looked at him questioningly. Look Hana, you have a very good grasp of your clan techniques, but once you're separated from your ninken you're completely vulnerable. Also you have no ninjutsu besides what you can do with your ninken. So what am I supposed to learn, sensei? I really haven't heard of any common ninjutsu that will air me in battle. I've always just used my clan techniques. Obito looked down at her. You're the medic of the team, but your taijutsu involves rushing your opponent at high speeds. A medic isn't supposed to get involved in a fight unless it is absolutely necessary. I will teach you some basic ninjutsu where you won't have to get up close to your opponents, okay? Hana nodded and followed her sensei to the other side of the training ground, leaving Naruto and Satsuki on their own to spar and practice their Uchiha techniques. 3 hours later. Okay Satsuki, I think that's enough today, you're already exhausted. Naruto stated. But you haven't even broken a sweat yet and we've been training non-stop for the past 3 hours. She whined. Naruto sighed knowing it was true. I've already learned everything we did and the purpose of all that sparring was to try to unlock your second tomo, which we did. I will do my own training after we're done today. There's something that I've taken an interest in recently. Satsuki grew excited at his answer. Oh, what is it? A new katan jutsu? Learning another element? Don't tell me you're going to try and learn a kenjutsu. She was coming to all kinds of conclusions after just one sentence. She had always been interested in ninjutsu, but she was far too eager to learn whatever it was that she was interested in. She had only today learned her second katan jutsu and was already wanting to learn more. Honestly, this girl? Naruto sighed once more. No, nothing like that, however you aren't ready to try something like this just yet. I'll keep it a secret for now, perhaps I'll tell you about it another time. Satsuki pouted, but it didn't have any effect as Obito and Hana come back to the clearing. It was getting dark out, so they figured it was time to wrap up training for the day. Hana was covered in dirt, cuts, and bruises. She'd seen better days. It was obvious that Hana was exhausted and couldn't do any more training today if she tried. Okay, that's enough training for today everyone. You can have tomorrow off to recover your chakra and get some rest. Some of us look like we could really use it. Everyone looked at Hana, who could only blush in embarrassment. But come here prepared on Wednesday. We'll be going over team formations and do some light sparring before we get our first C-rank mission on Thursday. You're dismissed. All of the members of the team soon left the training ground, leaving only Naruto behind. They all figured that he had some extra training that he wanted to get done, or a new jutsu that was too dangerous to practice with everyone there. They were half right in their assumptions. Naruto had walked by Training Ground 7 today and had seen all three of his siblings practicing their summoning. They either summoned a small toad or a small slug, not all that impressive after years of holding the two contracts. Their summons didn't seem all that interesting to him, but the prospect of being able to summon an animal to aid you in battle did. Naruto only knew the basics of summoning. First, you could only summon an animal once you made a blood pact with a certain species after signing their summoning scroll. However, if you preformed the summoning when you weren't bound to specific species, then you would be transported to the realm of animals that you were naturally aligned with. If you were not aligned with an summoning realm, then nothing would happen. The jutsu would not work. Now was the moment of truth for Naruto. He performed the hand seals, boar dog bird monkey ram, then bit his thumb drawing blood and slammed it onto the ground. Kuchios no jutsu. As soon as those words were spoken, Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke. Empty silver. Empty silver was a peaceful summoning realm. At least for the inhabitants there it was. To any outsider who dare come to their sacred home would be turned into ashes immediately from the immense heat and smoldering volcanoes everywhere. Which is why the natives of the realm were surprised when they saw a teenage boy falling from the sky and impact the earth below. What was strange was that he wasn't burned to a crisp or killed from the impact. No, as soon as he made contact in the ground he dispersed into flames, and a second later those very flames converged into his form. That was not an experience that Naruto did not want to go through again. Had he not been composed of fire, then he would surely be dead by now. Ha had just gotten off of the ground and took notice of the surrounding area. What he saw were flames. The entire land was covered in fire and ash, there were volcanoes everywhere, and entire oceans of lava could be seen in the distance. He was currently standing on the peak of a tall mountain. The scene before him would have looked like a landscape where dinosaurs would dwell, except completely set ablaze, or something that could be seen after an apocalypse. He didn't know what to make of it. He was so captured by the landscape that he failed to notice the large shadow looming over him on the mountain's peak, or at least until the figure spoke. "How have you not perished upon entering our sacred land?" Naruto jumped a little. He wasn't scared, just a little surprised. He let his guard down and failed to notice that something was behind him. He quickly turned around and was greeted with a sight in which he didn't know whether to feel awe or fear. "You have journeyed to MT Silver Boy. Any creature other than our own would have been incinerated upon nearing our home. And yet here you stand, a human no less, in out sea of flames, completely unharmed. I must say you've piqued my interest, human. What is your name?" Naruto broke out of his shock and gathered himself enough to the large summon. "I am Portgas D. Naruto. I used the reverse summoning and somehow ended up here. Though it makes me wonder, who are you and what are you? Ha ha ha. To think that you are his incarnate. I certainly did not expect this. Very well, I will answer your questions. I am Dranzer, the ruler of the Phoenix." After Dranzer spoke, he came out of the shadows so that he could be seen better. Naruto looked at him more closely and saw a large bird, about 100 feet tall, with red feathers and gold designs covering his wings and chest. The majestic bird in front of him exuded power. "You know of who I am? I should not be surprised. After all, if you are a phoenix, then you should be more knowledgeable about that particular subject than I am." "Oh? So you even know about the man who was once known as Portgas D. Ace? The man who gave birth to fire. I have inherited his power and his will." The large phoenix was surprised at Naruto's comment. "I can feel the power dwelling within you. You are telling the truth. Answer me one question though. If you answer correctly, then I can tell that we'll enjoy working together." Naruto was curious at what the phoenix could want. "What do you want to know? Tell me, boy, what is your will of fire?" Naruto could only smirk. Thursday, bar in Konoha's red light district. Naruto was considering burning the entire village to the ground. He was very irritated at the moment. First, his team was ordered by their sensei to go and watch the new Princess Gale movie, which was absolutely terrible. The acting was so cliché that he may have incinerated the movie theater to do everyone a favor, if not for the fact that Satsuki and Hana were actually enjoying it. The plot made no sense whatsoever, and it had some foolish moral to the story like, never give up. Naruto was not a fan of the Princess Gale movies. The only reason that he actually stayed until the end was because they were told that they would be protecting the lead actress of the movie, Fujikaze Yuki, while they shot their final scenes for the latest movie. Next they saw her riding by on a horse being chased by a group of people. At that sight, Satsuki and Hana took off after them in an attempt to rescue her, but Naruto sensed no ill intentions from them using his Kenbunchaku haki, so he went to find his sensei, who he could sense not too far away. It was then that he was told that Yuki refused to cooperate by a man named Sandewa-sama. Naruto could only groan, knowing that this was some spoiled actress who expected everyone to bow before her and not question any of her decisions. Naruto, Obito, and Sandeo then found Satsuki and Hana tying up the rest of the film crew just as they had caught Yuki, giving her the chance to escape once again. Sadly, it was Naruto who was tasked with finding her and bringing her back to board the ship, either willingly or unwillingly. Unfortunately for him, it would not bode well for their mission if he was to burn half of her face off, so he would most likely have to resort to other means to get the job done. The Ravenet remembered what her presence had felt like from when she rode past him on her horse earlier that day. He managed to track her down quite easily with the help of his Kenbunchaku haki. He had found her at a bar in the red light district trying to drink away her problems. There were only 3 people in the room, Fujike's Yuki, the bartender, and himself. Currently she was pretty drunk and trying to hit on Naruto. "You're quite handsome, you know that? And with all of those muscles Naruto could only stare on with a blank expression. "Why don't we go find ourselves a motel room and you'll find out I can ride other things besides a horse?" She ended suggestively. Naruto was immune to seduction after spending the majority of the last 5 years of his life with one of the most attractive MILFs in the elemental nations. "Sandeu and the rest of the crew are waiting on you. The ship will be leaving soon, we better get going." Yuki's expression turned cold after that. "I won't go back to Yuki no Kuni. I refuse to go back to that place." Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. "Why do you even care if I go or not? Being an actress isn't all it's cracked up to be. We read lies written in a script and breathe life into them. Maybe I should just stop acting altogether." Naruto could only roll his eyes at the pathetic girl in front of him. If this was how she was going to act throughout the entire mission, then he may end up killing her. "Sorry about this." Yuki looked at him to see what he meant, but met the Sharingan's gaze. "Genjutsu, sleep." The actress slowly started to lose consciousness before she completely passed out. Naruto picked up her unconscious body and threw her over his shoulder. He nodded to the bartender and walked out the door to meet with his team. Middle of the ocean, ship. Needless to say, Yuki wasn't very happy when she awoke. She has had on the same emotionless expression since she was finished throwing her temper tantrum. She was getting ready to perform one of her scenes while Team 11 was on the other side of the ship watching on. "I never knew that the Fujike's Yuki was such a spoiled little princess. It makes me sick that I actually like her movies." Hana commented. "I don't see what the point in actually coming was. What are we even supposed to do?" Satsuki asked. Obito sighed. "We are supposed to be guarding Yuki and to a lesser extent the crew. I know that she's a handful to deal with, but the length of this mission is only a few days. Just try to go with it for now. And remember to keep your eyes open, you never know what kind of people will come after famous celebrities." Team 11 could see the glacier where they were first going to film at in the distance. They would be there in less than an hour. All of the mountains and land were covered in a thick sheet of ice and there was an obvious snowstorm. They could feel the cold all the way out at sea. Moving on to a more important topic, "Naruto? Why aren't you wearing anything?" Hana asked. Naruto was in his usual outfit while all of the other members of the team were wearing cloaks to protect themselves from the elements. "Yeah, Naruto and you're gonna freeze to death out there." Satsuki yelled at him. Naruto didn't look concerned. "My body doesn't get cold. Go ahead, feel it." All of the members of the team did, but 2 of them jumped back at the sudden heat, while Satsuki took a liking to how his abs felt. All 4 of them felt an ominous feeling in the pit of their stomachs, which could only mean that something was going to go terribly wrong on this mission. Glacier. It was a beautiful day on the glacier where they were stopped at. The sun was shining and there wasn't a single cloud in the sky. Which was odd considering there was a snowstorm going on not even an hour ago. However, as soon as Naruto stepped foot in the country, the snow just stopped falling and the clouds dispersed. His body was so hot that not even nature dared defy him. The crew had just finished setting up their equipment to film one of the scenes and were in the process of filming. Obito had gone ahead to scout out the next location they were going to set up to make sure that there were no traps and that it was safe. While he was gone, Naruto was in charge of Yuki's safety. Everything was going fine until the mountain top that was directly behind the group blew up, causing a small avalanche. "Is this in the script?" one of the actors on set asked. Naruto didn't even need to ask and jumped in front of Yuki onto the scene. "Everyone get back to the ship. This is where our job starts. Sandeu, take Yuki back and make sure she's safe. Hana. Satsuki. You're with me. Standard defense formation." Yuki started to lose it. "It's just like the last time. I knew I shouldn't have come back, but all of you didn't listen." She froze and dropped to her knees, refusing to move from that spot. The mist cleared on the ledge of the mountain, revealing 3 shinobi. One of them was a lean but muscular man that had blue hair tied into a ponytail with strange markings on his face. He was most likely the leader. The second was a heavy-set man with black eyes and purple hair. The third was a female with pink hair who was wearing a dress worn for battle. All three of them had on Yuki Hitayate and chakra armor. Welcome to Yuki no Kuni. Tell me, Princess Koyuki? Did you bring the hexagonal crystal? The leader spoke. Princess Koyuki? What the hell is going on? They could only be referring to Yuki. Fubuki, Mizore. Get the princess. The leader ordered. The larger man and the pink-haired woman both charged towards Yuki. The man pulled out a snowboard that was propelled with chakra and the woman used the wings attached to her chakra armor to fly. Hana. Satsuki. You take care of those two, I'm going after their leader. Naruto ordered. The two girls broke off and cut their respective opponents off, all while Naruto charged the man, still on the cliffside. Oh, you're quite young to be leading so efficiently. My name is Roga Nadar and I will be the one to kill you. It doesn't quite matter what my name is since you won't be living much longer. Naruto said with a smirk. With Hana. Hana was not faring well, opponent was quite large and had immense strength, not to mention that chakra armor he had on was deflecting all of her weapons and ninjutsu. She was fighting the one they called Mizore. She couldn't get close enough to use her clan techniques alongside the three Haimaru brothers, the man was just moving too fast. He was using a snowboard to speed up and make sharp turns every time she got close. It was really starting to piss her off. He hadn't even used a single jutsu yet. All he did was ride around on that snowboard and use that retractable mechanical arm of his. If that's all you got, I might as well finish you off right now. There's no way I can be defeated while wearing this chakra armor. He boasted. Hana grit her teeth once more and charged. With Satsuki. Satsuki wasn't having too much trouble with her opponent, the only problem was that she could fly with those wings of hers. This Fubuki woman was a pain in the ass to deal with. Hayaton, Tsubame Fubuki, Ice Release, Swallow Snow Storm. A large cluster of needles shot out of the pre-existing ice and formed into small swallows aimed to shred Satsuki into pieces. Satsuki saw the jutsu coming early with her Sharingan and moved to counter it. Katan, Gukyaku no Jutsu. Satsuki exhaled a fireball that completely melted the swallows and continued on toward Fubuki. Hayaton, Hyero no Jutsu, Ice Release, Ice Prison Jutsu. Several large walls of ice erupted from the ground in front of her and blocked the technique. Oh, this woman is going to be a pain to deal with. I can tell this won't be easy. Fubuki smirked, this should be fun, little girl. Back with Naruto. Naruto was engaging Nadar in taijutsu as they ran up the side of a cliff, separating after every bout of blows. Naruto was carefully gauging the older man's strengths and weaknesses as they met each other in the air for a few punches. Nadar charged at his once more. He tried to catch Naruto off guard with a kick, but it was easily blocked. He then went to a jab with his left hand, but Naruto blocked once more and then countered with a knee to the gut, sending Nadar back a few feet. They charged each other again and traded blows, neither one of them giving an inch. However, Naruto wasn't even using his Logia abilities, he was just blocking Nadar's blows. You're not bad, kid. With that Sharingan you look just like Hatake Kakashi. He was the one who saved the princess all those years ago. I hope you don't run away like he did. This statement surprised Naruto a little, but he quickly shook it off. It was entirely possible that did happen, but it wasn't going to help him anytime soon. This time it was Naruto who charged and engaged Nadar in a fierce match of taijutsu. They traded blows evenly and blocked them just the same. They had returned to the ground as they fought, the cliff surface was cracked from when they used it as their battleground. Naruto was far better in taijutsu and he knew if things continued at this rate then he would eventually overwhelm Nadar. Naruto drove his fist into Nadar's gut, causing him to cough out saliva. He quickly retaliated with a much weaker right hook than before and attempted to connect with Naruto's face. Naruto caught Nadar's fist and ducked below his kick that he followed up with. The Sharingan user got in close with surprising speed and launched Nadar into the cliffside with a kick. Naruto noted that Nadar's chakra armor was beginning to crack from constant impact. It seems taijutsu isn't this guy's specialty. If I can exploit that, then I'll have the advantage. I need to get closer, I can't give him the time to perform any ninjutsus. Damn it, too late. Naruto jumped back to get some distance between them as he saw his enemy forming hand seals. Hayaton, Haryu Moko, Ice Release, Tearing Dragon Fierce Tiger. A large tiger formed out of the ice around the man on the cliff and rushed toward Naruto with impressive speed. Naruto managed to dodge the tiger's first few strikes, however the technique seemed to pick up speed. Hayaton? No, it's pure ice manipulation from the surrounding ice. Anyone can learn to do it. Perfect. My katan has the advantage, especially when we're surrounded by ice. The right side of Naruto's body and the left half of his face caught on fire. He rose his right arm and released his flames, Kaioken, Mirror Flame. A large wall of fire met the tiger in the middle and completely melted through it and continued to roar towards Nareri. The man didn't move, thinking that the chakra armor would protect him. However, he was wrong. The flames were too powerful and caught him in their path, burning a hole through the glacier in the process. When the flame died down, Nadar could be seen in the middle with most of his clothes burned off with his chakra armor still intact. He was covered in burns but he could still fight. So the chakra armor managed to block some of my flames, eh? And he managed to use a last-minute Hayaton jutsu to protect himself. Quite impressive indeed. Flames littered the battlefield and slowly began to melt the ice into pools of water. They ate away at the surrounding ice, making it that much harder to use his Hayaton jutsu. Nadar slowly rose up from the burning field of ice and prepared for his next move. That was no ordinary Katon jutsu. My chakra armor was completely useless. The ice is beginning to melt from the exposure of such intense flames. This is the perfect chance to escape. We need to retreat, things aren't faring well. Naruto was about to charge Nadar once more when the man started making hand seals. Something told Naruto to keep some distance from this jutsu, and he was right. Hayaton, Ikaku Hakugiai, ice release, one-horned white whale. A large whale with a long horn erupted from the ice that was separating Nadar from Naruto, causing mass damage and destroying most of the glacier, separating Naruto from him as he made his escape. Fubuki, Mizore. We're retreating. With Hana. Hana had managed to work around Mizore's chakra armor. Once she got used to the speed, he was fairly easy to deal with. She had to keep watching his punches though. He was strong and if he made contact it would be hard to recover. The battlefield was scarred with craters from the man's punches and her Ninken's Gatsugas. Hana knew that she was wearing down that chakra armor that he had on. It would only take a few more bouts of taijutsu to completely shatter it. He relied on that armor far too much, and once it was gone she would have the edge. She was getting ready to charge again when the ground started to rumble and she saw a huge whale made of ice crash into the glacier, causing it to become unstable. Fubuki, Mikor. We're retreating. She heard the man who Naruto was fighting call. Before she could catch him, Mizore turned around on his snowboard and rushed into the direction of the voice. The Inuzuka was about to pursue until the ground cracked beneath her and started sinking into the water. It was then that her sensei appeared next to her and they realized that they needed to get back to the ship before the whole glacier was destroyed. With Satsuki. Satsuki was panting. This Fubuki woman was good and she had used up a fairly large amount of chakra after having to constantly burn away her Hayaton techniques. The woman kept her distance and refused to get close enough to engage in taijutsu. Satsuki had almost gotten trapped in her ice prison. However, she managed to use a kawarimi at the last minute with a large piece of ice that she had attached an explosive knot to earlier. This bought her enough time to find a place for cover. However, things weren't looking good for her after the woman started dropping ice bombs from the sky. Whenever she dropped one of those small crystal orbs attached to a kunai, they would explode into a torrent of spikes that rise up out of the ground and try to finish her off. It was a real pain in the ass dodging all of those. Katan, Gukyaku no Jutsu. Satsuki had just fired off another Katan jutsu that narrowly missed her opponent. Just then the ice she was standing on started to tremble and crack. She then caught a glimpse of a huge whale made of ice destroy part of the glacier. She just knew this place was going down soon. That's when she heard a voice, Fubuki, Mizore. We're retreating. She knew that voice, that was the man that Naruto and I was fighting. Was he okay? Mizore spared one last look at Satsuki before flying off in a different direction. Satsuki knew that the battle was over and started heading towards the ship before the glacier collapsed. On board the ship, it had been a good hour since they had barely managed to get off that glacier before it collapsed on itself. Sandeo had started explaining everything after Naruto had demanded answers to what just happened. Apparently Fujike's Yuki is just an alias and her real name is Kazuhana Koyuki, the rightful heir to the throne of Yuki no Kuni. What a headache they'd gotten themselves into. There was a coup d'état in the country 10 years ago where the former ruler's brother staged a coup with the help of higher Yukigekure shinobi. Now he's after that hexagonal crystal that Koyuki wear because it is the key to the Kazuhana family treasure. Well, this is one hell of a mess. Does this kind of shit happen on everyone's first C-rank missions? I honestly thought that saving princesses was just something that academy kids imagined shinobi did. Naruto thought. Sensei, we're continuing this mission, right? Satsuki really didn't want to turn back after they learned the truth of what was going on. Obito sighed. Well, honestly, I wouldn't want you doing this kind of thing for your first mission, but it shouldn't be too difficult. You've already fought against these 3 shinobi, and they're likely dodos go to shinobi from the stories I've heard from Kakashi. Hell, Naruto almost killed his opponent. We just have to be prepared this time and make sure we finish the job for good. Everyone in the room was listening to the man intently, even Koyuki, who still really didn't want to go back to Yuki no Kuni. The parameters of this mission have changed. Our job is still to protect Koyuki-san, but we will also be overthrowing Dodo's rule. We're staging our own coup. This received positive reactions from everyone in the small room, except for Koyuki, who was still scowling. Juki no Kuni. Naruto and Koyuki were staring at the sight before them, unable to take their eyes away. There was blood and dead bodies everywhere. The train that Dodo was on had just fired a wave of kunai out of the sides of the train that pierced through the members of the film crew that had tried to stand up against the ruler of Yuki no Kuni. Hana and Satsuki had managed to cause an avalanche using explosive tags and smoke bombs, forcing Dodo to flee on the train, leaving all of them in that clearing to lick their wounds. Now Naruto and Koyuki were standing above the dying body of Sandeo. With his final words, he gave Koyuki a speech about why he did this and why he believed in her to free their country. With those final words, the life faded from his eyes, never to return. Koyuki just couldn't take any more pain and suffering, so she ran. She ran in no particular direction and only stopped when she reached the side of the cliff. Naruto was not too far behind her when she stopped running and just stared off into the distance. He was about to take her hand and lead her back to the others, when a mechanical arm grabbed hold of before the young man could and pulled her into a blimp that was rising up the side of the cliff and towards his palace. "Koyuki!" he yelled, not knowing what to do. All of his ideas and techniques, and yet he didn't have a plan of action for what the situation called for. He couldn't fly, at least not yet. There was nothing he really could do. Then he remembered what he did only a few days beforehand. Naruto knew exactly what to do. He needed to get her back safely. Naruto went through the necessary hand seals, bit his thumb to draw blood, and slammed his palm onto the ground. Kuchijose no Yatsu. There was a large puff of smoke and soon a large blue flame emerged from it. Soon enough everyone could see what it really was. From the smoke emerged a large phoenix covered in blue and orange flames. It stood about 50 feet tall and had a huge wingspan. "Naruto, I didn't expect you to call one of us so soon. Sorry about that, Marco, but right now I need a ride onto that blimp. You think you can help?" "No problem." With that said, Naruto jumped onto the back of the large phoenix and they quickly made their way to the blimp. Naruto jumped on the very top and Marco circled around it, preparing for his summoner's exit. Naruto figured out just how he was going to get into there. Ankai, Flame Commandment. Naruto waved his right arm around his body and summoned flames to surround him to prepare for his next jutsu, Hibashira, Fire Pillar. A large column of flames was shot both upwards and downwards, piercing through the blimp, providing him with an entrance. The blimp caught fire and slowly began its descent, preparing for a crash landing. Naruto took this opportunity to make his entrance. The Sharingan user dropped down through the hole and ended up in the main room. He saw Koyuki spread out on the floor unconscious, probably from the impact of his jutsu, and picked her up. As he finally got to her, he noticed that Dodo was on the other side of the blimp and just jumped through the hole. Naruto expected him to fall to his death, but soon noticed that he had that chakra armor on and used the wings to glide to safety. Naruto ran back to Koyuki and grabbed her around the waist with his left arm before jumping out of the blimp as well. The two ravenettes were free falling for a minute before Marco made it to them. The regenerative property of the phoenix's flames helped Koyuki recover from her unconsciousness and was going to ask what was going on, but not before Naruto could get one last attack off on the blimp. Naruto reared his right arm back and launched a column of red-hot flames in the shape of a fist right through the hull of the blimp, causing it to explode, leaving only debris behind. Everyone on board had been incinerated by the heat, including Nadar, Mizore, and Fubuki. Heiken, Fire Fist. Koyuki could only stare in awe at the sight before her very eyes. It was nothing like when her home and country burned to the ground. No, these flames were magnificent. They were absolutely beautiful. She could even feel the heat melt the snow below. All her thoughts about giving in to Dodo's demands and hatred for this country were burned away by the flames. This boy several years younger than her had banished all of the darkness from her heart and melted her cold exterior. Heiken. She whispered as she snuggled closer into the shirtless boy's embrace. She was captivated. The princess could see all of the charred bodies falling from the sky, and yet, she could only think of what he did as beautiful. The flame soared, illuminating the bleak winter wasteland before they dissipated. She could still see those crimson flames dancing along his arm. There was only one word that she could use to describe the scene that just played out before her. Divine. It was absolutely divine. She was left speechless. It was as if an angel had come forth to melt the frozen wasteland of Yuki no Kuni. She looked up into his pair of mixed-matched eyes. "Are you okay, Koyuki?" Naruto asked. She had only been unconscious a moment ago after all. Koyuki could only blush at how he said her name. It sounded wonderful, so full of warmth and life. Just like his flames. "I'm fine, thank you for saving me." Naruto merely nodded as if what he had done was an everyday occurrence. Wait, the crystal. Dodo took the hexagonal crystal from me before you attacked the ship. He's going for the Kazahana family fortune as we speak. Naruto noticed the urgency in her voice, completely different from her usual attitude. Where's he going with it? The Rainbow Glacier. It's in that direction. If we go now we can still stop him. Naruto decided that there was no time to go down and inform his team, so he just told Marco to head in the direction that Koyuki was pointing to. Rainbow Glacier. When they finally arrived at their location, they noticed that Dodo had already used the hexagonal crystal and it was plugged into an altar of sorts. What, that's it? The Kazahana treasure is nothing but a heat generator. Dodo was furious. He spent over 10 years searching for Koyuki and this was all he got in return. He then noticed that Koyuki and Naruto had appeared behind him on the frozen lake. If I can't have my treasure, then I'm at least going to take you two with me. I didn't spend all these years just for you to come back and ruin all of my plans. I should have killed you that night all those years ago. Naruto quickly turned to his familiar. Marco, take Koyuki above this area. I don't want her getting harmed from this fight. I'm going to finish all of this here and now. The phoenix nodded at his partner and flew high above the battleground so that they couldn't be hit by any of the stray techniques, but close enough so that they could still see. Dodo realized he wasn't going to be able to kill the one he wanted to immediately, so he charged at Naruto, trying to take him out as quickly as possible. He went to punch Naruto through the ice, but the scarred boy quickly jumped back, causing a large crater to appear in the ice before him. He's damn strong. If I get hit with one of his punches, it'll definitely slow me down, and I can't afford heat generators are melting the ice pretty fast. A drawn-out battle wouldn't be good in this situation. Naruto thought. Dodo charged at Naruto, one more, intent on finishing him off with taijutsu alone. Naruto coated his fists with his Busashoku haki, turning them pitch black and greatly increasing the force of Naruto's taijutsu. He also charged at Dodo and they engaged in a match of taijutsu. Naruto was using his interceptor fist style and avoiding every blow that Dodo sent his way, often countering right after. The man was predictable. He may have been physically strong, but it didn't matter because Naruto could read his every movement. Dodo had no real style, he just tried to punch as hard as he could. He was a brawler. Dodo sent another punch towards Naruto's head, which he easily sidestepped and followed up with a chop to his ribs, effectively breaking a few of them. Dodo never stood a chance in taijutsu, but he never figured that out. He sent a wild barrage of punches toward the Ravenet, which he easily dodged with the use of the Sharingan and Kenbunchaku haki. After the final thrust of Dodo's assault, Naruto grabbed the man's hand with his right arm and drove his haki-enhanced elbow into the center of Dodo's chakra armor, effectively shattering it. Just now realizing that he didn't match up in close combat, Dodo jumped back a few feet, trying to gain some distance. He started forming hand seals, and after the final one needed, he thrust his arms forward and sent a black ether-like dragon towards Naruto. Hayaton, Kakuryu Bofusetsu, Ice Release, Black Dragon Blizzard. The dragon was incredibly powerful and looked as if it was made out of the energy or the cold produced from the surrounding ice. Whichever it was, Naruto knew that if this jutsu hit, he would be in for a lot of pain. This jutsu wouldn't stop until it was destroyed. Hayaton techniques have a particularly useful ability of tracking heat signatures. He needed to neutralize it, and fast. Naruto ignited the left side of his face and the majority of his right arm. He lifted his arm and released it downward. Kayakin, Mirror Flame. A large wall of flames was released and met the black ice dragon in the middle of the frozen lake, effectively canceling each other out and producing a lot of steam. Naruto chose to use this steam for his advantage and started preparations from one of his favorite combinations. He moved his hands in front of his body with both of them open, and they started to glow green and produce hundreds of small green balls of light. The technique completely surrounded Dodo without him even noticing. Hadarubi, Firefly Lights. Hidoruma, Fiery Doll. Not even a few seconds after he said that name did his hands stop glowing green and instead started glowing orange. Every single one of the lights converged onto Dodo's body and exploded on impact. Fire covered the battlegrounds. The ice was melting fast. Faster than Naruto had anticipated. He needed to wrap this up fast. That last combination of his was powerful, but not powerful enough to take down someone as tenacious as Dodo. He noticed that the man was slowly starting to get up. Most of his flesh was completely burned off and the left half of his body was still burning as the crimson-orange flames slowly ate away at his body. A normal person would have been dead by now, but Dodo was a cockroach and cockroaches are notoriously hard to get rid of. Would this guy ever die? Hee, this isn't enough to stop me. My skin may be gone, but I'm very much alive. However, I'll finish you off right here. Dodo made a few more hand seals, preparing for what looked like his strongest jutsu. Now die, Hayaton, Saryu Bofusetsu, Ice Release, Twin Dragon Blizzard. Dodo released what looked like a more advanced version of his previous technique. He released 2 black dragons from the ice around him right at Naruto. They were coming at him. Fast. The 2 black ice dragons then merged to form a massive black ice tornado that began to rip apart the frozen lake they were standing on. The tornado was rushing at Naruto. It was coming onto him too quickly and he only had a few jutsus that could counter this. Dodging wasn't an option here, the technique was too widespread and was tearing apart the entire battleground. Naruto sighed, knowing how powerful this technique was. He began molding chakra in his lungs and spoke the last words that Dodo would ever hear, Katan, Goka Mekyaku, fire release, great fire annihilation. A massive tsunami of fire was expelled from Naruto's lungs and easily ripped through and melted the black ice tornado that was heading his way. The technique continued toward Dodo and consumed him, burning him alive, not even ashes remained of him. The blood-curdling screams could be heard for miles in all directions, but they died out just moments after he was swallowed by the flames. The technique soon subsided and all of the surrounding flames rushed to where Naruto was standing. They flames slowly started to merge with him as he glowed a flashing yellow until the flames completely became a part of him. Marco flew down and landed right next to Naruto, letting Koyuki off. He nodded to Naruto and then dispelled back to empty silver. Slowly the large ice mirrors started to glow a rainbow color and their light spread throughout Yuki no Kuni, melting all of the ice and turning the frozen wasteland into a paradise. Tears began falling from Koyuki's eyes as she remembered her father's words. She quickly embraced Naruto in a tight hug, surprising him greatly as he never expected the heartless resentful princess to actually break down in front of him and actually hug him. She looked into his eyes and gave him a small kiss on the cheek, making him smile down at her. It was spring in Yuki no Kuni once again.